In a beautiful, sunlit school, someone is telling their friend that the test took too long. Two students are talking, and one of them explains that the test took so long because his friend answered all the questions on paper and then just stared blankly at the sheet. Some rumbling can be heard, and the two young men who were talking earlier turn their attention to something beside them. Several cars and military trucks begin to pass through the streets, and it's even possible to see students being carried in these vehicles. The young people being escorted by the military vehicles seem calm, just talking and having fun during the ride. The girls who see this get extremely excited, as if they were admiring the boys in the vehicles. Seeing this, the black-haired boy, who was talking earlier, says that those students aren't real adventurers, but students from some specialized school. The wolf on the vehicle's emblem was a sword, and the black-haired student explains to his friend that the wolf belonged to the warrior school. In this world's history, the events that happened in the past began without any warning, and a city can be seen completely in flames and destroyed. Several blue portals in the sky began to open, and from them emerged various creatures that took over the city, leaving the people in despair. Later, science would prove that a world similar to Earth existed on the other side of the universe. However, on that planet, a certain event occurred that shattered the world, eliminating any form of life proliferation that existed there. As a result, the remains of that planet began to fly towards Earth and impact it. With this event, people were left amazed looking at the sky and seeing several comets of fire falling upon their planet. And due to these fragments, parts of the distorted planet began to merge with Earth. In the middle of the city, a girl notices that from one of the fragments a gigantic tree emerged that spread throughout the land, and this event was called the Ahesian phenomenon. Thus, unnatural laws and a variety of monsters were introduced to Earth, and creatures of all kinds began to appear. With this, 17% of the Earth's area was affected, and humans lost control of this area, calling it the danger zone. In the danger zone, on the day of the Ahesian event, a creature resembling a demon holds the skull of a soldier in its hands. The last remaining soldier of the platoon is panting as he looks at the demon watching him. After finishing off some soldiers, the creature continues to hold one, remaining still. And these places that were taken over by monsters are called dungeons. All the creatures that came from that world have a status board that shows their strength, and the name of the demon that eliminated the military platoon is Terror Horn. That beast called Terror Horn remains motionless, and the surviving soldier tries to figure out what he should do. Opening its demonic mouth, the terrifying monster lunges at the last soldier, whom response begins to shoot at it with his sniper rifle. However, apparently all the shots pass through the creature and simply bounce off its powerful carapace as it continues to run to kill its last victim. The beast quickly catches up to the soldier and punches him directly in the stomach, sending him flying far away and making him spit up blood. With the impact of the blow, the man crashes into the wall, almost passing out and completely defeated. Still trying to stay on his feet for all his friends who have already fallen, the young man is practically exhausted and out of strength. None of these humans had time to prepare for these creatures, as even a military soldier only had a D-rank status. Humans as a species didn't have the ability to do anything, and the creature begins to approach the fallen young soldier. The demon, with a malevolent smile, looks at the soldier who couldn't react or do anything. And even with all this catastrophe, humans had a stroke of luck as the terrifying horned beast lunged to finish off its target. The disasters weren't the only thing that occurred in that land, and even from that disaster, something good happened for the humans. The soldier, who was about to be struck, begins to summon a blue aura and suddenly manages to block the creature's punch that was heading toward him. The natural limits that humans are born with as a species prevent them from reaching a very high level of evolution, and the limitations of the species' potential caused by Earth's natural law began to crack, and the soldier continues to hold back the beast's attack. Then, with extreme ease, the soldier begins to lift the beast, crushing its hand as the monster tries to break free. The man's status, whose stats were previously only B and D rank, begins to increase exponentially, and the seal he had, as a human, begins to break as if he were surrounded by chains that prevented him from evolving quickly. That soldier manages to awaken by breaking those bonds. The soldier uses a judo move, taking advantage of his new power to throw his opponent. With all his strength, the man slams the beast into the ground, finishing it off immediately. After that, the soldier looks at the monster's body, determined to use his power from that day on to help humans and defeat those beasts. Although this phenomenon affected all humans on Earth, the awakened abilities were different for each person. Some who awakened these abilities decided to train and improve their new powers. Other individuals who discovered their new potential and abilities chose to use them for a purpose. In the midst of the chaos, a new portal can be seen opening with several horned demons invading the land. However, their leader notices something. An army of humans was in front of the portal waiting for the beasts to arrive. These individuals chose to use their new potential to regain control of the dungeons and the danger zone. They were special agents who worked for a single reason and were called adventurers. In front of that portal, a war began between the horned demons and the humans, alongside that soldier who defeated the first monster. And that is how the Age of Dungeons and the Age of Adventurers began, with the enormous battle between two species. After the battle, where only a few knights, humans survived, the entire world glorified their feats. Everyone was completely inspired by the strength and dedication, especially of the first soldier, who awakened that power and decided to fight against the beasts. Not long after that, organizations focused solely on training adventurers were established all over the world. The best among the training facilities for teenagers in the Republic of Korea was one in particular. It managed to produce the best adventurers over the last 25 years and was recognized worldwide as the School of Warriors. We then return to the moment when the two friends were talking, and one of them mentions that in that school they even tell the students what happens inside the dungeon. The black-haired friend asks what happens if one of them dies, and his colleague replies that they have a reason to be confident, since there is an entrance test. However, before he could continue explaining, his attention is diverted to a group of girls who were screaming. The girls were completely smitten with someone, saying that this person was extremely attractive and had an indescribable beauty. That person was a blonde boy with large ears, a half-elf who was just sitting there being cheered on by all those girls. The friends who were talking wonder what it was all about, and their friend explains that the guy is always on TV. His name is Diab Choi. His father is a famous adventurer and his mother is an elf. They say he's a genius, and people talk about how he will reach the highest rank of adventurers. The boy, with all his looks and charisma, smiles at the girls, which makes them extremely excited. It's shown that he has already entered the dungeon 14 times, and the black-haired young man, seeing this, gets extremely irritated because he doesn't think the guy is that special, and his friend starts teasing him, saying that he's just jealous. The black-haired boy starts to argue with his friend, but he ignores him. Noticing that another friend was arriving and starts talking to the young man, inviting him to hang out. However, Harrien, a boy with black hair, says he couldn't go and hopes that at least his friends have fun. The other black-haired young man starts to pester him, saying he couldn't do that after the exams and that he should go out and have fun with them. But before he could continue talking, his friend with the parted hair quickly hits him in the stomach, telling Harrien that it was okay for him not to go this time. Harrien, who was looking at his phone, turns his attention to his colleagues, thanking them and saying goodbye. The young man with the parted hair asks his friend to be a little more sensitive next time and wonders if he knew why Harrien was doing all this. In a flashback, we see our protagonist, Harrien, next to an elderly person who is in a hospital bed. Returning to the present moment, the boy, while walking through the city streets, looks at his phone because of an alert, because he hadn't paid that month's hospital bills. The boy also receives a notification from his boss calling him to work, as a new job had come in for him. Diab, who was greeting his fans, notices something that catches his attention, turning his gaze towards Harrien. The blonde boy begins to watching the young man's back, since for some reason he felt that something was off. His friend, who is also part of the warrior school, asks him if that guy did something to the half-elf. However, Di replies that he didn't. Looking at Harrien, he thinks of something, but assumes it must just be his imagination. Our protagonist, while walking through the streets, was extremely stressed, telling himself that he didn't want to work. In an abandoned subway station, Harrien starts to go down the stairs and then passes by some warning tape that was blocking his path to the place. Harrien's boss is a white-haired man named Hawon, and he says that the person beside him, a bald man in a suit, is the new client Harrien will be working for. The black-haired young man says it's a pleasure to meet him. However, the person hiring the guy's services gets irritated. Looking at the kid, the man asks Hawon for his best employee. However, he indicates that Harrien is the best one there. The bald man starts to argue with Hawon, saying he didn't come there to be fooled by idiots. However, the boss and our protagonist say that he's being rude. Even with Harrien beside him, the man in the suit doesn't back down, saying that they should call someone who's actually good at what they do. And, threateningly, he says that if Hawon doesn't bring someone respectable, he'll make them both regret it. A muscular man who was the bodyguard of the bald man is called out by Harrien, and the kid asks if that man is an adventurer. However, the kid rephrases his question, stating that the muscular man was a retired adventurer, and that's why he's following an old man, just obeying orders. The bald man looks extremely surprised by the kid's attitude, but before he can say anything, his subordinate calls him over with a snap of his fingers. Pidgey declares that there's no need to continue this conversation and that he'll break an arm or a leg of both the boss and Harrien to teach them a lesson. The bald man looks pleased, saying he knew his employee could handle things and orders him to capture the kid. He then adds that if the two in that room don't beg for their lives, they'll die right there. The kid starts to fake being scared and, sarcastically, begins to ask for help, wondering what he should do, but changing his stance and with a blue aura emanating from him, Harrien states that he doesn't know how to beg, and it's revealed that our protagonist had illegally re-entered the dungeon 371 times. In a bit of government propaganda, it's explained how dungeon smuggling works. Every day, adventurers work hard to explore dungeons and defeat the monsters inside, thereby helping humanity prosper. When they successfully clear the entire dungeon and get rid of all the enemies, they obtain an unimaginable amount of treasure. However, before adventurers leave the dungeon, the treasures must be turned over for government inspection. This is because many of them have incredible, even unimaginable powers that are beyond human control. If such items are put into circulation without permission, they can be used for evil, putting many lives at risk. Thus, the Adventurers Association must inspect and register these treasures to determine what they are. After that, they will charge the corresponding fees based on the value of each treasure from the adventurers. However, many people break this rule to take advantage and bypass the system for their own benefit. There are adventurers who are tempted by money and don't want to pay the enormous and abusive fees. Secretly, away from the government, they keep these treasures without inspectors noticing. If these criminals aren't caught, society as a whole will suffer a tremendous loss, which can create endless problems. That's why the propaganda ends by asking all citizens to report any smugglers they see, so these bandits can be punished. After the brief explanation, we return to the moment the fight between the former adventurer and Harrien was stopped. The boy's boss was calmly lighting a cigarette and, next to him, the bald man is confused, wondering how the man could be so calm. Seeing that the man isn't showing any reaction, he calls out to Haiwan to clear up a doubt. Looking at his subordinate and the young man who are starting to get ready to fight, he asks the boss if he's really going to let that happen. Haiwan asks the bald man if he's going to chicken out after coming this far and, hearing that, the man replies that they should be the ones who are scared. He also explains that the reason Pigu retired wasn't because of injuries, but because he attacked his own teammates and that he wouldn't hold back against the kid. Our protagonist overhears this and, after repeating the crime his rival had committed, he sarcastically remarks that it was so scary, stating that Pigu was a criminal indeed. Pigu starts to taunt and brag, saying the guy he killed was pathetic, just slowing him down, and he simply got rid of the trash. Hearing this, Harrien starts laughing, saying he understood what the man meant. He then states that Pigu should be more self-aware because he was also trash for causing trouble and losing his license due to irresponsibility. But before the kid could continue talking and taunting him, the man quickly lunges forward to punch him in the face. However, noticing where his fist landed, the man is surprised to realize something. He sees that Harrien had managed to dodge by simply turning his head to the side, and the kid remarks that attacking like that was pretty rude. Pigu becomes enraged and a green aura starts to emanate from him. The man then charges to finish off Harrien, wanting to provoke his rival. The kid says that since he was being attacked, he'll respond in kind with a swift kick and a resounding impact. The kid leaps up, striking the opponent's jaw with his leg. After taking the full impact of the blow, the man is left somewhat stunned, trying to process what just happened. Harrien's boss remains calm, but the bald man is impressed by our protagonist's speed. Haiwan once again states that he brought the most skilled person he knew, while Pigu is shocked by the kick he just took. After the impact, Harrien starts to taunt the man, saying it was a surprise, since judging by his appearance, he expected the burly man was a bit more durable. Ha comments that Lee had miscalculated, since the kid treated that smuggler as if he were just a normal kid. However, those reflexes and the power behind the kick to the axe, man's chin had already reached the level of a professional. The kid also comments that it seems the former adventurer is starting to understand that this might be a fight he can't win. However, the bald man doesn't give up, claiming that the kid was really good, but it was just a lucky kick. Before the bald man could continue talking, Harrien's boss replies that he could only feel pity for the big guy. Blinded by rage, Pigu takes off his shirt, allowing his aura to increase even more. And Haiwan, seeing this, states that the man was undoubtedly a tank. Next to him, the bald man is extremely surprised that Haiwan could read his subordinate's abilities, and comments that the old man shouldn't be so surprised. The burly man says that no matter what cheap trick our protagonist decides to use, he's still just a smuggler. For that reason, he's going to show him something interesting. Immediately after, several veins begin to bulge on his body and he begins to charge up with a green energy. Harrien explains that after the adhesion, people began to awaken abilities that surpassed their limitations. However, each person has different talents and types and, as expected, they would awaken completely different latent abilities. Adventurers, of course, took on specific training that suited their abilities and assigned roles to themselves. Looking impressed at his rival, Harrien states that one of those roles is called a tank. Pigu became extremely stronger and more muscular, after using various techniques to hone and increase his stats. The tank is a position where you protect your teammates from the dangers of the dungeon. In this role, the adventurer faces all monsters head-on in the vanguard, unable to retreat or show fear. The strength in their bodies, trained to the limit, allows tanks to not even feel some bullets fired at them. However, higher-ranked tanks can even withstand immense firepower and missiles easily and are essentially a protective barrier. Observing his rival's transformation, Yu recognizes that he is powerful, stating that the man truly is an adventurer. Pigyu, after using all his buffs, quickly charges with both hands to attack the kid in front of him. Harrien, though struggling, manages to dodge, but the ground wasn't so lucky and the entire floor of that subway station is shattered. With debris flying in his face, our protagonist tries to land, feeling the pressure from all that power that is heading towards him. The bald man, feeling that power and being practically a normal human, is almost swept away by the wind that was created. However, a hand helps him stay on his feet. Who saved him? It was Haewon, who stood as if nothing had happened, then calmly asked the bald man if he was okay. The man says that, in any case, that adventurer was a bastard because he was really going to tear the place apart. Someone else's business just because of a rivalry. Lee charges toward Harrien, who's in a fighting stance, and the boy just watches his opponent advance. The man quickly throws another punch, and the boy barely dodges it with an extremely arrogant expression. Piju asks our protagonist what's going on. He also questions why Harrien isn't using any of his previous tricks, but the young man remains deep in thought. Harrien replies, stating that he's not an idiot and wouldn't fall for such an obvious trap as the one the tank was setting up. Observing and feeling all the power radiating from Lee, Harrien's boss comments that the former adventurer isn't bad at all. Piju's physical strength was on the level of a truck, and if a normal person were hit, every bone in their body would be pulverized. But seeing that there could be more destruction in his territory, Harrien orders Harrien to hurry up and finish it, because if he didn't, the boy would have to pay for all the damages if anything else broke. And the young man realizes he's running out of options. Pigyu maintains the same expression as before, now saying that it seems the boy's boss doesn't understand what's happening. He also emphasizes that the cheap tricks of coordination, Harrien, don't compare to a professional's technique. However, Yu seems to ignore him and suddenly looks to the side, saying that it looks good. The young man notices a strong metal beam next to him and quickly places his hand on it. Lee doesn't understand that move and is confused, wanting to know what the young man was going to do with it. Harrien begins to analyze the iron bar in his hand, realizing it could be useful, and then says that it should be enough. While Yu is distracted, Piju charges at him again. The man is so furious that he grits his teeth as his aura spills out. Harrien explains that due to their enormous durability, the general belief is that tanks are invincible beings. However, that's not the case because they have a very clear weakness and a natural enemy. And at that moment, Harrien informs the bald man that the fight is over. Piju continues to advance toward his enemy, completely enraged and determined to end the battle. However, Harrien doesn't back down and also charges forward with the iron in his hand. A tank's weakness is an entity that can focus a powerful and destructive force on a specific point. And at that exact moment, with his improvised weapon, the boy moves to strike his enemy and prove his strength. DPS, damage per second, is a tank's main weakness. And after saying that, the boy strikes his opponent's jaw with the iron bar, releasing a blast of energy backward. With the blow, the former adventurer spits blood, practically knocked out by the attack. Harrien isn't surprised at all, unlike the bald man who is completely confused by what just happened before his eyes. After the blow, the tank immediately falls backward, unconscious for a few seconds, and then quickly regains consciousness. With his mouth full of blood, Piju asks how the protagonist learned to cut like that. But upon hearing this, the boy looks confused, asking what the man is talking about. He then says he doesn't know what Lee is thinking, but that he's definitely mistaken. However, he thinks to himself that maybe Lee isn't completely wrong, since he might have seen that person before, and therefore recognized Harrien's cutting style. That person was his father, who was known worldwide and was once extremely powerful. Our protagonist begins to remember his past, and we see him as a child walking through the halls of his house, reflecting on how, when he was very young, his father was the greatest adventurer in the world to him, because the boy felt immense pride in the man, and his favorite pastime was watching his father train in the backyard. And it wasn't just because he was family, the man was truly powerful. His name was Yusun, and the man had a muscular build and emanated an aura of power. This was the soldier we saw in the past, the first human to awaken and defeat one of the monsters. A flashback is shown to explain that he was one of the heroes of the first generation, called the First Adventurers. For those who didn't live through it, the story of the first generation is a grand legend, but for the adventurers of that era, it was a hell, as they had to witness countless people lose their lives and face battles daily. And more than anything, the main problem was that there was no information about dungeons or similar things, about what kind of place the dungeons were or even what types of monsters inhabited them, which made exploration even more complicated. In the flashback, Yusun is seen with his party, preparing to fight a giant monster shaped like a worm. Even monsters that are considered easy to defeat nowadays were formidable challenges for the adventurers in the past. The Jakimulat, the beast our protagonist's father was facing, begins to spit a corrosive green liquid, hitting Yusun's friend. Yusun narrowly dodges the attack, but as he looks to the side, he sees his friend being dissolved by the worm's attack. For the adventurers of that era, any creature was an unknown calamity capable of destroying everything. Yusun, after witnessing his friend melt away, quickly becomes enraged and strikes the beast with his spear. This was an era when adventurers didn't have information to fight the monsters. After landing the blow, Yusun realizes something he didn't want to see. His titanium alloy spear was not resistant to the monster's corrosive attack. Items that are now considered common didn't even exist back then, so adventurers had to make do with what they had. The first generation of adventurers went through trial and error, risking their lives to discover more information about the dungeons. In the flashback, Yusun charges at the worm. In the underground dungeon, where Yusun was, some adventurers arrive as reinforcements. The three young adventurers, upon seeing the situation and what was happening, are left breathless, simply observing the scene. Among the many people who had been dissolved, the only one left standing was Yusun, having defeated the creature with what he had at his disposal. The survivors pass on their experiences and achievements to the next generation to help them, and after all their deeds for the sake of humanity, they were considered heroes. Yusun lived that life defeating unknown creatures and beings for many, many years. After evolving tremendously as a hero and as a person, he became known as the Dragon Hunter after years of adventuring. This nickname was given to the first person who managed to defeat a dragon, and Sung is seen standing imposingly over the body of one of those beasts. When people saw this news, they were shocked and amazed. Sung was considered the strongest adventurer in Asia, and Sung was also an ordinary person and the father of our protagonist. And the boy expresses that he respected him deeply. Harrien remembers his father training with his spear, displaying all his power and aura, creating a huge windstorm unlike anyone else in the world. Harrien believed his father was invincible until one fateful day when he saw something that traumatized him. Suddenly, the man, who was in his physical prime and training, unexpectedly began to cough up blood. Our protagonist, being just a child, ran to his father to see what was happening. However, the man asked his son to stop and not come any closer. According to the doctors, the cause of this sudden weakness and decline was poisoning, and Harrien cried a lot seeing his father in that state. In the hospital, Sung explains that during one of his explorations, his father found a deadly poison that contaminated him. As he had always done, his father tried to overcome it more than anything, facing challenges head-on. But however, after decades of overworking his body, it was at its limit and not even the first dragon hunter could withstand it. During the time Sung was weak, the comrades he had trusted his life with came and handed him a piece of paper. These people were snakes in disguise who took advantage of Sung's vulnerability at that moment. They took his fortune and job. For years, on top of the illness, he suffered mentally and physically, believing he had only made mistakes up to that point, and that nothing he did was rewarded. Years passed, and even when our protagonist was a teenager, he would see his father sitting on a hospital bed, his body severely weakened. Finally, Harrien mentions that years later the world began to forget about the dragon hunter, Sung, and his father lost his identity as a hero. After losing everything and suffering from an incurable poison that no medical science could cure, all he had left as a reward was to be a forgotten adventurer. Then we return to the moment when Harrien has just defeated Pigyu. The boy simply watches his opponent, then turns around and starts to walk away while the man tries to mutter something. Our protagonist, after all the memories, looks extremely irritated, throwing down the piece of iron he was holding and walking towards the exit. The bald man is still shocked by everything he saw, thinking that his subordinate was the strongest man. However, Haiwan comments that everything went well, although the man remains in disbelief, unable to believe that his partner Pidgey lost to a kid. But the protagonist's boss comments that perhaps the burly man wasn't a good adventurer, which could have been one of the reasons. Harrien chimes in, saying that the man bragged about hitting his own teammates, which only showed how weak he really was. As he continues walking beside the bald man, the guy states that there are only two reasons why a good adventurer retires. Either their body deteriorates to the point where they can no longer explore or face creatures, or they die during an exploration and are never seen again. Yu puts on his jacket, saying that he didn't know what Pigu's salary was, but if it was more than minimum wage, the bald man should fire him. Seeing this as an opportunity, Joanne approaches his client, apologizing and asking the bald man to understand his side. He then states that the fee for the job will now be double because of the situation that occurred. The man in the suit is about to protest, but before he can do so, Harrien's boss gives him a threatening look, saying it was the kid who provoked him first. He then adds that the Hijong don't work for free, and seeing that he wasn't in the best position, the bald man agrees and says that it's fine. After extorting his client for a while, the guy's boss starts to call for Harrien. The man asks him if he's ever heard of the Imperial Wasp, but hearing this while drinking water, immediately spits it out. Wiping his mouth, Harrien asks if they'll have to face that, since even for him, that monster was too much. Jawan explains that the Imperial Wasp is a monster whose danger level is considered the highest, not only in Korea, but in the entire world. What was once a beautiful and charming city called Uido is now the nest of the Imperial Wasp and has become a demonic realm in Korea with an extremely high difficulty. The man explains that even for high-ranking adventurers, taking down one of these monsters is difficult, because these creatures are spread all over the place. For any smuggler, fighting one of these creatures is practically suicide. However, for an adventurer of the white rank, it was extremely possible that they could pull it off. Jawan explains that according to the bald man, there was a huge raid the day before that wasn't made public. The boss continues the explanation, stating that the government, army, and 7 white-rank adventurers formed an attack squad to invade the nest of the Wasp. Harrien is surprised that they gathered 7 white-rank adventurers, and Jawan adds that adventurers of that level are so famous that if even 2 of them team up, the media goes crazy. With this challenge, it seems that they didn't achieve the original goal of eradication, but the adventurers managed to hunt the Queen Wasp. However, one of the 7 stole the Imperial Wasp's royal jelly and ordered a subordinate from the attack squad to smuggle it out. Harrien seems confused, not knowing what this royal jelly is, and Jawan begins to explain that it's a nutritional supplement that the wasps give to a newborn queen. Struggling to understand the situation, Yu asks why a white-rank adventurer would smuggle a nutritional supplement since it was extremely dangerous. The guy's boss explains that there have been times when the royal jelly was brought into this world, and from what he knew, if a human consumed it, they could even come back from the dead. And upon hearing this, our protagonist is extremely shocked. In the underground city, deep in a subway, we hear someone say that all paths to the dungeons are now strictly controlled. This person starts walking through those abandoned hallways, heading to a certain place while repeating this phrase several times. It's revealed that this person was our protagonist's boss, and the man says that's not true. Looking at a door with several red markings, the man thinks that this proves there's always a way to bypass government restrictions. With a blue aura around his hand, he starts to touch the door, doing something to merge his magic with the markings. His energy reacts with the doors, and a huge blue energy light illuminates the entire area. The auras begin to merge with the markings there, and then something happens and the red markings start to disappear. Our protagonist was right behind his boss, and Haiwan tells the boy that even though he always says it, he'll repeat it, asking Harrien to be careful. While wiping his hands, he concludes that this job will be especially annoying and a bit more troublesome than the others. For some reason, Yu remains silent the whole time, just listening and keeping quiet, trying to get the boy's attention. Haiwan blows a puff of smoke from his cigarette in the young man's face. The young man starts to wave his hand to disperse the smoke and then asks why his boss did that so suddenly. Haiwan explains that he did it because the boy had his head in the clouds and wasn't paying attention to the mission. The boss asks if the reason the young man was acting that way was because he was still thinking about the medicine that could bring the dead back to life. Harrien starts walking towards the door, stating that it's pointless, since those things aren't really reliable. Leaning on the huge door, he thinks that even if it's considered an unparalleled antidote, it won't be able to cure his father's condition. And with that, the young man starts to open the mysterious door, from which a strong light begins to emanate. The boy also thinks that if something like that existed, his father would have never given up that thread of hope. After opening the door and going through it, the young man finds himself in a mountainous region with a beautiful landscape of a clear blue sky. Harrien tries to shield his eyes from the sun to get a better view of the stunning scenery in front of him. After the Ahesian, dungeons were created all over the vast expanse of the earth, but among them, there are 2 considered the largest in Korea, and they are peculiar. The first is Jeju Island, a dungeon merged with a volcanic mountain range that has active volcanoes and burning rocks. The other is merged with the Igar jungle, and at that moment the young man was starting to prepare for an exploration. The Igar dungeon is located in what used to be Uido, in the center of Seoul, where Yu was. Now it's possible to see a destroyed city overgrown by a forest. The young man reports that with Uido at the center, Mapo, Johnson, and other nearby cities were all controlled by this dungeon, and most of it remains unknown. A large portion of the region is only D rank, but Uido, where the Wasp is S rank, and the person responsible for the jelly tried to transport it to the meeting area in Boramai. Jagwon explains that, however, after arriving there, the transporter lost contact with the others, and although he could have fled, it's not the most likely option. The boss also says that the man must have dealt with all sorts of things to get out of there. And so, all our protagonist has to do is get to the location and bring back the jelly. But before Harrien departs, Jawan mentions that he'll finish his thought by asking the young man not to get distracted and just focus on the mission. Smiling as he puts on a mask, the boy asks if his boss thinks he would. However, Jawan firmly states that the boy isn't foolish enough to do that. The boss also asks his subordinate to be careful and remember that the royal jelly is valuable and that humans aren't the only ones willing to risk their lives to get it. After his boss's whole speech, the boy uses a rope to safely descend from the cliff into the center of the forest. And there, in the center, he thinks that he's sure that the entire forest must be smelling that peculiar scent. However, when he looks down, something catches his eye, leaving the young man surprised and irritated. On the forest floor was a huge footprint of a giant, and the boy states that he's sure that several things will be drawn to the jelly's scent. Meanwhile, deeper inside that vast expanse of trees and vegetation, several birds start to fly away. A girl with pointed ears is seen, extremely out of breath and fleeing from something. The woman tries to stop for a moment to rest behind a tree and catch her breath. Her name was Jin Saron, and she was in her first year as a warrior, currently facing the biggest problem of her life. It was supposed to be an easy trip to the dungeon for her midterm exam, but it's clear the girl was paralyzed and completely terrified. Looking to one side, the young woman remains worried, and it's explained that instead of something easy like it should have been, she encountered a monster that should have never been there. It's then revealed that the creature chasing the girl is a gigantic beast. Jin continues trying to remain silent and still to see if she can escape from the beast that is hunting her. However, a gust of wind starts to approach the girl and she realizes something she didn't want to. The exam was supposed to be simple. Within the time limit, Jin was supposed to collect as many coins as possible that were placed inside the dungeon, and although it was a test designed to simulate real combat situations, the test area was ranked as low as possible, and it should have been easy. This was because it was considered a training ground for beginners, one that any novice adventurer could overcome. The monster chasing Jin approaches silently, and when the girl realizes it, the beast is smiling right behind her. The woman despairs, and it's explained that even the monsters that lived there were weak and had low intelligence, but this one was different. The giant, with 4 arms and immense strength, tries to strike the girl, but she barely manages to escape. Jin thinks that she should run away, but looking at the monster's size, she realizes that's impossible, so she has to make a decision, another choice. At that moment, the girl realizes the only thing left to do is hope for a miracle, so she pulls out her bow and draws 3 arrows from her quiver to ready herself. Despite all the difficulties, she decides to fight back. The 3-star primal titan begins to prepare a monstrous breath attack. In a desperate attempt to save her life, Jin fires 3 arrows at her enemy. Unfortunately for her, the monster raises a hand with ease to protect its face, successfully blocking the weak attack. The girl realizes that the titan's hide is tougher than a tank's and her chances of winning are almost 0. Then, the primate with one of its 4 arms quickly slams the ground, causing another gust of wind and sending rocks flying through the air. However, with her extreme skill and speed, the girl manages to escape once more and, while still in the air, Jin prepares to fire another arrow. Jin thinks that no matter how many arrows she shoots, it's impossible to pierce the monster, but she has no other choice. So 3 of her arrows fly towards the beast again. But this time, the projectiles are propelled by the wind. Although they only superficially pierce the titan's body, the monster remains unfazed, maintaining its terrifying expression. Looking at the beast, the girl thinks to herself that she didn't need to kill it with her attacks. And the monster didn't need to dodge or block them either. She just wanted it to get a little closer and hoped the monster would let its guard down for a moment. The new arrow that Jin readies on her bow is imbued with fire, and the girl is sure her plan will work. Upon landing on the ground, she channels more magic into her arrow, as she is a warrior of a class that imbues magic into the tips of arrows. Finally, determined and confident that she will survive, the woman prepares to teach the beast a lesson. With a powerful bow attack, Jin uses her flame bomber skill, firing an arrow that tears through the ground. It's explained that the type of magic that can be imbued into an arrowhead has absolutely no limit, and what she chose as a last resort was the biggest explosion she could manage. After hitting something, the arrow explodes, causing a huge fire that can be seen throughout the forest. The woman keeps watching the spot where she launched her attack, trying to see if she managed to defeat the beast. After all, that attack should have been enough to kill any monster with a 3-star danger rank. However, the girl is completely terrified. After the smoke clears, the monster is seen clinging to 2 trees, having narrowly avoided the attack. The monster, having barely escaped, looks enraged with a terrifying expression, furious at its prey's audacity, and even with all its power, the attack would have only been effective if it had hit its target. Several thoughts flood Jin's mind, and the girl begins to consider that she might die here, as she doesn't know what else to do. Before she can even think about needing to flee, the monster lands on the ground, determined to finish the young woman off. It quickly lunges towards her, and, in a desperate instant, Jin runs in the opposite direction, trying to escape. The Titan continues its pursuit with a psychotic expression, wanting, simply having fun with its desperate prey. However, as if it were a miracle from heaven, just as she had wished, our protagonist suddenly appears, striking the Titan with a weapon. Looking up at the sky, Jin is in disbelief at what just happened, looking at her savior as if he were her hero. Still in the air, Harrien locks eyes with the girl he just saved, while Jin remains astonished by everything that has occurred. The giant, having taken a solid blow to the chin, is somewhat dazed, trying to stay on its feet. Our protagonist lands safely on top of a tree and thinks that, although he hit the creature on the chin, it didn't seem to be enough. Looking down, the boy notices the beast glaring at him with a terrifying expression. He pulls a strange object from his pocket, something that looks like an adventurer's tool. With his staff in one hand and the tool in the other, the boy launches himself into battle to defeat the beast. Jin, witnessing the situation, is extremely impressed, because she never imagined the young man would be bold enough to attack the monster head-on. The girl thinks the young man is heading for a certain death, and the primate Titan, enraged, lunges to attack him with two of its arms, screaming loud enough for the girl to hear. Harrien tells her to close her eyes immediately, although she doesn't understand what he's talking about at all. Harrien quickly aims his tool at the monster's face. The beast and Harrien are on the verge of a deadly encounter, in which only one of them will come out alive. However, from the tool that Harrien is holding, a powerful light begins to emanate, and the young man quickly closes his eyes. Right in front of the monster's eyes, a blinding light that illuminates a large part of the forest is emitted from the device, leaving the Titan temporarily blind. Saron, following the unknown boy's advice, quickly closes her eyes and raises her arm to shield herself from the device's light. The monster, not knowing what was happening, is completely affected by the light shot directly into its eyes. The beast begins to roar in anger and, after that, our protagonist lands on the ground, thinking that he used all the power of that tool, even though it was his last one. What he was holding is called a stun light, a tool made from the scales of the oscillating fish that lives in dungeons deep in the ocean. It has an incredible ability called Incapacitate, which offers a lot for its price and has been cherished by countless adventurers. However, due to its incredible performance, many people misused it and several adventurers began to lose their sight. As a result, its production in that world today is strictly prohibited. Still, with her eyes closed due to the tool's incredible range, Saron, not used to it, begins to slowly open her eyes. Walking past her with his staff, Harrien says he did all this for her and now she has to find a way to survive on her own because she only has a few seconds left. Our protagonist thinks that, no matter what happens in the dungeon, as long as he does nothing for the adventurer, he probably won't be reported. The boy remembers the moment his boss said that frankly, smugglers are like cockroaches to adventurers. Despite that, the bounties on them are very high. So if he acted without thinking, he would be tricked and turned over to the government. Therefore, he wasn't going to do anything else. However, as he ran, the boy kept a firm expression, but he noticed something behind him that unsettled him. The young man realizes that the girl from before was trying to follow him and, not knowing her intentions, Harrien complains. Still out of breath, Saron doesn't give up on her goal and continues to run after her savior to thank him. However, with all the lessons he had learned about not being deceived, Yu makes a decision and quickly uses his incredible speed. Saron, who was right behind him, realizes that somehow the boy managed to escape her sight in a split second. Saron claims she was sure the boy was right there, but he suddenly disappeared. With her guard down, she is surprised by a staff that hits her directly in the neck, pushing her back. Our protagonist pins the girl to the ground and tells her she's very foolish, asking what she was doing. Saron, innocent and without malice, explains that she just wanted to thank him for saving her. Coldly, Harrien replies by asking if she's kidding because he's not foolish enough to fall for such nonsense, proving that he's not so naive. Saron reveals that she didn't follow him just for that, but because she knew the boy was a smuggler. However, she didn't want to capture him. Instead, she wanted to offer the young man a job. And upon hearing this, he remains silent for a moment. Seeing the Warrior Academy emblem on the shirt that the girl is wearing, Yu sighs and lets her go, removing his staff from the girl's neck. The boy says that he had the intention of letting it go, but that this is her last chance to survive. Turning around and starting to walk, Harrien says he has no interest in hearing from a student of the Warrior Academy. In a more imposing tone than ever, Harrien threatens Saron, warning her that he would really bury her if she interfered with him again. The girl, understanding the seriousness of the threat, remains silent for a moment. Still, she doesn't give up and says that the bounty for a smuggler was 50 million, while the reward for hunters was supposed to be 400 million. Harrien takes this as an offense and becomes completely enraged with veins popping on his body. However, something completely changes his mind when he looks at the girl's hand and sees something impressive. Saron is holding a necklace called Denkel's Blood and tells him that she could only buy it if she captured 5 smugglers, which would be equivalent to more than 200 million ons. With that in her hands, sweating, she tells him that this was just the down payment and that if Harrien helped her with the exam, she would give him even more money. Seeing the girl's wealth, Yu comments that she's crazy, thinking she was just a spoiled brat. But beyond that, she was disgustingly rich and insane. Determined in her goals, the girl replies that it didn't matter if she was crazy or not. Raising the necklace again, the young woman states that what mattered was that this opportunity would change our protagonist's life. Once again, he sighs unexpectedly, saying that he imagined something like this would happen. The young man apologizes, stating that it's Jin's fault and that he really has no reason to kill her. Hearing this, the girl is surprised, asking what he means. A huge shadow begins to block the sun, plunging them into darkness and, looking up, the boy says he had already warned her. Harrien mentions that he told her she only had a few seconds left and, in the sky, the primate titan is seen leaping to capture the 2 youths after recovering from the flash. The furious monster immediately crashes into the ground with its 4 arms, but the 2 youths manage to escape. Suddenly, the girl sees something coming toward her and, when she opens her hand to catch it, she realizes it's the same staff our protagonist was using before. He tells her he didn't give it to her just to look at it and asks if she remembers the attack he used earlier. Jin remembers the moment he used fire on the arrow. Then, Harrien asks the girl to do it again, to conjure those flames on the staff and return it to him. However, the girl panics, claiming she has no magical power left. Before Jin can say anything else, our protagonist insists that she has to figure it out. The monster prepares to attack again, and Harrien warns that he won't be able to hold the Titan's attention for much longer with just his fists. So Jin needs to hurry. Jin begins to channel her magic into the staff, but she thinks she has less than a quarter of her magical power left, as she spent it all on her last strike. The battle between the Titan and the protagonist continues, and the young woman considers that she can't possibly harm that monster with so little power. So, instead, she should run away while the boy distracts the creature and he keeps fighting intensely, trying to stay alive. Despite being a little annoyed, our protagonist keeps running, drawing the monster's attention. And before he knows it, with extreme speed and precision, his flaming staff comes flying toward him and the young man catches it. After using everything she had left to throw it, Jin thinks that she's truly crazy for risking so much for just one person. With that, Harrien leaps into the air and begins to spin with his staff. He then states that he's disappointed. The boy says it's much less than a quarter of what she used before and that it's truly disappointing. However, he believes it should still be enough and, with confidence, the young man wields his staff and lunges to attack the monster. The battle reaches its peak and, at that moment, Jin thinks that the students of the Warrior Academy have heard this more times than they can count. Analyzing the incredible battle, the girl states that in a fight with a monster, the most important thing for an adventurer isn't just brute force. The most important thing is a sense of timing. And right now, our protagonist is executing it perfectly, dodging attacks and waiting for the right moment. The key is to seize the perfect moment to aim for precise strikes, and, at this moment, the primate titan misses its attack, leaving itself exposed. In other words, what adventurers must value above all else is the effectiveness of their attack. And at that moment, Jin was deeply impressed by Yu's skill. After dodging all the primate titan's attacks, Yu uses perfect timing to seize the opportunity and strike the monster's chin with his staff. An explosion occurs, and after it dissipates, the beast's chin is left completely disfigured, its face totally destroyed. The glasses Yu was wearing shatter, but upon realizing that his attack was truly effective and that he had won, the boy allows himself a small smile. A flashback shows a beautiful school, lit by the rays of the setting sun on the horizon. The young Jin had just finished playing with her friends and, since it was time to go home, the girl says goodbye to them. Jin notices a bodyguard waiting for her with a car ready to take her home. So, the girl bids farewell to her friends and the girls plan to meet up the next day to play again. However, Jin overhears her own friends gossiping that she was so lucky to be able to have anything she wanted. Jin thinks that they weren't entirely wrong, since she really could have almost anything she saw because of her social status. Her father owned a South Korean company ranked 4th in the nation, the Jinseon Group, which was world-renowned and highly acclaimed. The group's successor married an elf from another world, and from that union, something was born that would leave its mark on this world. The result was Jin Saron, a girl who was a half-elf with dark hair and a determined spirit. She respected adventurers more than anyone, even admiring them and seeing them as an inspiration. Jin dreamed of becoming an adventurer more than anything else and was willing to give up everything to follow her dream in the future. Shortly after that flashback, a blonde elf is seen saying that something is impossible. Jin is completely exhausted, lying on the ground, and at that moment, the blonde elf says that the girl's elven blood is very weak and that she could practically be considered human. The blonde elf tells someone beside him that, despite this, continuing to push the girl is very wrong and that it would be better to persuade her in another way. Then, Saron's father, Sunggu, says that he isn't forcing the girl to do anything, he's only supporting her because she dreams of being an adventurer. He adds that it's not as if elven talents are a requirement to become an adventurer, and the elf in front of him agrees. He then states that, compared to a human, the girl does in fact have considerably good talent, but despite that, she is still just barely above average, and even if she pushes herself, she won't be rewarded. The blonde elf says he will clarify something for Songgu, since his daughter isn't just a human from a normal family. She won't give up on her own and is as stubborn as her mother, who is the blonde elf's sister. However, even so, the elf coldly states that, despite her efforts, the girl will never be strong compared to monster-rank humans, but if she keeps trying and gets up every time she falls, she might become something decent. Once again, there's a time skip showing Jin as a teenager. The elf concludes by telling Seunggu that, with her effort, it will be enough for the girl to receive praise and recognition like a normal human. Still, his daughter was born with many other advantages to make up for her lack of talent, like prosperity, name, and lineage. These things will make her efforts in vain. No matter how much she trains, there are things that cannot be achieved. People will laugh at her out of envy and she could end up completely isolated, since they'll only see her as a spoiled brat. And one thing is certain, even if Jin is extremely strong, she won't be able to endure it for long, because social isolation is something that destroys anyone. Given that talent doesn't just fall from the sky, we return to the moment Harrien defeated his enemy. Jin, observing the scene, is completely astonished after so many events unfolded before her very eyes. When our protagonist finally lands on the ground, the body of the monster he just defeated also comes crashing down, producing a thunderous crash in the forest. The beast was completely destroyed and defeated after taking that powerful attack straight to the face. With a staff in hand, our protagonist walks along normally until something catches his ear, drawing his attention. Glancing to the side, for some reason, Harrien spotted Jin, who was completely in shock, as if she were seeing a ghost. Staring at the boy's face, the girl muttered that it was impossible, thinking her savior was just a high school kid. After touching his own face, the young man finally realized what had happened, getting extremely irritated that he had been so careless. In a flashback, we see Hawon warning Harrien to be careful not to break his glasses, since they were quite expensive. Holding the strange glasses in his hand, Yu remarked that they should only cost around 5,000 ons, since they look like a common item. However, his boss denied this, explaining that those glasses prevented facial recognition, altered the user's voice, and had over 4 magical enchantments on them. Back in the present, the expensive glasses were completely shattered on the ground after Harrien unleashed that powerful attack. Placing a hand over his face, the boy muttered that things weren't going the way he wanted and that it was frustrating. Still confused, the young woman asked if the boy was a veteran from the Warriors Academy, but irritated by everything that had happened that day, since he just wanted a normal mission, Harrien rudely shot back a no. Then, with extreme anger and veins popping on his face, Yu demanded that the young woman hand over what she had promised. Unexpectedly, without a moment's hesitation, she quickly handed over the necklace, leaving him surprised by how easy it was. He got annoyed seeing how rich Jin was and quickly snatched the jewelry from her hand before she could even get a good look at it. With the necklace in his hand, Harrien began to examine it closely, and after a brief inspection, he confirmed it wasn't a fake. Getting his attention once again, Jin asked if the boy needed more money. She mentioned that she understood that even if he didn't attend the Warriors Academy, the tuition for the Education Center for Adventurers was quite high. However, before she could offer to pay his tuition, the young man clarified that he didn't attend any adventurer school. The girl was even more astonished, and he replied that she was completely mistaken in her assumptions. Harrien explained that he didn't go to any adventurer school and that he hadn't even been near one. On the contrary, he studied at a regular school. The girl then asked who taught him how to fight, and Yu replied that no one did, approaching her with his hands in his pockets and a serious expression. He declared that he had learned by himself. This time it was Jin who got irritated and shouted, saying that was complete nonsense. The girl began to argue that his movements and his sense of timing were not those of someone who had never been trained, and Harrien must be joking. However, in a rude and ungentlemanly manner, something flew towards the girl, hitting her in the face. Realizing that Harrien had thrown something at her, she caught it in her hand and asked what it was. But upon examining it, Sarah realized it was a school ID card, and upon taking the ID out of the plastic, she began to analyze her savior's information. Looking at the card, she noticed that it belonged to Dongang High School and saw that our protagonist's name was Harrien. Harrien said she didn't need to bother remembering it, as that school was just another common one among many in the country. After so many incredible events, the girl was on the verge of a breakdown, declaring it was impossible. Not wanting to be outdone, Yu pointed his staff at the girl and ordered her to hand over something to prove her identity, whether it was in student ID or something similar. After receiving it, the young man began to read it and noticed that the name of the girl was Jin Serum. He then checked if the document was genuine. Our protagonist also confirmed that the girl was the same age as him, realizing that she really belonged to the Warrior Academy. For some reason, he put that ID in his pocket, and Jin asked why he was doing that. Harrien, perplexed, explained that at that moment the girl had made an offer, and so he couldn't take any risks. Since his identity had been revealed, if he accepted a mission from Jin, he needed some guarantee that he wouldn't be betrayed by her. Furthermore, Harrien mentioned that he wouldn't do a job without taking the necessary precautions, adding that he still planned to do one last thing. The young man took out his phone and suddenly put his arm around Jin's shoulders, pulling her into his side hug, leaving the girl blushing heavily. Yu explains that he's going to take a selfie with Jin, because if she ever betrayed him, the photo would serve as proof that Jin was also an accomplice to a smuggler. As they take the picture, the girl remains in shock, and at that moment, Harrien realizes that she might have made a grave mistake. With a threatening expression, our protagonist tells her to smile for the picture. And it was in that instant that she understood she had gotten involved with someone much more dangerous than she could have ever imagined, forcing a small, nervous laugh. The girl shows a fake smile for the camera, but it was already too late to back out. Everything had already begun. And so Harrien takes a picture with Jin next to the Titan's corpse. After taking the selfie, the boy keeps looking at the screen of the phone, making sure everything in the picture was perfect. He then tells Jin that they should start discussing prices and asks her what exactly she wants. Still processing the young man's intense personality, Serum states that her mission is to collect coins. Jin explains that within the 6-hour time limit, she must collect coins placed in various locations throughout the test area. Her objective was to find a box containing a coin in a specific location to prove she was a student of the Warrior Academy. The girl also mentions that she already retrieved one coin, so she only needed to collect one more to pass the school's test. Finally, Jin concludes by informing him that the box containing the last necessary coin was quite close, and our protagonist asks where it was located. The girl reveals that the box is in the ruins of the old Eugen shopping mall. And upon hearing this, the boy is surprised as if he had discovered something. Harrien comments that he understood everything, but Jin finds his reaction strange. Seeing this, Harrien decides to explain that he realized their meeting wasn't a coincidence, since what he was looking for was also in the shopping mall. After Harrien gives a brief explanation of the mission he's on, the girl is in disbelief, shouting that she couldn't believe the boy was after the Imperial Wasp. Having made a slip-up, the boy corrects himself, saying he wasn't after the wasp itself, but something like its royal jelly, although he wasn't sure what it was exactly. Harrien mentions that apparently this jelly has a very strong scent that attracts monsters, and the primate titan was probably also attracted by it. Our protagonist states that it doesn't really matter, but asks if the girl really needs to go to the shopping mall, also asking if there wasn't another place with coins. Apprehensive and with her head down, the girl informs him that the shopping mall is the only place with a remaining coin, since the other groups have probably taken all the other boxes. Upon hearing this, the boy just watches the girl and, upon hearing about the groups, silently understands why she was alone. Determined to help Jin, Harrien says it's fine and that this is actually more convenient for him. He tells Jin that they will enter the place, get the coin and the jelly, and then leave in complete safety. He was about to mention the fee, but the girl, already determined in her goal, says she will pay 950 million onin, adding that it's all the money she has, but upon hearing that huge amount, our protagonist is very impressed by the girl's wealth. Jin continues, saying that if it's not enough, she would just need a little more time. But before she can continue, Harrien interrupts, saying that it's enough. Turning to start walking towards their objective, the boy says that he'll charge more if there's an emergency, but if the plan goes well, that amount will be enough. The boy asks if the girl has enough stamina to run now, and she quickly nods, saying yes. Immediately, they start a fast run into the forest to reach their objective. The young woman, who is a little behind and completely out of breath, analyzes Harrien running effortlessly ahead of her and thinks that the boy is incredibly fast. As our protagonist runs, he sighs, thinking that he accepted the offer too quickly and that he should have asked for more money since the girl seemed rich. During the run, Jin shouts, asking if she can ask him a specific question to the boy. With a bored expression, he allows her to ask, and then she asks him if he really learned everything on his own. To the girl's surprise, he replies that not everything, but the vast majority he learned by training alone. Continuing on their way, Harrien began to explain his past, mentioning that when he was a kid. However, before he could finish his sentence, the boy sensed danger. Right in front of them, two strange alien-like creatures were hunting their prey. The name of these beasts is Garoraptor, a species native to what was once Boramaiden. Seeing this, Yu quickly tells Jin to get ready for a fight. She, who was running beside him, quickly stops, draws her bow, and prepares to attack the beasts. To her surprise, with incredible speed, Harrien doesn't even wait for Jin, he charges directly at the creatures. It's explained that Harrien never received any official training as an adventurer, and the skills he now possesses were acquired by risking his life. But there is one exception. When he was younger, he witnessed his father's incredible movements. This allowed him to learn 3 specific techniques. As he approaches the monster with his staff, Harrien uses one of those techniques against the Garoraptor. The first of these techniques is called the Needle, where he uses all his speed and weight to strike a vital point on his opponent. At this moment, the boy executes the same move. It's a simple yet refined technique gained through experience, senses, and, above all, his talent. It's a technique that even high-ranking adventurers haven't mastered, but Harrien has perfected it, defeating the first of the monsters with just that one blow. Since the other monster was only a 2-star, it was easily defeated by Jin, who only suffered a few scratches. After putting her bow away, Song comments that something didn't add up, as Garoraptors usually travel in groups of at least 5 creatures. Hearing this, Harrien informs her that it means she wasn't the only one affected by the scent of the royal jelly. All kinds of monsters are likely nearby, and, at this point, they've already reached the outskirts of the city where the shopping mall is. Noticing the girl didn't seem to be in the best condition, Yu suggests they take a short break before continuing. Returning to the previous conversation, the girl asks if he had any personal training when he was younger. Once again, Yu replies no, that he just watched someone train and managed to imitate that person's movements. However, because he was trying to be stealthy and not be noticed by this person, he only learned a few specific moves. Since he isn't asked this question often, he wonders why the girl is so curious about it. Instead of answering, Jin gets extremely frustrated, stating that after all this she really doesn't like him. Suddenly, the young woman throws something at Harrien, who quickly catches it without understanding what it is. Upon examining it, he realizes it's a stamina potion that is extremely expensive. Seeing this, Yu asks if she is really going to give it to him for free. Jin urges the boy to drink the liquid because he likely wasn't in his original condition due to exhaustion. However, he points out that Jin just said she didn't like him, but then gave him a gift, so she wasn't being consistent. But to the girl's surprise, the boy starts to put the potion away, and Jin asks why he's doing that. Harrien replies that he won't drink it because he could sell it later, leaving Jin even more furious. She starts to argue with Harrien, saying it's worth a lot and that he should just drink it. Still, the boy explains that he knows the value of the item and that if he sold it on the black market, he would get a good amount of money. The girl curses the boy in her mind, thinking that he's strange and extremely weird, but he's all she has. Changing his mind, Harrien says that since she doesn't need to rest after drinking the potion, they should continue their adventure, and so they do. Noticing that the girl is still a bit distracted, reflecting on everything, the boy thinks that rich kids are extremely strange and don't care much about money. Afterwards, the two approach the shopping center, and Harrien comments that Jin already knew this, but they should go over the plan one more time to be sure. He states that their goal isn't to hunt monsters, but to take what they need and get out immediately. He adds that, no matter how many monsters are inside, she must always follow his instructions and keep her composure despite everything. Finally, Harrien says that he's sure the girl has learned a lot, but his specialty is survival and she just needs to trust him. However, for some reason, Jin is acting strangely, unable to pinpoint the cause of the strange feeling she's having. Last semester, Jin was a nobody at the Warrior Academy, unrecognized by others and often excluded. However, this was the first time she had ventured into danger with a partner who didn't look down on her. And when Harrien stands up, he declares that they must get going. The girl is still a little apprehensive, knowing she is about to face imminent danger. The two are now standing in front of an old shopping center that is completely overgrown with vegetation. Inside, everything is dark and in ruins, with the forest and trees having completely taken over the place. But something happens that startles not only Jin, but also Harrien, putting them both on high alert. An overwhelming pressure begins to envelop the two, and Jin asks what it is. But even Harrien doesn't know, as he has never encountered anything like it in his life. Looking ahead, they both notice several mutilated monster corpses, and whoever did that was incredibly powerful. Humans are beings capable of being braver than they imagine, and if they are properly motivated, they can endure any situation. The only obstacle to this are events that fall outside the scope of the initial plan. Those monsters are not from this area, they are dangerous even for professional explorers. Seeing the massacre, they can't even imagine what could be in there. The boy tells her not to lose focus. There is something very dangerous in there, and it's not like she didn't know, she was just surprised, because the scene is more terrifying than she imagined. But so far, nothing has changed. As soon as he finished speaking, she saw something in the shadows. There was a silhouette moving. Seeing this, the boy drew his spear. Then the creature stood up. It was a slasher with a danger level between 2 and 3 stars. Without wasting any time, it charged at the creature. Its mouth began to open, revealing something. It was a huge tongue, now heading towards the boy. He quickly managed to defend himself from the attack using his staff. However, he felt that something was different. The creature had managed to trap his weapon with its tongue. Taking advantage of the contact between them, it retracted its tongue with the exerted force. He ended up being dragged along with the staff. Before getting close to the creature, he let it go. If he hadn't done that, he would have ended up in its jaws. From above, safe, he looked at the monster again. Leaving his position, he prepared to deliver a kick. The attack was precise. He landed it. From a distance, the girl was watching attentively, waiting for the right moment to attack. Calmly, he picked up the staff from the ground. That was terrifying for her, and she didn't expect that creature to still be alive when they arrived, but its survival ability is high. But the boy said it wasn't just that. He had kept it alive longer on purpose. In case someone else arrived, it would serve as a warning, since that creature tends to scream to call its allies whenever it feels its life is in danger. The girl didn't understand and wanted to know who he wanted to warn with the alarm. It was for himself, because he couldn't just sit around and wait. Another figure appeared, saying that he had a lot to clean up and that, after that, he ended up feeling a bit exhausted. The girl knew this was another explorer. The boy was very apprehensive and she wanted to know if they knew each other. The newcomer said that this wasn't very normal. These two were too new to be smugglers. Looking at them more closely, he saw a crest on the girl's clothes. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared. Now he was on the ground in front of them, asking if they were from the warrior school. Answering the question, the girl said they were. If that's the case, he didn't even know what kind of team they were. But it's a shame, because they were going to end up dying in that place. Upon hearing this, the girl was terrified. The boy asked her why she was paying attention to those words. That person wasn't a normal explorer, as she should have guessed. He was a villain who had come to kill him and steal the royal jelly. Then, he said that he shouldn't have contact with his commissioner and that he shouldn't touch his things without authorization, but he said that he only had to deal with the consequences of his actions if he was caught and that, so far, he had been very lucky. He had heard that his partner was smuggling an item of great value. The plan was to ambush him on the way, but things ended up happening differently. He failed at the task of having to exterminate them. He confirmed that he had entered there, but he still hadn't managed to find him. But he imagines that he must be hidden in some place the smugglers use. Upon hearing this, the boy realized that was the reason why contact with the smuggling center had been cut off and not because of the wasp's venom. It was all the work of the guy who had just appeared. Even without having started to fight, Harrien could already sense the situation. That opponent would be difficult, and he even suggested that he could offer them a death without pain if they cooperated. This man certainly had a higher rank than the stranger they encountered before. Harrien told the girl to find the coins and run because he would buy them some time. With that guy's actions, there shouldn't be too many monsters left and she should run fast. While he was still talking to her, the stranger had begun his attack. Even though he was incredibly fast, his sword missed the mark. The boy then reinforced the order for her to flee and stop being foolish. For them to get paid, she needed to be okay. Seeing her leave, the stranger became enraged, furiously saying that it wasn't a wise decision. Working together had increased their chances of survival until now, but the boy wasn't thinking about that at the moment. Focusing, he began to channel his power. His eyes held only focus and determination. He wielded his staff with mastery and violence. This startled the stranger, who realized his movements had been anticipated. Now, something was heading for his face. It was the sole of Jurian's foot, which he slammed furiously into the man's face. The stranger's body went flying from the impact, but the boy knew things weren't over yet. He heard the stranger say he was surprised by what had happened. Indeed, he had underestimated them for being young, but now he would use his gear. Although the boy was young, he was better than the average pro, so the stranger would have to get more serious. He then told him not to be afraid, that it would be quick. This was Yang Do-yoon, an adventurer of the gold class. The ground was cracked with multiple fissures. The kettle had started to boil and someone said that it wasn't bad at all. In fact, his instant noodles were really good. Looking at the bald man, he offered him some, but he refused. He should at least sit down, since it would take a while for the guy to wake up from his beauty sleep. The bald man was furious, since he paid a lot of money to the guy who was sleeping on the job. He was strutting around saying he was an adventurer. The other man told him not to be so hard on him. He didn't lose because he was bad, He lost because his opponent was just that good. What people ignore is that adventurers don't just fight humans. That guy must have been trained in hunting and exploration, not in having to fight another person. Since he wasn't used to it, it's to be expected that he'd lose to a smuggler. The bald man was outraged and said that even among adventurers, he'd heard different things. And in fact, there are plenty among them who fight each other a lot. The better they get, the bigger the rewards, and fights become inevitable. Even party members end up giving into greed and betraying their colleagues. Hearing that, the bald man didn't want to believe they would kill each other. But there's no one to stop them. Not to mention, there are no rules inside dungeons. You just say a monster killed him, you don't even need an alibi. In fact, the higher their rank, the more they need to be prepared to fight others. But things aren't that simple. The sleeping guy's class wasn't high enough, which is why he's on the ground now. Attacking a party member? How cute. And if he was caught, it means a non-lethal fight happened outside the dungeon. It was certainly an argument without gear, but the bald man didn't know what gear was. It's the weapons and armor that an adventurer takes into the dungeon, even if it's insignificant. With it, even the sleeper could have put up more of a fight. It's enough to make a difference. Gear is half of an adventurer's combat ability. He knew the stranger hadn't dodged his attack. That blow was precise and powerful, hitting him squarely. The blade has a high defense. As he was thinking, the stranger told him not to get distracted. Facing the imminent blow, he blocked the attack with his staff. Getting distracted isn't very respectful on his part, neither to his opponent nor to his own life, which could end in the blink of an eye. Seizing the moment, he kicked the boy in the stomach. The blow was very strong and he was thrown several feet. Before crashing into something, he stopped his advance by planting his feet on the ground. As soon as he stopped, the stranger was already on him once more and dealt several slashes with his blade, unable to block them all. A few small cuts found their way onto his body. A small wound appeared on his cheek. The stranger was now very confident and taunted him, telling him to fight like before if he was able. That was impossible. The shadow jacket was an S-rank armor and the stranger was using one. It uses the user's blood to increase defense against physical damage, in addition to boosting strength. It's strange. At this very moment, he was using berserker combat. It would be difficult to find openings, but not impossible. However, if he attempted a poorly planned counterattack, he would die without a doubt. The battle continued and the stranger was out of control. A quick slash was made at abdomen level. This caused the boy to panic and the stranger said he had fallen into his trap. Still, he had lasted a long time. However, that wasn't what he expected to see. The boy asked him if today was some special day, taking off the jacket he was wearing. He stood up and said that he really liked the stranger's jacket. After all, that guy wasn't as strong as he had imagined. He had gotten scared because the guy had a great aura. But if he couldn't do more than that against a student without gear, he must be a mediocre fighter who depended on it. If only the boy had a jacket like that. Hearing these words struck the stranger's ego hard. He started screaming uncontrollably and said that the boy would pay for his insolence. Harrien knew that the one who needed to hurry wasn't him. His opponent had to win the fight, find Sound, and finish her off. The advantage was his if he kept the fight prolonged. This would make the stranger impatient, and Harrien was well aware of that. His focus and concentration were completely on that goal. The stranger advanced furiously to end the battle. In front of him, the boy prepared to defend himself. The clash between the weapons was powerful, with aura emanating from both. When he was just a child, he learned this just by watching. This was the second technique. A vortex of blue aura emerged between them. His strength wasn't enough for this, so he needed the enemy's strength to use it against him and inflict an attack that he couldn't make on his own. The name of this technique, which he hadn't yet perfected, is swelling, and its effect is devastating. Single blow had been extremely powerful. The explosion created by the impact was enormous. He was now leaning on his staff on the ground. His insides were injured. The technique had taken its toll on him. He hadn't imagined that he would use that in a real fight. It hadn't even crossed his mind. And to think a professional adventurer would be someone who would only attack head-on and nothing else. He told the stranger to surrender, as his time was up. Pulling out a dagger, he told the boy to shut his mouth. His hands were trembling as if in fear. Unexpectedly, he stabbed himself in the chest with it. The boy hadn't expected it, but the stranger said that no matter what happened, he would make sure of one thing: to kill that brat. On the 5th floor of the department store, something was happening. San seemed to have reached his destination. He had found a box. Then he placed his hand on the bluish circle. The box confirmed his ID number and identity. Now that he had found it, all he had to do was return. Suddenly, he felt something different in the air. He looked back to watch. He remembered what Harrien had told him, to run away, because he needed to be safe. That was the only way they would get money. Now he thought that nothing would change even if he ran. The effort to believe those words was enormous. In his mind, only the stranger's face appeared. Surely he wouldn't fight if he didn't know a way to escape. Now, he contemplated the options he could take. The stranger liked to bully others at school. It was one of his favorite pastimes. In fact, he was a genius. Ever since he was a child, he felt that everything in his life would be easy because, obviously, he was very talented. The praise from adults was just a consequence, as was being the dominant figure among his peers. But there was one complication at that time, a goal he hadn't achieved. He was rejected by the warrior school. As a consolation, he believed they made political decisions favoring money over talent. To him, it was the only possible explanation, because if it were based on talent and skill alone, there was no way he wouldn't have been accepted there. In a test of perseverance, he had placed first place. Compared to the average young man, he wasn't just a genius, he was far above them. Once again, he had achieved a high rank, something that didn't even surprise his classmates, but he liked knowing that he had become a topic of conversation. Now they were facing the final task before graduation. After the graduation ceremony, someone showed up. The principal congratulated him and said he would be an excellent adventurer. As a piece of advice, he told him not to become conceited and to always keep moving forward. Hearing this, he just thought that in front of him was a nobody who had retired early and now had a mediocre job. He was determined to rub it in his face that he would reach a place in life that people like the principal could only dream of. Now he was lying on the dungeon floor, terrified. The one who rescued him said he had arrived quickly because he thought the situation was dangerous, but he didn't expect it to be such a weak monster. That same monster had killed his entire team with ease. They were no match for reality. The adventurer looked at him with a familiar gaze. It was the same one he used to give other people. It was at that moment when he realized the old man's words weren't advice. They were words of comfort about his future. He wasn't one of the chosen ones. He was just better than the average person. The mediocre admired him, but he was only a little better than them. That jacket was made entirely of a living vampire, and he let all its blood flow into his heart. That's the price for him to kill the boy. In response, he asked if he was sure about that, because that little trick looked like it would give him a hangover. But the stranger advanced without hesitation. The force of the impact was violent. Despite the change, his speed hadn't increased much, only his appearance, which was terrifying. The attacks were strong and unpredictable. To the boy's surprise, the stranger's arm was now stretching. Of all the unexpected things that had happened that day, this was yet another one. Blood dripped onto the ground. The stranger looked at his panting victim. His stance was defensive, but he was exhausted. Somehow, he had managed to block the attack. Indeed, good reaction, speed, and a lot of talent. The stranger wanted to know why he had become a smuggler, but the boy didn't understand the question. Opening something with his mouth, he asked what that sudden compliment was about, because what he did with his life was none of his business. Regardless of the answer, the stranger thanked him. Thanks to the boy, he could now trample on a talented person. Excited, he prepared to fulfill a dream. However, the boy wasn't going to let that happen so easily. Despite the damage he had suffered, his body moved without any problem. Seeing this, the stranger got even more excited and wanted him to show even more talent. The boy knew that this horrible form couldn't be maintained for long. If his fuel was blood, it was obvious there would eventually be a limit. So, he could provoke him into using even more blood and force him to use the needle. But the stranger was already aware of what could happen. Now it was too late for the boy. The stranger was about to land another blow. Unexpectedly, a fiery explosion occurred on his shoulder. The boy looked to the side to see what had happened. His friend had returned to help him, smiling at him. He hadn't imagined that would happen. Really, she never listens to anything he says. That behavior of hers is very touching at times. With the stranger within reach of her staff, she struck him once more. The place was now filled with debris. The void was filled only by a fine mist on the ground, and the stranger's body lay there, although they still didn't know if he was really dead. But the boy didn't think that would have been enough for that outcome, and he told them not to worry about it. With a picture of him, he said he certainly wouldn't try to get revenge, or he might risk his entire career. He was sure that would be enough for now. Picking up her staff from the ground, she asked if he had already forgotten. She had saved his life, so he owed her one. That makes it 2 times. Now, one at the beginning and the second when she decided to follow him. But since he is a generous person, he'll just count it as one nuisance. The girl wanted to know if it pained him to say sorry. In the building's parking lot, the destruction was complete. From a hole in the floor, a golden light emanated. They looked at it, and then at the light. It surely had to be something interesting. Going down the stairs, they got closer and closer to the source of the glow. As they got closer, they began to smell something sweet in the air. Near the end of the staircase, they could see better. There was a body on the floor and a briefcase in its lap. Apparently, the golden glow they had seen from outside came from it. He cautiously approached the body. In front of it, he closed his eyes as if paying his respects. Looking at the girl, he told her that he had already warned her about the things she would see, but she had followed him anyway. Since they were there, they decided to take a look inside the briefcase. Placing his hands on it, he began to open it. The smell they experienced was beyond their ability to describe, sweet and captivating, almost inviting those who smelled it to forget what they were thinking. Exposed like this, it was surely drawing monsters to the place. Looking at the object next to it, he wondered if there was also royal jelly in that bag. His instinct told him that they should leave soon, because strange things could happen if they stayed too long. As they left, they quickly reached the first floor. The stranger's body was no longer there. If he was alive, he must have escaped. A scream echoed, frightening her, saying that they should just wait for what was to come. He said he remembered each of their faces well, and from now on, he would do everything possible to destroy them. He would make sure they regretted what they did to him that day. The stranger runs with hatred in his eyes, but he soon realizes that life is full of surprises. In front of him is a monster so hungry that it has already leaped at him with its mouth open. This was not the end he expected to find. With no way to react, he ended up becoming monster food. His revenge would have to wait for another life, maybe if he's reborn in an isekai. Not even the guys who had spared him expected his karma to be paid back so quickly. Perhaps it would be better for them to leave through the back door. Outside, the sun begins to set on the horizon. After walking for a while, he figures they must be safe now. Looking at the girl, he asked about her test, but it seems she still has time. He then held out his hand to say goodbye, saying that it was great to have met her. Although it had been good, they had both now finished their business together. On his face was a sincere smile about it. They shook hands, both satisfied with what they had accomplished. As they were leaving, he reminded her about the secret and the payment, and to be careful in life, in case she didn't want to see him again. But there was something she wanted to say. She wanted to know if it was okay for them to see each other again. On the ground, there were discarded wrappers. Caballino looked to the side, interested. The boy had returned, and from his torn clothes, it looked like he had quite a bit of fun. Now they wanted to take a look inside the briefcase too. The characteristic glow began to emerge. It would be crazy if that were released to the public. It would be enough to buy a few buildings. He congratulated the boy for the job and said he would send the payment soon. Smoking his cigarette, he looked at him one more time. Harrien seemed strange, so Caballino wanted to know if everything was okay with him. He wanted to know if it was because of the adventurer who died while fighting against him, but he died later and it wasn't a situation he should feel sorry about. Caballino asked if anything else had happened while he was there. The boy dodged the question, saying it was nothing and that he should stop asking. Looking at the briefcase, he asked if he could take what was left, since it didn't seem to be real. Jelly. Of course, all items that weren't part of the objective belonged to the smuggler. That was the rule. He wanted to know who the kid was that would eat it. It could bring back the dead, but it had another use. Besides that, it could increase an individual's limits, enhancing their potential talent. It wasn't very clear, but it only worked on those who hadn't reached adulthood, so they wouldn't give it to someone for whom it wouldn't work. Surely it was for someone from the warrior school. Harrien said he was leaving, and Caballino wished him good luck. He sent a message for him to give to his father to say hello, and the boy said he would if he had the chance. He hadn't been doing very well recently. Outside, he looked at the color of the twilight sky and thought about the school of warriors. He remembered what the girl had told him directly. He wanted to know if she was interested in him, but she said she wasn't joking. There was an entrance exam in the winter. They only accepted a few people, but he had a good chance of getting in. Looking at him, she emphasized that he should try. No adventurer can explore a dungeon alone. It doesn't matter how skilled they are. Facing the unreal situations of dungeons alone is practically impossible. That's why a team is needed. Different people with different talents combine their skills to overcome weaknesses and become stronger. That's how dungeons are explored. This school has political factions, and he wanted to know if they fought each other. If it were that simple, they wouldn't have to worry about them. In her class, there were two factions. The two in the top three led the factions. Upon hearing this, he wanted to know if she belonged to one and found out she hadn't joined them. And about the situation, teachers don't interfere because it's the student's responsibility to find their team. He knew she was, implying this was happening because she wasn't that skilled, and she also knew she wouldn't be a top student. Still, she should be able to find a team. Even those who weren't in factions could do it, and one of the faction leaders didn't want her. It wasn't explicit, but it was obvious. Behind her back, he intentionally isolated her from the others. Harrien wanted to know if she had stolen that girl's boyfriend, and of course, that wasn't the reason. In any case, she had survived alone until now, but she wouldn't be able to in the coming years. That's why she wanted to hire Harrien with his skill, or rather, only with him. She might have a chance to survive. Thinking about this, he looked at the medicines on the counter. In fact, she's a pretty funny girl. She sighed, exhausted, after having a turbulent day. She finally arrived where she wanted to be and announced her presence. She's at the dungeon barrier in Gangnam, at location number 12. Meanwhile, she was thinking about the boy she had met. As he was leaving, he told her he had heard what she said clearly and wished her luck. In her mind, she imagined he wouldn't talk to her about the subject. As she was thinking, someone told her she wasn't late. It was Kay, one of her instructors, responsible for training in hand-to-hand combat. He wanted to know if something had happened, since she still had time, and he said there had been a problem. Uncommon monsters had been spotted in certain areas. There were no casualties, but some students said that completing the test was impossible and requested help. Those students were in the same area where she had retrieved the coin. Looking at her, he wanted to know if she had any trouble with the assignment. Anxiously, she said no. He listened without reacting and didn't question her, but ordered her to stay behind him, and the girl sensed the presence of a monster there. She turned towards it and became even more frightened. Another one like the one that ate the stranger, but even bigger. A titan ape in that area was quite unusual, as they don't live anywhere nearby. Perhaps it had been attracted by something, and the girl began to imagine what it could have been. It was certainly the scent she had perceived earlier. The instructor told Sarum once again to stay behind him, and she apologized. That monster was completely focused on eating them. All the instructors at this school were once adventurers. Some left the profession due to the lingering effects of injuries sustained throughout their lives. That's what outsiders think of them. A single punch from that instructor was devastating. The force was so immense that the Titan was being overwhelmed. Fire began to rise rapidly up his arm. As soon as it reached the head, it was destroyed. The monster's lifeless body fell to the ground. These instructors, when they were younger, earned the title of Harriens. Even in death, the head of the monster kept exploding. His prosthesis had been destroyed, and he said the girl was lucky he was there, because this could have ended in a very dangerous way. Still, he rested his hand on her shoulder. It's very good to know she's safe. Now it's time to return to a safe place. People sometimes ignore the fact that the instructors there are also warriors. Back at the school, they asked about the students who requested the rescue. Those students would have to repeat the test, which was very fortunate. He said that the people who went there were just weaklings. As they were talking, he said that one of the weaklings was arriving. Looking at her, the man with one arm told her to go inside and wait. He would confirm that everyone was there, and she should check the numbers and put on her uniform. In fact, she felt much more relieved now. A girl said that she had told her she would be fine. At least her tactic was quick. This fake person was Anisha, and she said she was very worried about her classmate. In response, she said she didn't imagine she was worried. Continuing with the cynicism, she said it wasn't because of her, that it was her sister who said those things. It all started 6 years ago. Sarum's uncle said she needed to increase her performance. She should pay attention and stay focused, but that required too much effort on her part. He ended the exercise, said it was enough, and that at least she had improved since the last time, but only a little. On the other side, she heard someone cheering for her. Exhausted, she looked to see what was happening. It was her sister, showing much more talent. Anish mastered that technique with ease. Not only did she not look like a hybrid in appearance, but she could use magic more masterfully than many purebloods. She said that her cousin was a genius, and if she wanted to continue on this path, she would always remain in her shadow and be constantly compared should be the least of her worries. She also suggested that she be cautious. The girl seemed sadistic, yet cynical. She said she didn't understand why no one wanted to be on the same team as her with the skills she had. Then she interrupted her and said that if she was curious, she should form a team with her. She said she couldn't, since they both had the same role, dealing magical damage from a distance. It didn't make sense for two people to have the same task. This is a situation that others should resolve, not her. But she still shouldn't worry because she's sure there will be another test. So she said she doesn't care about the test because she's already tested her. Anish says she's impressed and that her sister must have tried her best, but she advised her not to try too hard. After all, she's the one who has to inherit the company anyway. This brief interaction left her deeply irritated. What Anish really wants is for her to stop trying. It's already night and the lights are visible in the building. The door suddenly opens. Jairong is very agitated now. The patient's guardian has arrived and Jairong wants to know if something has gone wrong. Unfortunately, his father has had a relapse. The doctors don't know how else to explain it. This patient has an extremely rare condition, possibly the only person in the world who suffers from it. There is no record in medical literature of anyone else who has been poisoned by dragon's blood and survived. Jairong knows the best they can do is palliative care to reduce his father's pain, nothing more. But that's not the only problem. The ingredients for the painkillers are also an issue. The milk of an extremely dangerous monster is the only thing that can alleviate the pain at this stage. The flying tiger, a 5-star danger level monster. He says that he has money, but the doctor was adamant that money is not the problem. There is a new popular potion among adventurers that increases strength and stamina for a long time, even in small doses. One of its ingredients is the milk of this beast. This was an ingredient that could once be bought with money, as it was considered useless, though valuable. But things have changed, and now companies and adventurers are buying large quantities of it. Jairong is furious that they don't even have a little to save a person who is dying. But the doctor said that wasn't the problem. The amount he needs is the same as what's used to make 10 of those potions. If there were enough patients who needed it, the government could intervene. But since there's only one in the entire world, that's not going to happen, because there isn't a public health system like the one in Korea. They'll do what they can, but without the ingredient, not much can be done. After receiving this devastating news, he sits on a park bench, deep in thoughtful. Life seems to be getting more and more complicated. He took out his phone to call someone. It was the girl he met before. He asked her if it was too late to call, but she said it was fine. He told her straight up that he didn't have many options left other than to accept her offer. Hearing this, she asked if he had any conditions. After listening, she said she could take a look and that things might work out that way. He's still in disbelief that she can pull it off, but she said yes, it's her company that manufactures that potion, and since he doesn't need much, it's an achievable request. He didn't expect to hear that, but he's happy. If so, it seems they have a verbal agreement. She reminded him that he needs to prepare for the entrance exam. There's nothing to lose by preparing in advance. The next day, he goes to the company's headquarters building. She said that he had arrived early. As she approached, she asked him how he was feeling, and he said he was fine. Harrien wanted to know what they were going to do there, and she said they were going to measure his potential. The world has changed a lot, and before that, a common human could only reach the level of those who reached C rank. They were basically geniuses. Anything above B rank is beyond human, excluding magic. You need to be at least C rank in 5 categories. To become an explorer, to go to the warrior school, you need to be at least that in 3 of them. Harrien wanted to know if they were just going to give him a physical test. They do that with children, but after puberty, it's a bit more complex. He wanted to know what made it more complex. Dressed in an exotic suit, he found out why. It got more complicated. He should have caught on when she asked him how he was feeling. In front of him was a battle robot. Since they were there, he was interested in giving it his all because he was curious. To find out what his potential was, Harrien prepared to fight the robot. A blue light began to emerge from the dummy, just as smoke started coming out of it. The girl watched, impressed by this start. With her was another woman who said he was brave. Most people get scared by the golem. This is Jun, a specialist in golems, and she's curious about the determination of the boy who wants to transfer. She smiles discreetly, as she knows that's not exactly the case. Placing her cup on the table after drinking her coffee, it was time to start the aptitude test. The golem's parts begin to move. It prepares to attack the person in front of it. Harrien isn't intimidated at all. This test is usually done between the 6th and 7th year, and the suit is used to ensure that data is collected accurately. This way, the body can be pushed to its limit in various areas, but it's difficult to measure if they really have talent or if they've simply trained for a long time. She knows that Harrien has physical gifts. It won't be easy to push him to his limit. Still, he should be tired by now. The other woman calls Saon. She wants to confirm if this boy really failed admission to a specialized school, because now she's very curious. So talented. He must have failed something truly difficult. That model is used even with its difficulty reduced to train professionals. With just a few dodges, he identified a pattern and found an opening to attack. His skills are simply impressive, using only his senses. He's already better than the average professional. Saon wants to know the result of the measurement. That's a bit more complicated, because he clearly hasn't reached his limit yet. It's necessary to increase the test's difficulty, but there's no point in just raising it 1 or 2 levels. It needs to be taken to its maximum power, and she wants to know if Sarum is aware of the risks. It's a crime to do this with unregistered professionals, but if they don't, there's no way to find out his limits. She tries to think of a possibility. As she enters the room, someone tells her she doesn't get paid to do this kind of thing. She turns in surprise to see who just arrived. It's Director SC, who said the lab can't be used without reporting the reason. San sees her uncle. They didn't expect him to come here on a Sunday. He said he hopes there's a reason why she's willing to risk being arrested. San says she's the one responsible, since she was the one who requested this. He wants to know if it was really her or if it's just an excuse to cover for her employee. San shouldn't get confused. This place belongs to her father, not her. There's nothing she can do to take the responsibility herself. The rumors about the director are certainly true. He's her maternal uncle, and he has always been cold to her, even though she hasn't done anything wrong. It's the weekend, and other adventurers linked to the company also use this place. He was about to continue his reprimand, but Jairong spoke over the intercom. He wanted to know if there was a problem up there. He wants to know who he is and if he's at his level. The employee says he's a friend of Sarum's. She explained that he had failed the entrance exams and lost his potential registration. That's why he was here. Since it's expensive, she just wanted to help a friend who couldn't afford it. Sig looked at the golem, which looked like it had taken a beating. Thinking about what he just saw, he said he would take care of this. The employee wanted to know what he meant by that. He heard that the golem wasn't enough and that it couldn't be taken out of safe mode, so he's going to go down and face this friend himself. Jae-rong still doesn't know if everything is okay. It's not uncommon for adventurers to get into conflicts with each other when it's hard to find someone's limits, and in this particular case, the opponent is several levels above the one taking the test. Sig said he'll skip the introduction, because he doesn't have much time to waste. Jae-rong realized quickly. That guy is definitely not normal. He has no idea who he's about to face, but his senses immediately went on high alert. Sig told him to do his best. The stranger from before had been the first person he fought. No matter how he looked at it, he felt this wasn't a beatable opponent. Upon hearing the order to attack, he hesitated. He didn't need to worry about Sig's safety, so Jae-rong began to plan his attack. He started channeling his aura. He finally began his charge. Sig stood still, waiting for contact. Despite appearances, Sig is the 7th strongest ranker in all of Korea, a white-class adventurer. Jae-rong couldn't identify a single opening, but he's not giving up. He's going to create an opportunity. His combat strategy is simple. As soon as his opponent dodges, he'll execute a single attack from behind. To do that, he'll use the opening created by the dodge. His staff was blocked with a single hand. That wasn't the result he expected. This guy is really strong. Seek remarked that this kid is even more reckless than he had initially imagined. With Jae-rong right in front of him, Seek struck him with a single kick. Jae-rong felt the brutal impact. His body was sent flying into the wall. However, he can't figure one thing out. Whether he attacked that way because he knew it was a simulation, or if he actually thought it would work. No matter the answer, the choice was foolish either way. With his foot, Seek kicked the staff back into his hands. Even though Jae-rong is still conscious, he's lost the only weapon he had. This put Jae-rong on high alert, which made sense. Then Seek tossed the staff back to him. Until now, Seek had been lenient with the kid's foolish decisions. One more mistake, and Seek promised that he would make sure Jae-rong regretted ever becoming an adventurer. He got to his feet, taking an offensive stance. Jae-rong doesn't know exactly why, but he feels a grudge building against him, though he won't take it personally. He charged forward again to attack. Seek assumed that since the approach was similar to the last one, he would follow the same pattern. However, Jae-rong planted one of his feet firmly on the ground. This put Seek on high alert. In front of him, 2 attacks were heading his way. A ranged attack meant to catch him off guard. Afterwards, it's still not enough. Jae-rong thought that this guy probably wasn't satisfied yet, which is good because he's just getting started. His staff was now glowing with a bright blue light. He prepared himself to unleash a powerful attack. Seek still didn't know what to expect from the kid. Once again, a barrage of attacks came at him. Exhaling some of his aura, Seek said that it wasn't bad at all. He clenched his fists tightly. Prepared, he managed to fend off all the incoming attacks. From above, the employee watched the fight, thinking it looked like a battle between 2 professionals. Given the technical level of the fight, it's hard to believe that this kid hasn't been accepted into any academy yet. To be honest, it's not like he's perfect at everything. Siram wanted to know what he meant by that. He has a weakness that holds him back a lot. In that very aspect, the employee said, "You are far superior to him." And Siram wondered what that could be because he's apparently fighting Seek on equal footing. Now he was curious about what was wrong with him. Jae-rong narrowly dodged a blow. That punch nearly struck his unguarded face. The employee began to watch the fight with concern. Jae-rong had lost any advantage and was being repeatedly struck. He was in agony, unable to react fast enough to block the attacks, but he mustered all his determination to fight back. He swung his staff in a way that pushed his opponent backward. Seek remarked that Jae-rong managed to keep control of his staff at the very last moment. That was certainly true. Seek's fist sank into the kid's abdomen. Once again, Jae-rong was sent flying into the wall. The wall. The director is truly exceptional and knows that he is still holding back. Saranam watches the fight closely. Sik tells Jaron not to worry about the loss, since it would have happened anyway, but his way of accepting defeat is pathetic. Jaron lacks basic training. This is the same opinion that the employee has of him. His talent and reflexes are truly exceptional, but he lacks the fundamentals. It's as if he's never trained a day in his life. She even feels disappointed thinking that if he had been trained in the basics, his potential would have been immense. Saranam remembered that Jaron had told her he had never been taught by anyone. Sik said that he had seen many people like him. Although they are talented, they don't dedicate themselves to refining what they already possess. But Saranam knows that's not the case with him. Sik gave him some credit for that. However, he strongly suggested that he give up. Someone as weak as him could end up dead if he only relies on his talent. Getting up, Jaron said that Sik has no idea about something. He's been spouting so much nonsense. It's as if he hates him for thinking he's lazy. Sick was surprised because he had planned for his last blow to end the fight. Jaren said that he doesn't care about the results, but he wants to go for one more round, because now he will show him the result of his hard work. The employee asked what was going on with them. He found it amusing that they wanted to keep fighting, but they already had enough data to calculate his potential. Even Saronum tried to intervene, saying that it wasn't necessary to continue. He could stop now and review his results. Sick says he doesn't know what he's trying to do, but no matter what he does, the result will always be the same. He even thinks the kid wants words of affirmation from him. To be frank, that's not exactly what he's looking for. Jaron is really irritated, and all he wants now is to punch this arrogant elf. With no one to teach him, he had to learn everything from scratch in his own way. Still, things didn't go too badly. He really has a natural talent. That's how he managed to fill the gaps that basic training would have taught him. Furthermore, he has vast field experience that made him capable of doing what he wanted, and exceptional progress, but it never crossed his mind that he was better than others. In fact, he often felt disappointed by the frauds who in the end were weaker than him. But that elf over there is different from everyone else. Sick now wants to hit him so hard that the kid won't even feel anger. He's a monster out of Jaren's league. Seeing the exhaled aura, he realizes something. Now he is really being taken seriously by the elf. Facing someone he considered a real challenge, his blood started to boil without him even realizing it. Watching the scene, the employee says that this is crazy and he doesn't know why the director is like this too. Saranam noticed that his stance is different from before. His posture and weight distribution are a bit more aggressive. They are now two completely different people from before. Jaren sighs calmly after preparing himself. He initiated his attack. This time, things would be different. He executes his first strike, which is intense. Although Sick dodged, his cheek was grazed. Not even the employee can believe what he's seeing. Jaren is really attacking in a different way. However, even so, if he continues to dodge everything, compared to before, his movements are still simple and rough, but there are no more openings. He doesn't know who taught him, but that is simply phenomenal. All Jaren wants now is to hit this elf. He remembers who he used to watch when he was a kid. Everything that man did, he imitated as best he could. Tired of dodging, Sig catches the staff with one of his hands and begins his counterattack, which the boy defends. When he was just a little Jaren, he happily imitated. Now he faces the strongest opponent he has ever encountered. Sig definitely wants to hit him too. That man found the little boy's dedication interesting. This time he landed a blow. He seemed somewhat intrigued by that tiny being. Sig missed. Jaren had narrowly dodged the attack. The little one seemed quite interested in that. Now he wields his staff to launch a counterattack. He watches eagerly to see what will happen. Jaren is totally confident in his skills. The man just patted his little head and looked at him, full of admiration. That attack would have been devastating if it had landed. Sig had to jump, and as soon as he lands, there will be an opening. He knows that if Jaren attacks, he won't be able to dodge, but he is determined to give him what he has been looking for in this fight. Since he can't dodge, he goes straight toward the boy. They watch, overly impressed with what is happening. Smoke rises in the arena. That was the final blow. If he hadn't used this strange staff technique, he certainly would have won if he had continued. Sig wants to know if this is a show of pride on his part. Smiling, he says no. He simply only knew that. That was all he had memorized. In the end, he just ended up getting an even worse beating. Still, it wasn't bad at all. Sig is not well liked among his peers because he is annoying, but no one can complain about his actions because his skills are truly powerful. Extending his hand over Jaren's face, he prepares to do something. The aura begins to rise gently. In response to the niece's concern, he tells her not to worry. The boy will be fine. He just healed his wounds. He only wanted to confirm with her the boy's name is Yuharan. Sig, who is one of the top 10 in the country, didn't expect something like this today. Who would have thought he would meet that man's son here? Sig is the best healer in Korea. Finally, the sun begins to set. Someone tells Sig that if he was going to be late, he could have at least sent a message. He could have at least had a coffee and relaxed. Now they will be late for the report again. And every time they are late, people always think it's his fault but Sig took longer than expected. The young man says that he heard that Sig was fighting a kid, but given the delay, he thinks it must have been several of them. As soon as he looks at him closely, he is surprised. There is a small mark on his cheek. Looking closer, his surprise increases, arousing Sig's curiosity. He wants to confirm if that on his cheek is really a cut. Impatient, Sig asks what else it could be if it's not a cut, but he can't believe it. So this kid must be ready for school and must be 16 years old, but Sig says he is 17. It seems he will try to get into the warrior school during the winter admissions. It does exist, but no one has passed in the last 3 years. He definitely has a chance. Cutting Sig's cheek is no easy feat. This new generation is really becoming more and more terrifying. Sig says that comparing people to elves is disproportionate, and he's sure that the kid is no different from the young man. Kang says there must be a difference. He's ranked 19th. He's a black class scout, leader of the NX attack squad. He believes he has the advantage over the kid, both in talent and experience. He's only 21 years old and graduated from the school a year and a half ago. Sig just sighs hearing that. He said he hadn't seen that car yet, and the young man said he barely spends his money, so he allows himself certain privileges. Harrien is still lying on a stretcher. After a while, he finally gets up, looking at his hands. He notices that all his wounds have been healed, and, on top of that, he feels no pain. The girl says he's finally awake. She wants to know what he was thinking and if he really thought he could win, but he says it wasn't exactly that. He was just really angry and the other guy started it. But even she doesn't understand why her uncle would want to fight the kid, and Harrien wants to know if they're really related, and in fact they are. He's her uncle on her mother's side. At his silence, she becomes curious, but he just says that everything is fine. He said they seem to have a good relationship, which is noticeable by the way he treats her. But she didn't understand where he got that conclusion from. But Harrien said it's just as he said. You could feel his concern that a stranger might be taking advantage of his niece, and you can't blame him for that. But she says that her uncle isn't really that type of person and that, in fact, he's very strict. The staff member enters the room as well, noticing he's already awake. She asked, "Do you feel any pain?" But he replies that his body is fine. In fact, she's sure it would have even healed old wounds. He may not look like it, but the director is the best healer in the country, and that leaves him perplexed. Despite being so strong, combat isn't his main role. Harrien laughs upon realizing this. In any case, it's a relief that he's okay and she already has the evaluation results. Handing him the tablet, she showed him the information. "It's really very good," says Sarum. "He has in stamina and agility, B in strength and endurance, and C in intelligence." Looking at the data, he wants to know if it's really that good. She yells in frustration for him to shut up, and the staff member wonders if he's really ready to join the school. To be a high-level scout, you need to have at least a few B-rated abilities. However, it's necessary to have balanced stats. It's pointless to be too agile if you lack stamina. Even if you're very strong, all that strength is useless without agility. She says that even normal people have C-rank abilities, but things change when you have more than one. Having C or higher in strength, stamina, and agility is something one person in every 10,000 possesses. If they're Bs, it's 1 in 500,000, and that alone places him among the top scouts. Not only does he have a B in strength, but in the other two as well. Besides being balanced, his stats are well above average. Even though it's his first year, he'll be on the same level as that monster. Looking at him, she asked if he wants to hear something interesting. The person he just fought doesn't have a single stat higher than. Stats are just the total potential. They don't translate into what a person has in practical skill, even with good stats. The real difference comes from the training, and that's not the only variable. There's also what can't be measured, like fighting spirit and field experience. It might seem a bit cruel at first, but she's seen many explorers who have filled those gaps through sheer determination. Siren blushed because he knew the woman was talking about herself. After hearing all that, he thanked her for the story he had heard. Actually, he's not disappointed or anything like that, it's just that he doesn't quite understand it yet. But there's someone he knows, and in comparison to that person, he's far behind. The staff member was surprised that he knew someone like that. That's not common at all. They must surely be a famous person, and in a way, they sort of are. Sa says that they're done for today and that they could meet again next week, but since they were there, the staff member suggested they visit the medicine production section. However, the girl hesitates. She's not sure if her uncle would be upset with that decision, but the staff member said the director had already authorized it. Sa doesn't believe it and wants to know if he said that before he left. His words were that as soon as the boy woke up, he was to be taken to where the equipment is made and to tell everyone that the boy is his guest, even to the point of making a weapon that suits him. Regardless of the cost, Sam could hardly believe it. Quality equipment is any adventurer's dream, even if they're extremely talented. If the equipment is low quality, it won't be able to keep up with its user's power. As skills are honed, the explorer needs better equipment that can keep pace. Faced with this, Jairong can't understand the situation. He doesn't know if he needs equipment now, since he's just going to school. But Sean says it's not what he thinks. The boy assumes that at the school, they'll receive equipment for the students. Hearing this, they don't even know what to say. Sa says it's all her fault. If it were a normal institution, his assumption would be correct. Each school has its own rules about the equipment that can be used. Jairong imagined that's the case with the warrior school, since they have the greatest resources. Jun says it's not about resources, but that the school has different ideals. There's a difference between talent and skill, and obtaining good equipment is a skill in itself. That's why the school requires students to bring their own equipment. To him, this only benefits those who have resources, and he asked them if being rich is a skill. He's not wrong about that, but it's possible for students to have good equipment, even if they don't have money. Getting into this school implies that the student has the potential to be a great explorer with the potential to become a star. That alone can be used as leverage, because there are people who want to invest in that. The students quickly attract the interest of various companies that see business opportunities in them. The offers are incredible, since they are all very large companies. She herself received a scholarship from the Jinsean group and a guaranteed job until she wanted to retire. Without showing any surprise, upon hearing this, she ends by saying that those are the doors that open when you enter this school. What won't be lacking are opportunities for him to prove himself among his peers. However, the first step for him is to pass the test. The transfer exam is more difficult than the entrance exam, and he needs to prepare. Getting equipment is one of the things he needs to do. That's why the director wanted to help him with that. Since she has already passed on the details, he just needs to go to the forge in the basement. She wished him luck and hoped he could be admitted to the school. Things could have ended badly. Sean wants to know how, and he says he didn't imagine that his uncle would help. The more he hears about the test, the more it seems to him that people will do anything to pass. That's why she wants to help him and is using her own money to do it. Every time she sees that expression on his face, she gets extremely irritated. Still, it was good to hear that. No matter how much money someone has, it's also important to know who's going to make the equipment. And this company's equipment production sector is one of the best in the world. Arriving at the forge, he says there shouldn't be much difference between one piece of equipment and another, but what he's seeing makes him think differently. The forge is simply immense and used to be a dungeon called the Bubbling Abyss. Sean wants to know what he thinks of all this. That's not a place where you can just ask for something to be made. A shiver runs down his spine as he stands there. A massive figure is behind them both. On its face, a huge eye glows. The boy turns immediately, ready to react to the situation. The figure says that sick woke him up from his weekend nap, and yet, he didn't even come to the forge personally. Harrien asks if this is a monster, but Sean says it's not. Actually, he is the head of the equipment production division. In truth, the boy isn't entirely wrong either. He is an ancient titan named Argius, and, from a human perspective, he is a monster, but he obtained naturalization in Korea through a special rite. Lighting his cigar, he asks who the human sick spoke of is. He wants to know if it's the small boy in front of him or if it's the elf's niece. But she says the information has already been transmitted to him, but he says that digital information is a human thing and he doesn't care about it at all. His employees handle that, but today is their day off and none of them are present. Still, that doesn't matter at all. Since they asked him to handle it personally, it's time to get to work. He then asks if the weapon the boy is carrying is his main one, and Harrien says yes. If so, Argius orders him to try and hunt him. Sean gets anxious and wants to know what he intends with this. For his species, this is necessary. Unless the boy proves himself worthy, he won't put any effort into the task. Still, Argius says the boy seems different from others he has seen. His eyes are ready and used to hunting, and he has a sense of hostility that can still be refined. And once again, he told the boy to try and beat him up. Sa is still anxious about the situation, seeing that Harrien was getting ready, and she told Argius that he doesn't normally turn down challenges like that. Immediately, his eye widened. The boy was already attacking him. The staff is wielded masterfully, striking him with force. Sa watches the start of the fight with apprehension. The cigar falls to the ground from the impact. To Argius, that's simply impossible, having suffered no damage at all. He wants to know where the boy got that weapon. That reaction left Harrien confused. He was sure the hit had been clean. In fact, there are many monsters he couldn't take down with a single blow, but the feeling he got from hitting this one was like striking a massive wall. It wasn't just about strength, it was like hitting an inanimate object. Intrigued, he wondered what kind of monster he had just hit. And there's another reason why she is so worried and distressed. Monsters are given a danger classification designated by stars. 1 star means they are capable of killing humans, and monsters in this range can be defeated by a normal person, as long as they are armed. With 2 stars, the difficulty increases considerably. They can be defeated by trained individuals equipped with firearms. Things get much more difficult with 3 stars. They can only be defeated by armed troops with heavy equipment. With 4 stars, the situation becomes catastrophic. Ground troops focus on evacuating civilians and minimizing casualties. After the evacuation, they are destroyed with artillery and bombs. That is the limit of what the army can handle. Anything above 5 stars is beyond the capability of the modern military. Even if they defeat such a monster, it will be at the cost of massive firepower and nearly irreparable destruction. To reduce the damage, elite squads of the best scouts are sent to face these monsters. Argius is a 7-star monster, and, once again, he asks his question. He wants to know where the boy got that weapon. Harrien wonders if it hurt more than it should have and doesn't understand why there are so many questions. Argius says the boy had better think carefully about the answer he's going to give, because he was the one who made that staff. Hearing that, Harrien was shocked. Now irritated, Argius said he would only ask one more time. He wants to know why that weapon is in Harrien's hands and not in the hands of the person it was made for. If it was made by Argius, that weapon alone is ranked above A class and should be cataloged in the association, along with the owner's data and exact location. It's not an item a smuggler could easily obtain. Sa doesn't want to believe that he could have stolen the item. Harrien says he's not going to say anything, and besides, he has no reason to answer. Sa says he's being really stupid, and Argius says he understands. A single thought immediately ran through his mind. It was death. There was no way to dodge that, and he had no idea how to block the attack. There was no apparent weakness in that monster's hand. If he tried to absorb the blow, he would end up dead anyway. His only option was the third choice, the last technique he learned from watching his father. The Titan noticed something was happening. Still, it carried out its attack by smashing the ground. When two forces collide, the bigger and stronger one always wins, but the outcome is different if they don't directly oppose each other. By precisely calculating the angle and position, although winning wasn't a possibility, it's possible to redirect the resulting force. Sa can't believe he managed to dodge an attack from a 7-star monster. The Titan awaits the next move. His only chance now is to use the needle to attack the monster's single eye. However, before he can get close, he is caught by the giant's prosthetic hand, which now brings him closer to its face. He is firmly trapped and can't move. San pleads with it to stop, saying the boy may seem suspicious, but she says it still has no right to attack a human and should be aware of the consequences. Except in dangerous situations, naturalized species cannot attack humans. If that happens, the aggressor loses their rights and is treated as a hostile monster. Releasing the boy, it says she shouldn't worry. It understands that clearly. Despite everything, it finally realized why the boy has the weapon it made. That's why Sick woke it up from its weekend nap. At that, it apologized and said the boy has every right to carry that weapon and that it will make sure to compensate him for its mistake. Then it noticed something with its single eye. It's been 30 years since it was last injured by an attack. Sa doesn't know what it's talking about because he didn't understand what happened. It asks if they know why it now works for humans. She thinks it's because it was hunted by the strike squad 30 years ago, but it says that's not it. It's surprised that's the story humans tell, since they couldn't even touch it. The one who hunted it was a man who did it alone. He was the one who cut off its hand and had the chance to take its life, but he chose not to. As it says this, the boy is watching it. In the same way, it looks at the boy. Argius has always been an incredibly powerful monster. It was ready to fight that hunter. In his hands was a battle axe. It was the boy's father who hunted it. The ancient titans are the strongest among the giants. They have an unknown lifespan and less than 10 of them are known to exist. Their physical abilities are beyond human comprehension, but they are widely known for their skill in forging equipment, which has special powers or are even artifacts. This is a skill they are born with. The closest to this are the dwarves. Unlike the titans, the dwarves chose to coexist with humans. The titans, besides not opting for that, saw humans as unworthy. Something happened 30 years ago during the subjugation of Argius. At the gate of its forge was an automaton colossus, a 4-star monster. Do they want to know? If the communication channel with the base is still down, all magical communication is cut off. There must be something blocking the signal. Terrified, someone says it's coming and they should brace for impact. The Colossus attacks the invaders without mercy. The shield bearer tries to hold back the blow with all his might. Behind of the automaton, the girl prepares to launch her attack. She needs to take advantage of this opening before it's too late. Her strike is precise, but it's deflected by the helmet. That wasn't the result she was looking for. Her sword was completely ineffective at penetrating the armor's defense. In response, the automaton prepares to counterattack. It then strikes her with its shield. She flies several meters before crashing into the wall. Everything was completely beyond what they had imagined. Gaibyuk's attack squad was among the best in dungeon subjugation. However, in the bubbling abyss, they were completely wiped out. They had already faced 7 colossi in total. Even if they defeat one, another appears right after. If the other team acts the same way they do, it will be the end. The shield bearer ordered his comrades to flee, because he knows that it will be difficult for everyone to get out of this place alive. As he speaks, the automaton attacks again with its sword, but the young man reacts quickly with his shield. He managed to defend himself. His skill allows him to consume energy to enhance all his physical attributes. After activation, the user is incapacitated for a while. With the sword locked on the shield, he used another skill, a push. This made the automaton lose its balance. The young man knows that if his leader uses that skill now, he'll be in serious trouble, but he had already said that not everyone would make it out alive, and they don't have the strength to defeat that monster. However, it's enough to buy some time. Being optimistic, he might get lucky and still have a chance. But then, they quickly feel an overwhelming presence. Argius asks, what is happening in his forge? At that moment, they realize that they were doomed. Argus wants to know if there are still any cockroaches that the automatons have failed to kill. Just with his presence, they feel intense terror. The leader was emphatic and shouted for them to flee immediately. With the little strength he had left, he charged towards Argus. All he wanted was to buy a little more time, but he was swept away with a single blow from the Titan, who completely incinerated him. There was nothing he could do. Argus was sure that they were inferior to him. Both their bodies and the equipment they wore were trash. Ruled by inferior beings, this world is doomed to ruin. Intrigued, he looks at the one in front of him. The mage wields his staff, trembling. It's slightly thrilling to watch that. Even in fear, he remains loyal, though in the end that means nothing. But the boy knows he won't be able to face a monster that not even the leader could handle. Then a man appears saying that he had already told them the place wasn't safe. If they had gathered information little by little, they would have been better prepared. There's no advantage in clearing a dungeon just for the sake of clearing it. The boy doesn't even know who this person is. The association received the distress call and he is one of the volunteers from the rescue team. He even had armor, but it was heavier than he expected. The boy thinks he came alone. In fact, he was the only one who managed to get there. The automaton prepares to attack the intruder. A loud sound resonates through the halls of the forge. The boy is completely terrified and the man says that they are quite strong. At that time, Sung wasn't known by many. He was basically a nobody. He managed to sever the monster's arm without any difficulty, and the first-generation explorers knew of him. His focus wasn't on fame, but on rescuing those in trouble. However, that day would mark the beginning of everything. Sung prepares to finish off the automaton with a single strike. He split it from top to bottom with ease. That display of power caught Argus's attention. Looking at it, Sung figures this one might be a bit tougher. And on that day, the world learned who that man was. The aura from the strike was enough to change the lighting of the dungeon. The mage can't believe what was just done. The entire team was struggling to handle the Colossus and this person took it down in a single move. Sung asked the mage if he still had any mana left. He said he didn't have much, but it was enough to give him a blessing. Sung said that he didn't need that, but asked if he knew any levitation enchantments. If he did, he should use it to get the other two out of there. Although they're badly injured, they're still breathing. Argus found him arrogant, since he thinks he can actually make it back. It's almost as if he truly believes he can get out of there alive. Sung says he won't let Argus touch the others as long as he's there. That deeply enraged the Titan. Without wasting any more time, it attacked the man with all its might. However, Sung reacted skillfully. The aura he emitted was devastating. The impact of their blades echoed through the dungeon. As they were leaving, the mage looked back in fear. 10 years after the advent, the adventurers had reached a limit. They had superhuman strength. Gear technology had also advanced, better adapting to everyone's needs. But unlike the progress in stats and gear, there was still much lacking in execution and experience. The solution was the development of a human martial art that defied common logic. At that time, few saw it as a solution, and began to develop and study techniques. Argus had been struck, but its armor protected it from the initial impact. Sung continued and launched another strike. He was one of those people who perfected that martial art. The mage looked happy, thinking the monster had been defeated, but soon his expression changed again. Argus says that guy is different because he knows how to properly use what's in his hands. If the weapon he wielded could withstand even half the force he possesses, the outcome would have been different. The edge of the blade had melted after the strike. He still couldn't afford the best gear, and it wasn't the first time this had happened with an axe, so he looked back to see those he had come to rescue. He felt relieved, seeing they were almost out of the dungeon. Now he needed to defend himself against the hostile monster. Its flaming sword was blocked by the axe handle. Argus commented that his defense and evasion skills were among the best it had ever seen in humans. However, the axe Sung wielded was worse than anything it had ever seen. Although he could defend himself, the axe wouldn't hold out for much longer. Preparing to attack once more, Argus said that this would now be the end, but that wasn't what Sung wanted. The blades clashed once more, devastating force. Instead of redirecting the attack, Sung blocked it with all his might. This was the origin of the technique that Harrien would eventually learn, a skill that uses the opponent's strength against them, but in terms of strength, experience, and the user's execution ability, his father performed it on a level completely different. It was strong enough to force the Titan back. This was the martial art of a hero. Argus was sure that this story must be well known among humans. The hero finally defeats the monster. That day, after being beaten by the boy's father, the monster inside Argus died. When he lost, the life he had was no longer his own, but Sound's, who chose not to kill him. What the strike squad couldn't achieve was completed by a single man from the rescue team. A ridiculous end to an epic story, but the most important part of it begins after that. The ancient titans, even when defeated, never bow to those they consider inferior. Still, Argus accepted being exiled by the humans. Sound remembers this because it was a huge event and everyone was shocked. He eventually obtained citizenship, and the fact that he didn't kill anyone helped a lot. But it doesn't change the fact that he committed crimes, and to keep an eye on him, he was given the task of forging equipment. However, this story is completely different from what she had learned. Arjus said that the staff the young man carries was made as a gift for his father. Although his father never asked for it, Arjus thought he deserved to wield something like it. He always knew it was very solid, but he didn't think it had anything special, which is why it wasn't pawned, since they thought it was useless. In fact, he's not wrong. It's only good for hitting people with brute force. That wasn't exactly what they expected to hear, and Sound is left thinking about the part where the boy mentioned pawning it. Arjus said it was quite simple, and the boy should already know this. He asked if his father used that as a weapon. He would have made an axe for him as soon as he brought the remaining material to make the blade. But one day he lost contact with him and, since he couldn't leave the dungeon, he decided to send what he had already made to the boy's father. Although he can't say for sure, he imagines he won't be able to complete that weapon, but that's not entirely a bad thing. So he asked for the incomplete weapon to be handed over, because now he will finish what he started, a masterpiece, not for the father, but for the son. While the Titan works, they return to the upper floors. Sound looks at him, a little curious about what she had heard. She wants to know how he feels now. Despite everything, he's okay. And he felt that the Titan wanted to make sure everything was in order. He doesn't know how long it will take, but he's committed to finishing it as soon as possible. She advised him to wait, since masterpieces take time to complete. Since Wednesday is a holiday, she wants to know if he'll have time available. She thought about helping him study for the written exam, and he thought that would be productive too. As they were still walking, there was something else she wanted to say. His father must have been an incredible person. She could have never imagined that he was the one who cleared that dungeon. She asked if he's in the hospital resting after retiring. He said that he'll go ahead and rest. If something comes up, she should just talk to him later. But he didn't get a response to the comment he made. Once in the car, she headed back home. Looking it up online, she confirms that the narrative of the story isn't true. That's what she had learned, but now she's thinking about Arjus's words. The team that cleared the dungeon is considered heroic today, all at the expense of another adventurer's exploits. There's no reason for Arjus to have lied about this. But thinking about Harrien's abilities, it's completely plausible that his father was someone exceptional. Not to mention that it's hard to know what really happens inside a dungeon. And it often happens that the story that's told is different from the actual events. Sung is known as the fake Dragon Slayer. He was once considered one of the best in Korea. It was later revealed that it was all just blackmail and fake stats, which he confessed to after being injured. There's even an online article about the event, discrediting his achievements. This left her unsure about what she had heard and what she was reading. The results of her practical exam were now available. Inside the school, in the department responsible for dungeons, a staff member is being thanked. Professor Cho apologizes to Kay, who couldn't rest over the weekend because of her. But it's only his first year, and it's important to observe the first-year students. She says that things are quite intense there, not just for her as a teacher, but the first-year students are much more talented than she was at that same stage. Now she wants to know if he expected the top student to be that particular one. Indeed, it was unexpected. Kang says it's not an easy result to predict. Sa can't believe the exam results, as there are many geniuses in her class. As it turns out, all of them are hybrids. The first is Diab Choi. He inherited the swordsmanship talent of his father, a white-class explorer, combined with his mother's magical talent. He's the perfect magic swordsman. In second place is Anishe. She has more mana and magical control than many pure-blooded elves, with the potential to become a great mage. Lastly, a boy, the son of a human and a dwarf, possesses the strength and stamina of dwarves, combined with the flexibility and reflexes of a human, the best of both worlds. This Echelon, considered to have the best physique on the planet, is a student at the school. Still, he must be as capable as the other two. First place should have gone to one of them. Although it's hard to believe she achieved all this on her own. Maybe the physical aspect gave her more points. Physical condition isn't the only thing that counts. That's why she hopes he does more, since he has the potential to become a great leader. But from the looks of it, he has no interest in connecting with other students. In fact, the students hesitate to approach him. However, there are limits to how far you can go alone, and by the second year, he'll soon realize that. Kang says it's not a problem she needs to worry about. Sometimes things happen without us noticing and the details can go unseen. He knows that she worries about all the students. But if she just believes in him instead of worrying, he'll find a way to resolve things. Since then, 4 days have passed and the holiday has arrived. A group of guys is gossiping about what a girl had done, but one of them ends up bumping into a huge person. He turns around to confront him, not expecting to come face to face with a figure sculpted like a lean, muscular bodybuilder, practically spitting sand from his mouth. The Arnold Classic champion starts to speak and apologizes to them, saying he was distracted and didn't see them in the way. The guys are terrified and apologize even more, intimidated by the man's imposing figure. After the interaction ends, he notices his shirt is dirty. All he can think about is his bad luck. The truth is, he misses his mother a lot. Jovin went to Europe, but she was a successful hunter in Korea. She used to tell her son many stories about her time as a scout, which fostered his admiration for Korea and its culture. Thanks to the opportunity and his natural talent, he entered the warrior school through a special transfer test. However, he is an extremely introverted guy. He wants to interact with his classmates, but he's afraid of being ridiculed because he doesn't speak the language well. He of his personality. Seeing he's uncomfortable, his classmates apologize for being so loud, but they also don't know that the giant is an introvert, nor does he imagine that they're actually afraid of him. Without meaning to, he's become a lone wolf. Looking to the side, he sees two guys talking about trivial things, heading to an internet cafe. He remembered his mother saying he used to visit those places to play games. Inside the establishment, there aren't many people, and he doesn't even know what to do. Nearby, someone is talking on the phone. At a self-service kiosk, he tries to log in, but just being there makes him anxious. He imagines he's holding up the line and should probably just leave, since he's alone. A young man mentioned that he probably doesn't have an account. That terminal is for people who already have one, and he should head to another. He asked him to follow, since he would show him how it's done. He didn't need to fill everything out, just the essential fields. Once the registration was complete, he just had to pay at another machine and then pick which computer to use. The giant thanked him, and Harrien said it was nothing. Harrien looked at the guy and wondered if he might be a foreigner who didn't know his way around. However, he just wanted Saron to get there soon, since she was running late. If he had known, he would have come later or stopped by the black market beforehand. He had received a small black object without knowing what it was. It had been in the chest with the jelly, and he wanted to know what it could be. It was soft to the touch, but it probably wasn't edible. Since he still didn't know what it was, he decided to hold on to it for now. If he needed money, it would be better to sell the other item containing the blood of Denel, one of the three great threats of the Igar forest. In the last few decades, even though many raid parties tried, no one had managed to subdue the beast. All they had ever gotten were a few scales and a negligible amount of the creature's blood. The government had forbidden its hunting, and items made from its materials were worth a fortune. He was supposed to be meeting Saron to grab lunch and then head to the black market at night, but his delay had altered their plans. The stranger said there were no other seats available and sat down next to the person who had helped him. He then told Harrien he could sit down, since he wasn't waiting for anyone anymore. After sitting down, Harrien logged into the machine. There wasn't any special game, and the computer at his house was much better than the one there. Then, Harrien noticed something on the screen next to him. He asked the stranger if he played Heroes of Chaos, and he confirmed that he did. They were at similar levels, and since the people he usually played with weren't online, he invited Harrien to team up. They could play duo and ranked matches. In Seoul, there are some desolate and abandoned areas called scars. Entire cities were lost during the invasion. Some were reclaimed over time, but others, too, close to dungeons, were abandoned. These areas now serve as a second line of defense for human shelters. But in the last 20 years, nothing similar had occurred. There were no cases of monsters willingly leaving the walls. There's even a transport service for them. One guard hates having to do this job. While his friends are out making money hunting, he's stuck being a chauffeur for monsters. Joanna says if he hates it that much, he should just quit and go back to the field. She was a retired gold-class scout. After injuring her eye, she wants to know what he's doing there. So, Sun Chang-woo was an adventurer of the bronze class. In conversation, he mentioned the reason he's there is to make money, since he can barely join any team. Hearing this wounded his ego. While they were driving, something unexpected happened. They had to stop the truck. There's no way the monster could have escaped. Getting out, she told her colleague to inform the station they were stopping to inspect the vehicle. Outside, she prepared to do her job. Inside the cab, he was already relaying the information. He was scared that something might happen, but his colleague was very skilled, so he should be fine. Soon, he heard the door open. He was ready to tell her she did a great job, but a different woman was there and said it was no big deal. Her reflexes were decent for a government employee, but there must be a reason why she isn't in the field, and glanced at the names of the people behind them. Looking at the driver, she asked why he was still there. He should get driving if he didn't want to die soon. Meanwhile, the gaming session between Harrien and the stranger was going great, and their food order arrived at the perfect time. Harrien thought they were the same age, not that he looked older, but he was much taller and stronger. Then he asked him what school he went to. But there was no time to answer. Suddenly, they felt something had happened. The ground shook, and people thought it might be an earthquake. It almost seemed like something had exploded nearby. This sparked a debate, and soon they began to speculate about what it could have been. The truck had crashed, maybe the driver was drunk. One guy starts filming while another suggests they should notify the authorities immediately. From up high, from a building, a girl comments that it would have been better if the truck had crashed closer to the center. Soon the place will be full of explorers, but she's confident she'll escape in time. However, her superiors are already ordering her to return. The monsters start to flee from the truck because she had awakened them all. The people who had gathered out of curiosity were already regretting it. The horn horrors. The more of them there are, the more dangerous they become. Looking down, she estimates there are about 50 people there, but she will stick around to see the outcome. Perhaps at least 100 people will die before help arrives. A curious person was caught by the head and brutally killed, while another was paralyzed by fear. The monsters are in a frenzy with their potential victims before them. Then a bluish glow appears among them. Jae-rong had arrived to defeat the creatures. He stomped on the first one's face with force. Seeing what had just happened, the onlookers were stunned. The monster had been easily subdued. Jae-rong was focused and determined not to let the beasts attack innocent people. He then looked at the crowd and asked them what they were still doing there. He ordered them to run immediately. He had faced this type of monster before. The ones with a single horn shouldn't be that hard to handle. As he was thinking this, he had to instantly focus again. A motorcycle was coming straight at him. He barely dodged it. He quickly realized who had done it. It had to be a joke, a horned horror with 2 horns. When the beast approached him, it was met with a devastating kick. However, the result wasn't what he expected. Jae-rong had to back off. The lifespan of these monsters is between 5 and 6 years. Most of them die before they have the chance to grow a second horn, but some manage to do it. Around 8% of the total live longer and can reproduce. Not only does their strength increase, but it surpasses anything considered normal. Although it's strong and fast, it's not something he can't overcome if he needs to kill this beast. With his foot aching, he knows that the biggest problem is its durability. Compared to the idiot who claimed to be a tank, these guys are at least 3 or 4 times tougher. If only he had one of the pieces of equipment he uses for work, the beast prepares to attack the boy once more. However, Jae-rong dodges the blow, witnessing the destruction it caused. At a distance, he regains his footing to continue the fight. The beast doesn't seem satisfied with the destruction it has already caused, so Jae-rong starts to survey his surroundings. On the ground, there's a broken stop sign. Thinking quickly, he smashes it with his foot. This way, he manages to extract the signpost, similar to a staff. The monster lunges at him again, furious, emanating its aura. Jae-rong braces for impact. Now armed, he tightens his grip, focused. The beast stomps down harder than expected. This gave it a huge burst of speed and it went flying over Jae-rong's head. That wasn't what he had anticipated from the creature. Now the beast is near where several innocent people are gathered. They are completely terrified, unable to do anything to protect themselves. The beast lunges towards them, ready to make them its prey. The difference in danger between 2- and 3-star monsters is simply enormous. In terms of destructiveness, both of these monsters are already beyond human capabilities. Normal people have no choice but to be killed by these beasts. Even an experienced adventurer, without the proper equipment, would struggle with them. However, there is an exception to this situation. The foreigner managed to catch the beast's fist with his bare hand. He is definitely determined to fight. With a single blow, he pushed the beast back. This is the exception. Those who have trained their superhuman bodies to the limit, becoming monsters themselves. The beast digs its claws into the ground to avoid being pushed further by the impact. The foreigner managed to push it back, but he knows that without a weapon, he won't be able to cause any real damage. However, something caught his attention. The beast roared menacingly at him. From behind, Jae-rong approached with his makeshift staff. Using his techniques, he delivered a precise blow to the back of the creature's neck. The foreigner was surprised by the result. The beast fell lifelessly, with a puncture wound in its back. Jae-rong sighed in relief after the fight. A loud noise caught his attention. The sound piqued the foreigner's curiosity as well. A powerful explosion had occurred nearby. In just 1 minute, the beast had caused all that destruction. The foreigner commented that it would take a few more minutes before help arrived. A sudden event like this is unexpected, and people are dying as they speak. Cheolkin knows how to use a taunt skill. Every tank knows it. He basically shouts at a high frequency, drawing the nearby monsters towards him. Determined to become an adventurer, he plans to draw the monsters' attention until help arrives. He told Jae-rong to seek shelter, as he doesn't know how to ask him to take such a risk, especially since they barely know each other. All they've done so far is play together for a few hours. However, Jae-rong told him to let out the shout. He already figures the guy must be a tank and knows how to use the skill. But Chokin says it's dangerous and Jairong replies that he was planning to do it alone. Anyway, if he were alone, he would consider the possibilities, but he's not. He told Chokin that he's good at games, especially when it comes to protecting. Besides, he also wants to be an adventurer, and if he's going to try, he'll do the best he can. There's no time to keep talking like this. It's time to act. The store is completely destroyed. A person is hiding under the counter. Behind them, the monster has just killed an innocent bystander. The tank prepared to use his skill. In the store, the beast threw the lifeless body to the ground. It then began to smash the counter to get to its next victim. At that moment, the tank's shout echoed. Its effect reverberated throughout the area, drawing the monster's attention. Immediately, the beast stopped its attack. The person it was about to kill was left confused. The girl responsible for the incident also heard the shout. She's intrigued by what could have happened. After using his skill, the tank caught his breath, taking an offensive stance. He was ready to fight the monsters that were about to appear. It didn't take long for them to gather at the epicenter of the scream. The strongest of them aimed in the boy's direction. The monsters with single horns charged forward to attack. He stood his ground, prepared to fight as well, but then he heard a noise above him. A monster was approaching from his blind spot, but he managed to block the incoming blow. It wasn't enough to injure him. With his other hand, he began to concentrate his aura, and with a devastating blow sent the beast flying. However, it wasn't over yet, and he couldn't afford to get distracted. More monsters were advancing, ready to attack simultaneously. In the distance, the two-horned monster heard that something was happening. There was someone, closer and coming from above. Jairong descended, landing near the beasts. There were two of them, each, with two horns on its head. Looking at the crashed truck, he wondered what was going on there. They were gathering the bodies of the dead into the truck, which is why there weren't many bodies scattered on the street. Now, the two-horned ones moved in to attack him. Jairong waited for them to get a little closer. They're fighting up close and without any gear. The odds are low. In the current situation, it's more likely they'll get in each other's way than help each other. So, he would focus on drawing the weaker monsters, since he was the tank. Jairong was closer, and now, it was his turn to attack. His task was to take down the stronger ones, as he was the damage specialist. His improvised staff was ready to strike again. He moved so fast past the monster that it didn't even realize it had been hit, but there were several marks on its body where the staff had struck it. Compared to a needle, this was much weaker. If Jairong had his usual staff, things would have been very different. With a staff made from common materials, there isn't much he can do. Still, he's giving it his all to fight, even though it's not the same. He is aware that there is a chance. That one time, Zek fought him with his bare hands and, despite some quick and powerful blows, none of them were overwhelming. However, those blows wore him down little by little. Now, the monster was in the middle of an attack. Quickly, Jairong managed to push it back with swift strikes. He knows this won't stop the beast's attack, so he dodges the incoming blow. Even the smallest mistake here would cost him his life. He attacks again with speed. This is a unique opportunity for him, despite the danger. A chance to become even stronger. He needs to take advantage of this moment and come out victorious with what he has at his disposal. Another beast approaches ready to attack, but in his mind he recalled Zek's evasive movements during their fight and managed to emulate similar moves. After his father, this was the first time he had met someone so strong. With this experience, he perfected his fourth skill, the rain of staff strikes, hitting the monster in front of him multiple times. After being brutally beaten, the beast falls to the ground. However, unexpectedly, one of the creatures grabs his foot. This immediately puts him on alert. The monster slammed him into the ground, shattering the concrete. Jairong spits up blood from the impact, violent impact. 2 against 1 is a complicated situation. Even if it's not fair, he has no other choice. This isn't a fight between humans, so things can be different. Before he could react, the tank arrived, repelling the monster. For the tank, luck is also a skill. Watching through the phone's camera, 2 people were amazed by their performance. They had defeated dozens of monsters, just the 2 of them, without any gear. Don John was excited to have managed to record all the action, but his friend pointed out that he only recorded it because he was too scared to run away. Who wants to know who those 2 are? Since they seem younger than them. Judging by what they did, they must be gold-level hunters. Either they're students from the warrior school or they're rookies who haven't made a name for themselves yet. Either way, he plans to upload the video online and asks if his friend can make a thumbnail on his laptop. The news will be out soon and he doesn't want to miss the chance for millions of views. Exhausted, the foreigner thought that the rescue and containment team would have arrived sooner. However, just the 2 of them were able to actually resolve the situation. Jairong apologizes for interrupting his cool pose, but he needs help getting up from the ground, so they finally shake hands. They're both pretty exhausted, and when asked if he's okay, Jairong replies that he's more inclined to say no. He might have 1 or 2 fractures, but considering what he expected, it wasn't that bad. The foreigner was amazed that Jairong managed to take on the two-horned monsters. Jairong returned the compliment, saying that his friend had faced 9 monsters in total and still helped him with the last ones. But the foreigner points out that his were only 2-star monsters. Since they were chatting, he asked what school Jairong went to. Maybe reality was different from what he had heard, as he heard the schools around here weren't that good. He apologized, saying he didn't mean to talk bad about Jairong's school, though he assumed he was also from the warrior school. Without answering, Jairong asked how well-ranked his friend was and how many people were stronger than him at his school. But the foreigner didn't know, since he talked to very few people and, despite having done some tests, he wasn't sure if they could properly assess his skills. He guesses he's probably in the middle of the pack. Now he wonders how he's going to help his elf friend. Anyway, there's still one last thing to handle. He wants to know if that monster plans to just stay on top of the train car doing nothing. It was the only one that wasn't drawn in by the taunt skill, and it might have something different about it, but he doesn't think it's the special one among them. There's a lot of blood around the area, and there must surely be something else inside, and that's what's special. For now, he thinks they should just watch, since they could easily take care of this last monster. A loud noise starts coming from the train car, and it begins to shake violently. A hand suddenly emerges from the hole in the roof. This surprised both guys. The monster is being dragged inside violently. Not even its claws could get a hold. There's definitely something inside that is now devouring it. The horned horrors live in a society similar to a tribal system. Those with 2 horns act as parents and chiefs, leading hordes of no more than 10. These small tribes unite, increasing their numbers and strength. As they are relatively weak and the dungeons are dangerous, these monsters occupy a low place on the food chain, and their numbers are kept in check by predators. However, in rare cases, a mutant may appear that develops a 3rd horn. And this mutant is not a simple leader of a small tribe, but a king who commands hundreds, even thousands. A horned horror king is a beast with a danger level of approximately 5 stars. It didn't take long for it to notice the 2 boys. Immediately, they went on alert for what was happening. With a simple movement, the king unleashed a massive and destructive attack. Both had to quickly move aside, moving at an incredible speed. The beast was already near Jaren, ready to attack. Jaren had to react quickly to avoid being fatally struck. The monster's hand was powerful enough to destroy his makeshift staff. The beast's attack broke through his defense, slamming into his stomach. Without stopping there, the king was already preparing to launch a kick, but its attack was interrupted. Chokin had caught it in a body lock. The beast's feet sank into the ground, tearing up the pavement. Even as Chokan pushed it back, he realized the situation was getting worse. The horned horror king grabbed him with both hands. Effortlessly, the king lifted him off the ground. Then it slammed him into the earth, creating a huge crater. If there was one thing they didn't have now, it was time. 2 geniuses who would eventually reach their full potential, but in their current situation, it was an impossible task. Even if they could use everything they knew, there was an immense gap that couldn't be closed. Jaren staggered to his feet, yelling at the monster to stop. With its attention on the boy, the king prepared another attack. The glow of its red aura was almost upon him. Jaren took the hit head-on, unable to defend himself. With that, the beast seemed to have satisfied its urge to strike. However, it sensed that something else was happening. A presence far more dangerous than the king was now on the battlefield. Night had already fallen, and Seon was still bedridden in the hospital bed. Before he disappeared, not many people knew him. Now, the monster was completely terrified. There is no one in this world who can accurately explain what Seon left behind. 11 years ago, a lot happened. A man made an unexpected confession to the press, admitting all his mistakes and begging the public for forgiveness. That event shocked the entire world. 12 hours before the boys faced the monsters, Sarum was deeply confused. The truth she discovered on Sunday was the only thing on her mind. She spent the following days investigating Jaren's father and whether he had been unjustly accused. She was sure that many people coveted the position of someone who was once number 1, but who had now lost his powers. What she couldn't understand was how the situation was handled. It began with multiple accusations, victim testimonies, and the building of the case. Public opinion was divided, but due to his popularity, the falsified information didn't completely ruin his image. If it had been her, she would have fought until the end. But what Seon did, instead of fighting, was accept all the accusations made against him after the press conference. Even his followers turned their backs on him, and Seon became a liar overnight. She doesn't understand why he did that, and if something had coerced him, accepting the charges was like adding fuel to the fire. She wasn't sure if she was the only one who had noticed, but there was something about his facial expressions. Instead of looking like a victim, it was as if he was accepting the consequences. Then she found something even more shocking. In his records, there was no mention of him having a family. She wondered if Jaeron wasn't really his son, but it made more sense that he just wasn't officially registered, since they looked a bit alike. Maybe Seon accepted all those accusations because Jaeron was involved somehow, and at this moment Jaeron didn't even realize what was really happening to his body. He looked at his hand and felt something different. The beast charged at him, furious. Its advance was relentless. It knew it needed to finish the boy off, and in the face of this, there was one thing Jaeron now knew for sure: his body could move. His reaction was perfect, landing a blow on the monster's face. Nothing more, nothing less. All he needed to know now was that he could still move and was determined to destroy the monster in front of him. Using his skills, he began to strike it repeatedly. The pressure was immense, and the monster did its best to defend itself. It tried to move and escape from Jaeron's relentless attacks. Jaeron knew the creature wouldn't get far, and then came the beast's counterattack. Although the monster's aura was powerful, it wasn't fast enough to stop Jaeron from dodging. However, the beast had anticipated this and was now in the air, directly above him. With the beast closing in, it unleashed another attack. It wasn't long before it was surprised by the result. The attack had failed to harm the boy. Jaeron immediately responded with a vicious kick. The force of the impact was so great that the beast was sent flying, crashing into the nearest building. Jaeron knew the fight still wasn't over, but with those last two hits, he had managed to expose a weakness in the creature, a precise strike to the chin with his needle. In his current state, it was possible to land that blow, but just as the mysterious aura appeared, it vanished again. This was the worst possible moment for it to disappear. The monster came crawling out of the crater it had created. Jaeron felt anxious. The energy that had been coursing through his body was now gone. He had nothing left to defend himself against the coming attack. As the beast continued its charge, it noticed something. The truck's container was falling directly onto its head. The beast was hit, but there's a reason why hunters have distinct roles. Each one is meant to fulfill a specific function. The container's impact wasn't enough to stop the beast. It charged toward Cheolin, completely enraged. Unable to dodge, Cheolin defended himself as best he could. The blow was incredibly powerful, but as a tank, even with his body shattered, he held on. That is the main role of a tank. However, he had already far surpassed his limits long ago. Still, his endurance bought them a little more time. Jaeron, ready to deliver his best attack. The monster knew it couldn't avoid what was coming. Jaeron's fist charged with aura closed in quickly. A perfectly executed uppercut connected with the creature's chin. That was the role of someone whose job was to deal damage. Debris scattered all over the area, on the ground and toward the beast's lifeless body. With its jaw shattered, a monster transport vehicle had been stolen. As a result, there were dozens of civilian casualties. After everything that had happened, the rescue team finally arrived. It wasn't long before the news spread across the world. The heroic feat of those two, now labeled as heroes, quickly gained recognition. Caballino watches the video, not fully understanding what's happening. The house has a large garden around it. A young Jaeron had scraped himself and was having his wound treated. His father told him that even small wounds must be treated. Otherwise, they could get worse later. Jaeron asked if his father ever felt pain, since he bled a lot when fighting monsters. His father replied that he not only felt pain, but also fear, but he did his best to hide his pain because his job was to prevent others from getting hurt. As a child, Jaeron's greatest wish was to be like his father, but there was always something on his mind. He knew his father didn't want the same for him. His father had told him to find another career and always seemed sad when they talked about it. Maybe that's why he didn't want Jaeron to follow the path of an explorer, but they never spoke about it openly. Jaeron thought that once he grew up, his father would explain the reason, but now he no longer could. Jaeron's eyes opened and he looked at the unfamiliar ceiling. There was something about the feeling that made him nostalgic. A figure beside him asked if those words were for him. Startled, Jaeron looked to the side. Seek was there saying that Jaeron was only here now because it was fated to be. Jaeron wanted to know why the director was there keeping him company. As soon as he sat up, a pain shot through his entire body. Seek told him not to move too much. Even though the treatment was successful, he should be in a coma due to the extent of his injuries and it would take him a month to fully recover. Until then, Seek advised him to focus on healing because there was a lot to prepare for. The boy thanked him, saying that was right, but he had something to say. Seek interrupted him, stating that if it was about his father, yes, they knew each other and had worked together. Jaeron moved his hand quickly, so fast that it made Seek focus on him. But Jaeron only took the apple Seek was holding. Seeing Seek's expression, he asked if he thought he was going to hit him or something. Seek replied that it wasn't the reaction he expected. The boy says he doesn't know what Cheolkin's expectations are, but he just wanted to know if he knew or not his father. Judging by the difference in how he's treating him now, he suspects they were something more than mere colleagues. Holding the apple, he takes a deep breath. He remembers telling Seek to either leave and die or cut off his arm with a knife in his hand to prove his point. He thought he might have interpreted it that way and asked him how his performance was. He said he tried to make it look real and apologized if he took it personally. Seek brushed it off, saying he expected a more emotional reaction when the news came. Perhaps he would have had that reaction 3 years ago. Back then, it was the only thing he thought about. He wanted to get revenge on all those who turned their backs on his father and caused him to end up like he is now. Hearing that, Seek asks him what made him change his mind, but Jaren believes he's simply matured and that what he thought before was crazy. He's not even strong enough to defeat Zeke, let alone seek revenge. The most important thing for him now is to earn enough money to pay for the hospital. That's his priority. He doesn't know when they'll find a cure, but he will do everything in his power to make it happen. He's determined to overcome any obstacle that comes his way. Seek says he's just there to ask him a few questions. He wants to know why Jaron isn't formally registered as Sun's son, and who took care of him after his father became bedridden. Jaren explains that he was raised solely by his father and would be in danger if people knew whose son he was. Besides, he grew up alone, nodding as he realizes it's the truth. Seek then asks if he has ever heard the name Duganwi, but Jaren doesn't recognize it. It's not a person. It's the name of a dragon, the destroyer of worlds. Duganwi is the source of the poison afflicting his father. It's also the most dangerous dragon and still lives in the world today. The word dragon strikes terror into people's hearts. A few years after the invasion, the walls were completed with the help of other races. With the rise in explorers' abilities, humanity no longer faced the threat of extinction. However, some rare and dangerous events still occurred, like it being powerful enough to destroy the walls. That's what a dragon is capable of: stronger, smarter, and more cunning than any other species, and they frequently showed hostility towards humans. Among all monsters, dragons are easily the most dangerous. They don't hate humans, but they see them as a resource to dominate and exploit. Their mistake was underestimating humans, thinking they wouldn't overcome the dungeons, so they didn't attack them. Once order collapsed in the world, they planned to pose as gods in exchange for protection from threats. Jaren comments that perhaps they should thank the dragons for not getting involved, but since progress didn't go as they expected, they began to attack humans. It was during that time that Jaren's father appeared. With strategy and determination, he became the explorer who proved that even dragons, however powerful, could be defeated. The news of his feat spread, and things began to change. Jaren remembers hearing that story too, and that it was then that the dragons started to hide, but Sek corrects him. They didn't actually hide. They changed their strategy. Dragons are cunning, even capable of changing their appearance. Since they couldn't destroy humanity by force, they began to infiltrate human society. This information is classified. Sek only shared it because Jaerong is Sun's son. Duganayak was the last dragon Soon pursued before he fell ill. If it's defeated, an antidote for Soon could be made. If Jaerong plans to take on that challenge in the future, he needs to get stronger, as Sek plans to help him kill the dragon. Jaerong is already strong enough to get out of bed. Leaning against the window, he examines the card he received. He remembered what he'd heard, that if it didn't seem possible, he should just ignore the idea, but if it was true, he wouldn't miss the chance to help his father. However, Sek firmly tells him that it's not up to him to decide. To seize this opportunity, he needs to reach the top. Dragons are cunning and have already infiltrated society, hiding behind facades, waiting for the right moment to strike. Even if there's proof to expose them to the world, without capturing one, it's useless. If they act too soon, the dragons will just go back into hiding, and that will cause widespread panic. To prevent this, they must be precise and swift. Only then can they stop the dragons from escaping and hiding again. In recent years, a team has been assembled specifically to confront Duganake. All its members are experienced and skilled adventurers, capable of taking down a dragon. If Jirong doesn't get strong enough, no matter how much he wants to be part of the team, he won't be accepted by the others. It's not ideal to have someone in the group who could slow them down. This would not only jeopardize the operation, but also everyone's safety. If all this is true, Jaerong wants to know how much time he has to prepare, since he knows they won't wait for him. Sek explains that they don't know the dragon's exact location yet, but they plan to find it in 2 years or less. And as Jaerong already pointed out, when the time comes, they won't wait for him. Before leaving, Sek says he doesn't care what Jaerong thinks of him. If Jaerong doesn't want to see him again, that's fine. But Sek makes a promise. Whether Jaerong is with them or not, they will hunt that dragon no matter what it takes. Those words left a mark on Jaerong's mind. It was a ray of hope, the real chance to cure his father. That information was suddenly everything he ever wanted to hear, that it was possible. It gave him hope, but it also brought something else. Fear of not being able to prepare in time for the mission that would avenge his father. What he has now isn't enough, but he will do it no matter what it takes. All this time he had no hope for a cure, and now he's received good news. This small spark of hope gave Jae-rong a motivation he had never felt before in his life. While washing his face, he heard the door open. The nurse who came in was happy to see him awake. She asked if he was in any pain, and he replied that he only felt muscle soreness. The doctor would explain the details, but she told him he would feel that way for a few more days. They had to rebuild almost his entire body, his entire arm. When he was rescued, his arm was in critical condition. Every precaution was taken, or the risk of amputation would have been very real. It was thanks to a high-level healer that the surgery was a success. Looking at his arm, Jaron wanted to ask something. He wanted to know what had happened to his friend who fought alongside him. The nurse assured him that his friend was doing great, with an incredible recovery, and had been discharged the same day he arrived at the hospital. Hearing this, Jaron became curious about how long he had been hospitalized, but before he could ask, the nurse asked if she could take a picture with him. She snapped a selfie with him right then and there. Jaron asked if he could be discharged too. The nurse said yes, but warned him that he'd be in trouble if he went out the front door. The hospital was swarming with reporters. Everyone wanted a chance to interview him the moment he walked out. Jaron couldn't imagine why they were there, so the nurse told him he should find out for himself, showing him the screen of her phone. Jaron was shocked. The whole situation could have turned into a horrific disaster if it weren't for him and his friend. There would have been hundreds of casualties, if not more. Everyone wanted to know who he was, and reporters had been flocking to the hospital non-stop. Handing him a bag, she said his friend had asked her to give it to him. If he didn't want to reveal his identity, he should use what was inside and leave through the back of the hospital. Sound had prepared it, and it probably had a spell to conceal his identity, but when Jaron opened the bag, he saw a rope inside. It wasn't exactly the kind of exit he'd been hoping for. Since he had no other options, he threw the rope out the window and rappelled down to the ground floor. From above, the nurse shouted for him not to worry about the photo. She would only make it public once he became a famous explorer. Jaron waved back, still unsure of the magnitude of the situation. Sam was waiting for him in her car. She had been waiting for him so they could leave together. Jaron asked if the rope was really the only option. Without answering, she asked him if he'd rather be discovered. He admitted he didn't, but he was also curious about the bag in the car. Sound explained that she'd bought him some clothes along with a new phone, assuming his old one was broken. This moved him deeply, but she told him not to overreact. In any case, he didn't even know where to begin. Talking about what had happened, an incident like that occurring so close to home, and even more so, the fact that he had managed to defeat that monster. But he knew her life was full of events like that, so he asked her where they were going now. The truth was, she wanted to rest, but they only had today and nothing more. If you want clothes, custom made, you have to go today, but he says he already has clothes with him. Sound says she's not talking about normal clothes, but about the kind he'll wear as an explorer and, in fact, she hopes he understands just how lucky he is. The best tailor on the planet agreed to make him a set of armor. Armor material is divided into 3 categories, with the first being clothing. Normal material. It has the worst defensive capability of all, but how can it be easily enchanted with magic? Support. It's usually used by mages and healers who stay away from the front line. The second category is steel, which is indeed very durable. However, it ends up being extremely heavy. The ore from a dungeon is denser, and without strength and stamina, it's impossible to wear armor like that. Among them, leather is the middle ground. Not too heavy, but still solid enough, ideal for those focused on dealing damage in close-quarters combat like him. Maybe he should consider wearing armor from now on. Siren is also curious and wants to know how he defeated the monster. She wants the details, but Harrien says someone recorded it, so she can just watch it to understand. However, the video doesn't capture everything. It only shows how he defeated the 1-horned and 2-horned ones. It doesn't show how he defeated the 5-star one, which surprised him because he didn't know it was such a strong monster. In fact, it was very strong, so he suspected something like that. Even though the clan was perfectly prepared, it still should have been impossible. But then, that mysterious power emerged and he doesn't know what it was. She insists again on why he won't talk about what happened, but the truth is, he doesn't even know how to explain it. It just happened. In true I don't know, it just happened fashion. It makes no sense. Even professionals need to team up to fight a monster like that. Even if he's not lying, and he isn't, it's hard to believe. That left her bewildered, as geniuses really are different. However, she told him to be careful. Things from now on would be exhausting. It's not just the reporters, but now the 2 of them are at the epicenter of all this. Cheo-kan wasn't so lucky and had to give several interviews for 4 days straight, even ending up on television. But that whole time he avoided talking about Harrien as much as he could. Even simple questions like his name, he refused to answer without his friend's permission. That reminded him of the favor he had asked. If anyone asked for details about what happened, he was to say he didn't know either, because if he could keep his identity hidden, he preferred it that way. Cheokan agreed and said he would do as asked. The girl wants to know how they ended up getting close, but he doesn't know either. She advised him to stay off the radar until he could take the admission test. He wants to know if there's a reason for that. On his phone, his representative says they want to talk to him soon. Siren has been reading about the test, and, the more she learns, the more she realizes how difficult it is. In recent years, the pass rate has been 1 in 110. Harrien thinks there are many people who just take it for the sake of it and must be, at least, worse than Siren. Seeing that she got upset, he said he didn't mean to imply she's bad, but she told him to shut up. But the truth is that, based on skill, he's not wrong, because she is a person with enormous potential. However, he should look at things from another perspective. People who lack skill don't do things alone. In fact, they do things together. And that's when he realized what this was all about. In the test, they form teams. The candidates are usually the children of adventurers, so this connection makes it easier to form equipment for their children. Almost all the candidates come from such backgrounds, and they are the ones who get approved. If his identity is exposed, he will quickly become their target. Although the school discourages this, it's not what happens. He could even try for a special admission, but that's not what he wants. Even though this is true, there are those who get approved on their own, and that's what she needs to know. He's going to beat them all and make his own way. She likes his motivation, but finds it a bit naive. Meanwhile, he already wants to change his clothes, pointing out where the bathroom is. She told him to change at the end of the hall. At the reception desk, the secretary is working. Siren says she has an appointment with the CEO of the place, and she just told her to wait a few minutes. Over the phone, she passes on the information about the visitor, and he said he would tell her what happened. Unfortunately, he had an unavoidable commitment and is not available. That's a shame, because she knows there isn't another day available for this. He said he would compensate her for her time, but Siren says it's not about money. She needs this for the warrior school entrance exam, and that cancellation could ruin everything. Someone nearby said she looked familiar and wanted to know her name. There's a saying among adventurers that the current generation is different from theirs. The first generation paid for progress with blood. Since then, everything has advanced in terms of technology. What has also changed are the circumstances of each of their births. The first generation retired and provided everything for their children. Not only was talent passed down, but also a quality education from the earliest moments of childhood. This makes you wonder who the biggest beneficiaries of this are, and many would say it's that girl. That's Angan, and she knows that girl is a freshman at the warrior school. She wants to know if he knows her, since she is the president of the student council. Anyway, she'd like to skip the introduction between the two. The CEO of that place is her uncle, and she is the reason he had an unavoidable commitment. Given that, she understands that she's upset about having her appointment canceled, and it would be better to say that, instead of canceling her appointment, he preferred to give his spot to her. In fact, she would be grateful for the help. That's a better story to tell. Siren is aware of the influence that Clown possesses, because she has already heard stories about what she is capable of. While the two are talking, Harrien just arrives. Since she is older than Siren, it seems they have no other choice. Even without knowing her, he thanked the guy, but he wasn't done talking. He told him to drop the trivial talk and get lost at once. She definitely didn't expect that. That unexpected interaction made the secretary nervous. The girl said that boy has guts and wants to know who he is. Siren tries to stop the conversation from continuing, her hand trembling slightly. It was as if he had hit Siren. She immediately felt what could have happened. He wasn't talking to her, so she wasn't supposed to speak, but she felt as if she had been hurt anyway. The clown didn't ask that idiot anything, so he should know his place and keep quiet. Harrien introduces himself, saying he's 17 years old and lives in Hanek-go. He's 1.8 meters tall. He doesn't know how much he weighs now, and his favorite food is sausage stir-fry. That should be everything. But the most important thing is that he's preparing to enter the Warrior Academy, and right now he's considerably disappointed, because even at that school there are conceited people like her who think they're much more than they really are. She smiled like a psychopath with her hand trembling with rage. Now he felt the same way as Siren. She said she doesn't exactly hate people like him. That is, if he can back up what he said, since he wanted to transfer to that school. He hasn't even taken the exam yet, and he's already acting like someone who studies there. But he smiled a little and asked if that's how she does things, but he's curious to know what she thought, since it was the first time he tried it. He's curious to know from her if he lived up to what she expected. Now the girl is irritated by the interaction. From a distance, her uncle calls her by name. This is CW, and he wants to know what the hell they're doing there. He wanted to know why she visited him without telling him, since she even took the phone out of his hands. It's only been 1 week since her last incident, just 1 week. He wants to know if she wants her father to get angry again. The adult apologizes to the two of them, as his niece tends to act on her own. Siren says he doesn't need to apologize, but he's deeply grateful, since it's all just that clown's nonsense. Things aren't so bad, but the rumors are true. She's arrogant and only values those who are strong. Harrien asked him to come closer. He wanted to know what exactly that annoying girl does, because she doesn't seem like an ordinary senior. She's the president of the student council. In other words, she's simply the strongest student in the entire school right now. The students at these schools receive temporary gem rank licenses. They can enter dungeons under professional supervision. With this license, students can use their breaks to explore dungeons. This way, they can gather experience for when they become full-fledged explorers. But there are a few exceptions to this. Those who belong to the student council are seen as professionals, even though they're not officially registered. Besides having political influence with the school's administration, they can also join raid parties against 5-star or higher monsters. They are what's expected, the next generation of ranked warriors. Since she's in her 3rd year, she should be 2 years older than them. That would be the case, but she's still in her 2nd year, and Harrien wants to know if she was held back. It's not that. She actually took the position from the previous president, but he wants to know how that could have happened. Saron had already told him. The school is basically governed by strength and skill. Students can join the council starting from the 1st semester of their 2nd year, and that's what she did. She quickly drew her sword. That's how the most important event in the school happened, and she challenged all the council members. Before the 1st semester ended, she had already defeated them all, becoming the youngest council president in history. Despite everything, she said he was about to leave. Sarum is relieved that nothing bad happened, but Harrien wants to make a bet with her. Since she seems busy, it'll be quick. He heard she's famous and must have her reasons for being such a jerk for no reason. The bet is simple. If he loses, the turn is hers. Sarum tries to apologize on his behalf, thinking the guy is completely crazy. If it's a bet, she also has to face a consequence if she doesn't win. He liked that she was quick on the uptake and asked if she knew what shadow sparring was. It's a basic form of training in hand-to-hand combat. Whoever touches their opponent first or puts them in a disadvantageous position wins. If he loses, he'll give her the turn, and it's perfect because there's no risk of a serious injury from a strike. Now, if she loses the bet, as soon as he enters the school, she has to give him her position as president. That's one of the craziest things. There's no way she'll accept that proposal, but it's interesting enough, so she ends up accepting the challenge. After hearing that, she even learned the guy's name. Since they couldn't do it in the hallway, they went to a workshop where the durability of parts is tested. They're both ready to start. The brat is pretty sure she'll win. The same can be said for Harrien. Sarum, on the other hand, is very anxious. That's unnecessary. Their issue was already resolved. Not to mention, he's badly injured. And even if he wins, she won't give him the position. But he says he's not going to win. Now Sarum wouldn't stand a chance. She's too strong. If that's the case, why did he make the bet with her then? But Harrien tells her not to worry. It's normal for her to be confused, but she should trust him more. In the end, it won't be a bad trade. It's just that Sarum doesn't understand the purpose of it. She thinks he intends to lose to get on her good side, but there's no way he's that stupid. Her uncle says he has nothing to say, except to apologize. He knows she should be a leader, but instead of being receptive, she ends up being harsh with the truth. And he apologized once more to Sarum, who said it wasn't necessary. This is all just happening because the guy is also stubborn, but he doesn't agree with what she said. Even though he doesn't know the guy, he can sense that he's very confident. Then, the brat says he must have already noticed. She won't use both her arms. That way it'll be a little fairer for him. But that's not important because it will serve as an excuse when he loses. That audacity makes her more interested, so she started to get into her stance. In the blink of an eye, she had already disappeared. He's surprised. Preparing to react, he managed to dodge the first attack. This surprised both Sarum and the brat's uncle, but for different reasons. Sarum was surprised by the speed of the attack, which was almost imperceptible. In this type of training, someone has to accept the risk of exposing themselves, but Harrien showed no hesitation or fear. She simply executed her attack with speed to protect her immense pride. She knows that if it had been her, she would have never been able to react. Then, the uncle breaks the silence. He still doesn't know if he's the first one to ask this question. He wants to know if this student is actually training to transfer to the warrior school. Looking at the data they sent him, there's no doubt the boy is talented, but what he's seeing with his own eyes exceeds expectations. He was also an adventurer full of energy and is aware that Harrien's intention isn't to prove anything, but to learn more about who that person is. The boy is already very strong for his age, and with a little more experience, he would easily be on par with the lower-ranked ones. The boy just wants to get an idea of how far he needs to go. Not only that, but also the distance he needs to cover. And so far, he has managed to dodge masterfully. After several strikes, he gains some distance. Gon says it's been a long time since she joined the school, No one has been able to dodge her attacks for this long. She's impressed with him. She definitely didn't expect him to last this long. His arm isn't the only thing injured. Judging by his current state, he must be far from his full physical capacity. But Harrien says she hasn't seen him at his best yet and shouldn't assume that. Speaking more softly, she said she saw it. He was quite fast when he faced the horn horror. She watched the video hundreds of times, and she's a fan of his, the unsung hero that nobody knows yet. Returning to her normal tone, she suggested that they call it a draw and that they could settle it another time. As soon as he enters the school and is healed, they will continue. Because she doesn't want things to end here. He can go on with his uncle, but Harrien said he doesn't believe those words. That confidence still doesn't know what's happening. A draw is not something he's willing to accept here because the position of student council president is at stake. Since he doesn't intend to give up, it's best they don't waste any more time. He's ready to continue, but the three of them thought the same thing. He's bluffing. He's wasting the best chance he's had so far, since this whole mess started. That's a problem, because she likes ambitious people, and what he just showed wasn't ambition, but stupidity. Harrien looks at her with a faint smile and took a few steps toward her. After those words, he was the first to move. Now it's his turn to attack in this fight. Surprisingly, she had to be completely focused in the moment. Not even her uncle expected it. Harrien almost hit her with everything he had. Sarum thought he had been holding back this whole time, but that wasn't the case. And the tailor realized he was completely wrong in his assessment. It wasn't just a test of strength he was looking for with Gon. In that short span of time, he managed to learn and replicate her movements. He's a monster, and this isn't about winning or losing. His intention is to learn the technique of Gon. As he finished his attack, he said that's how she did it. Since he was a smuggler from a young age, there was a rule he followed strictly. She shouldn't just keep watching, because there's more he wants to see from her. And the rule is this: never make a deal you'll lose. The technique isn't just about using strength to knock someone out, but about the refinement of movement to draw out the best in an individual, from the way you breathe to the way you take any step. What makes each of those details important is the timing of the execution. People, they dedicate their time and lives to perfecting this, acquiring knowledge through repetition, trial, and error. The knowledge is then passed down so the next generation can refine it. Even with talent, you cannot overcome the limit of knowledge by yourself just because you are naturally talented. Harrien became strong on his own, but as soon as his development slowed down after puberty, he faced a brutal truth. There was a wall in front of him, preventing him from becoming stronger. Only by breaking that wall could he become stronger. So he got rid of the tether that was limiting him. He asked why she was hesitating so much, because he had been very clear. "Are you sure you're going to enter the school?" And she said she would be happy to teach a rookie like him. It seems that she actually wants to avoid losing, and he understands that. This left her speechless for a moment, and she asked her uncle if he remembered what she asked him last time. An attack squad wanted to make a deal with her, and he advised her to visit them to build her reputation. She will listen to him, but asks that he not stop her in return. This made him uncomfortable, asking what she intends to do. And Harrien tells his opponent that he wanted to see her dodge. If that's the case, she will show him. It's time for him to make her dodge his attack, but she was already about to throw a kick at the boy. He watches the attack closely, waiting for an opening. By avoiding contact, he found what he was looking for. Every movement has a beginning and an end, as well as a transitional phase between them. When you observe someone, you can predict what they will do next. Gon is using this to her advantage. By skipping a few steps, it's possible to deceive her observer. Not only is it difficult to predict what's coming, but each movement seems faster than it really is. This is the result of decades of development, something Gon's father created and became known for executing it with mastery. This is called flash, an incredibly fast technique. Harrien executed it twice in a row, in a way that Gon has not yet shown mastery. This is not a technique that can be replicated just by understanding the concept. Flexibility, reflexes, and above all, timing are essential for a perfect execution. Any mistake, and the technique doesn't happen. Even at his physical peak, her father didn't master the technique until shortly after his 20s. It took him 3 months just to begin to understand its beginning. He had to perfect it just to train with his niece, and the boy is already doing all that with ease. As Han noticed, Harrien is in very poor health. He's almost out of energy after everything he's done, but even with all that going on in his body, he moves as if he were at the peak of his vigor. He feels a sense of accomplishment as if he knew he could become even stronger than he already is. It's not an orthodox way of learning, but he also has a good reason to get stronger, and he learned exactly how to do it. He didn't learn because he needed to, but because he discovered that learning is fun. Now he doesn't feel the pain in his body or the fatigue in his lungs. All he wants now is to keep pressuring Gon. She realized that she's in a delicate situation. Harrien is masterfully pressuring her using his new technique. Contact is imminent, and there's nothing she can do. This caused and was about to intervene. A heavy silence falls over the place and stood still in the middle of the path. Gayun had told him not to try and separate them. However, he's happy it ended before he had to step in. Despite everything, it's a shame. Gayun admits she lost the bet, but Harrien says the same thing she did. Now they're both at a stalemate. She said she wouldn't use her hands, but Harrien didn't agree with that part. Whether she used her hands or not, he still got hit. He might be saying that out of pride, but to be honest, he's not that strong. Then her uncle said there's no need to decide who won or not. It's his fault that things got to this point, and given Harrien's condition, it's not good to continue. So they should just decide it's a draw and that it was a learning opportunity for both of them. As soon as the boy fully recovers, they can have a formal challenge between the two of them. If that's what he's suggesting, Gayun glares at him threateningly and tells him to listen up. They'll see each other again at school, and if he fails to get in or loses to someone else before losing to her, she won't forgive him in this lifetime. Regardless, for him, the fight was definitely an excellent learning experience. As she was leaving, Gayun asked for Saron's name and she told her, if she's the one sponsoring the boy, she'd like to apologize. She doesn't know how good Saron is as an adventurer, but from the looks of it, she's not a completely useless person. She has a good eye for people, and Harrien wasn't the only one who had fun today. Now the two of them are sitting on the sofa, waiting. All this waiting was killing him. Saron is happy that after all, he doesn't have to go to the hospital, but he wishes he could, and after all that, she's surprised. She didn't expect Gayun to admit that she lost. Since she saw everything, she thinks Harrien won, but he doesn't see it that way. He was the first one to break the rules. When he took off his binding to attack, neither of them was fighting with the intention to win. With that in mind, he was the first one to cross the line. In the end, he gave it his all, and if he had hit her, he could have caused serious injuries. If he had been in her shoes, he would have used his hands too because there was no other choice. Saron wants to know what would have happened if they had fought with their full strength. For someone who didn't want him to fight, she seems to have gotten way too invested in what she saw. Then he gets up from the sofa, having realized that they had arrived in the room. Finally, two people enter. Saron turns to see who it is. It's Anne, who says he's grateful they waited all this time. He ended up bringing some pizzas for them to eat. Afterward, after eating, he apologized to them. His niece caused some trouble, and he should have taken them out to eat. But Harrien is already grateful for the pizzas. For him, food just needs to be plentiful, and that's enough. Adventurers like him eat 5 times more. Saron hadn't thought about that before, but he had been unconscious for 4 days without eating anything. Anyway, his workshop doesn't work with leather, but with a similar material. They use monster fibers from high-level monsters as raw material. They make a strong combination with the goal of creating the best outfit for the user. This material is lighter and more resistant than leather. Thinking about Harrien, and already knows what combination of materials and type of clothing would suit him best. He's seen what Harrien is capable of and already has his personal information. There's just one more thing he's still questioning. The final stage of production involves soaking the material in oil to increase its resistance and durability. Saon already knew this, which is why he requested the best material be used, but in the current circumstances, obtaining that oil is nearly impossible. They used the oil of the voracious deep-sea whale. They had a monopoly on that material, but due to unexpected circumstances, hunting them now is non-existent. There are other materials that can be used as substitutes with almost no practical difference, but that would mean a breach of contract, a mistake that shouldn't happen. And if they want to change their minds, that's fine. He can even recommend them to a master leather specialist. He's willing to cover the loss of time for them. Harrien says he doesn't mind. If the difference in quality isn't that significant, there's no problem. He doesn't even use good gear anyway, and, above all, he wants to use the gear made by that guy. Furthermore, he asked if Han was the one who trained his niece. He doesn't understand much about equipment, but he would feel better knowing that it was made by someone strong. If that's the case, they'll stick with him. He knew something was off that day. It's already been 10 years since Han retired, but he was grateful to hear that and was happy to receive the compliment. Some has no idea where all the food went. If they trust him, he'll do his best to create that gear. The more he thinks about it, the more disappointed he is about what happened last week. There was a hunt, and he thought he would get good materials from it. He asked if they had heard about the Imperial Wasp, and Saron mentioned the royal jelly. But in that monster there is another material considered excellent by gear makers, the black wax used to protect the queen. Only a few can produce that wax for protection. Showing his phone to Harrien, Han asked if that was what he was talking about. There was a picture, but since he lost his old phone, he had to improvise and draw it. Now Han is surprised that the kid has seen it firsthand. The truth is that Harrien smuggled it, but he said that he saw it when he went to Seon's house. Rich people really do have a lot of things. Now Harrien is at the hospital. He should have seen someone before going there. It will take an hour and the representative should be available by then too. Han asked if Harrien had eaten and, in fact, he had. but he would be willing to eat again as long as Han helps pay. Of course, the door opens slowly. Where is Harrien? He needed to hang up now, but he asked them to call him as soon as they arrived, because the plans he had for that day have just arrived. Zeke says it's been a while and Caballino suggests they talk outside. 11 days ago, they discussed some things at the hospital. It's not good to make too much noise in Harrien's room. A raid team led by a man was disbanded and they could just stay quiet if that's the case. Caballino says that Zeke is still the same, easily irritating people. These two used to be allies, but not everything is friendly between them. Zeke got worked up seeing him. Haiwan, or Caballino, is a retired adventurer. He was number 5 before that, and since they are from the on the same side, saying he should just shut up and follow. Saron asks if her friend will keep surprising her like this and wants to know more about the black wax he has. She imagines it's the item that was in the chest, and she should have been informed about it. But Harrien didn't even know what it was. However, she thanked him for handling it discreetly. After Argius, nothing has been easy, and now she wants to know if he's busy, and in fact he is. He has to meet someone. If it wasn't too far, she could give him a ride, and soon she felt her phone vibrate. It was her uncle Sequi calling, so she asked him to wait a bit, and he agreed, since he wouldn't be late for his appointment. The nights were already starting to get cold at this time of year. It was the tailor who mentioned this and asked if Saron had already left, but she had just stepped out to make a call, so she wouldn't be long. And the tailor said there was no need to talk to her. He just came out to have a smoke in peace. He mentioned that the skill Harrien learned today is called Flash. It was created by his brother, Gaun's father, and he also contributed to its development. Hearing this, Harrien felt embarrassed. He immediately apologized to him. He should have guessed that the creator of the technique would be there. He apologized for using it without permission, but the tailor wasn't there to complain about that. There's no exclusivity for that kind of thing. In fact, they hesitate to teach it to just anyone, but it's not wrong or a fault to learn by observing. If it's easy to copy, it's natural that more people will end up using it. But it's not at all easy to copy. At first he thought Harrien had a weak foundation because he had never been taught by anyone, but after seeing him in the fight, he realized that if Harrien had been lazy, he never would have mastered the basics. He doesn't know what happened for him to learn that way, but he has some advice for him. He is talented, and with time and dedication he will discover his true potential. Becoming a great adventurer won't be a challenge for him. That potential isn't far off, but in this world it's rare for prodigies to be admired. Of course, there will be those who admire and help him, but there will always be those who can't overcome their envy, try to control him or destroy him. And perhaps Harrien is already aware of such stories. The boy wants to know if the advice is to hide his potential to avoid unwanted attention, but it's actually the opposite. He should never hide his talents. Besides, it's not something he can do, and if he tried, he would only attract the contempt of others. So it's better that he does what he feels is right. He must show who is truly an unattainable genius. As long as he is capable, he must do his best, absorb all the techniques he finds useful. Even though that might become a problem, he shouldn't lower his head like he just did. Instead, he must raise his head and raise his voice. He is the one who decides what is right or wrong. That lesson belongs to the strongest. If he learns a technique and perfects it, he can even claim that it belongs to him. The tailor understands how the boy must be feeling, but in the world of explorers, strength is what rules. His niece's personality is that taken to the extreme, but he doesn't plan to control her behavior. She's demanding, and even so, no one will ever underestimate him, and he thinks Harrien should do the same. Just then, Saron appears, calling for her friend. She didn't expect Sass to be there too, but she was there to tell him to talk to her uncle. She doesn't know why, but she stressed that he had to do it. She knew he would be there, so she asked if the guy was around and said that she wanted to talk to him. So he answers the phone. He says he's sorry if he was interrupting anything. He didn't expect to talk to him so soon, but a problem came up and he needed to see him right away. Harrien accepted the invitation suddenly, but he understood the message and said he would see him right away. In an abandoned place, they follow a path. It seems there's a secret route that leads to the dungeon. Through the subway, there are several access points that lead to the dungeons. That particular one belonged to them. Seek is there with his clothes torn, and he says someone is inside. He didn't intend to call him, but the person said they'd rather die than be healed by him. That's why he called him. He doesn't know what's going on, but it's clear they don't get along, and it seems Seek and the representative had a fight. The guy says that if he had known Harrien would arrive so quickly, he would have asked for a shirt, but Harrien doesn't even know who he is. He says he likes Harrien's eyes and asks if he was the one who cut Seek's cheek. He's already famous within the raid party, known as the guy who defeated a high-rank monster. The captain is even excited to meet him, but Seek cuts off the chat between the two. They are leaving, and there's no point in staying there any longer. Saron goes with him, but he asked her to call him later. On the other side of the door, there's a reddish light. Harrien heads there to see what happened. Harrien felt frustrated, thinking that the man really needed help, and if he does, his body and his pride are in shambles. He doesn't know why that bastard came all the way there, and he certainly didn't expect him to show up with someone else. Even knowing the answer, the man asked if the boy had a lighter, but Harrien just wanted to know what that strange light was, since the sun had already set. When Harrien didn't have a lighter, the man asked if he could get something for him. He was too tired to move, and below them, there was fire and destruction everywhere. Now Harrien wants to know what the two of them had been fighting about. It wasn't really a fight. The man just wanted to burn Seek until there was nothing left of him. The guy who showed up is impressive. He's not a tank, but he has good defense and the potential to become a big name in the future, if he trains for another 10 years. Harrien says he has something to tell him, but the representative already knows. If it's about quitting being a smuggler, he's free to go. But if Harrien wants to become an adventurer, there's one condition. He better learn in the next month what the representative plans to teach him. If he doesn't succeed, he should reconsider his plans. It won't be easy, since it's not one of his natural talents, but Harrien isn't sure what it could be. However, the representative reveals that it's exactly what he thinks. It's magic that he intends to teach him. The protagonist asked if he had heard correctly, because he wants to know more about it, as he's very impressed. But his future mentor is too tired to stand, needing immediate help. It doesn't seem like ordinary fatigue, since even his body is cold, leaving the boy with no choice but to carry him in his arms. At first, making coffee from beans was a bit difficult, but he soon got the hang of it to brew a tasty coffee. If he had known the process was so therapeutic, he would have started much sooner, as it would have been a lovely hobby in his prime. The other guy didn't like that phrase, as he thinks his friend is still in his prime. That way of talking is as if he were retired. Ha was only 26 years old back then, and the protagonist's father said he is indeed retired. The manager would like him to be able to take down Duganwi. He just needed to form a capable squad for it, but he would have to overcome the bureaucracy to do so. I also understand his enemy's strategy now, who ends up handing over victory by hiding, but that's what worries the manager a lot. This decision will strengthen their enemy. He's also outraged that people don't give credit to the real hero. Proving to be a loyal friend, he said he would take care of things for him. He decided he would fight the dragon and fix what had happened. The heated conversation ended up waking the child. It seems the manager didn't know about his existence until now. That little one, with big eyes and very polite, is named Harrien. Only now has he been introduced to the son of the great hero. He asked the boy to go play for a while because he needed to talk to that adult who was going to have dinner with them. It was then that he revealed to the manager that his health wouldn't last much longer, that he was doing everything possible to treat it, but his body is also developing a resistance to the medicine. Soon all his abilities will deteriorate, including his cognitive ones. He has at most 4 years before he becomes unrecognizable. That news shook the manager, but the hero had already made his decision. He took the opportunity to ask him to take care of the child if the worst happened. The manager had never seen that man show weakness. This was the first and only time, the only chance he ever asked someone for a favor. Not because he was proud, but because he felt too responsible for his own affairs. He wished for the little one to have a normal life, a life different from the one he had, a life where he would find happiness. That was the small favor he asked of the manager, who could never refuse his great friend's last request. His health condition finally deteriorated. The manager remembers that part well. He asked the boy what time it was. It was still early that day, but the morning was already almost over. The manager just hoped he hadn't been treated by Zeke, and Harrien confirmed that hadn't happened. He considered taking him to the hospital, but it would be very difficult to explain the situation, so he treated him at home. The manager quickly realized what had happened. In the past, he had received that as a gift for starting work. Harrien was 14 years old and thought that syringe was for use on monsters, but later he learned it was a medicine for emergencies. It might not be a sensational item, but it solves the problem in emergencies, serving as an antidote for almost everything. It's almost exclusive to adventurers, and he thought it wouldn't be a bad gift for the boy. Since then, he should buy the next ones with his own money. That made the boy very happy, and the manager just watched him. He warned that the boy's lesson about the path he wants to follow cannot be changed. Once he starts, he won't be able to just stop working. At least he wouldn't have to worry about hospital expenses, even if that troubled the manager's conscience. The boy sees it as an opportunity, because they don't know what might happen in the future. Since he was a child, he knew it was necessary to have his own skills. Trusting that man is not a challenge, because the real challenge was to be strong enough to protect his father. As he left, he thanked him for the gift, but the manager never imagined that gift would be used on him. The boy had survived all those years without needing it. He should have at least sold it on the black market, but that's not something he would do. He revealed to the boy that he would pay the hospital expenses anyway and had always known it. He had doubts at some point, but he always considered the possibility. He knew the manager wouldn't abandon his father even if something happened. That's why he never hesitated to work for him. When the boy became his employee to be a smuggler, that's when he thought he had given up on the promise he once made. But it was the boy who wanted it. He was the one who asked for the opportunity. If it wasn't with him, he would have found another way. That eliminated the doubt from the manager, who had always been intrigued by how easily a boy accepted that job. The promise he had made to the boy's father was not to turn his son into an adventurer. But even in his prime, he didn't usually listen to the boy's father because the talent he had couldn't be wasted on a normal life, especially because he hates this damn world they live in. The bastards who disrespected his father and forgot everything he did for humanity, even those who remained silent during that injustice, he hopes they all find out if hell exists. He said that not even he would be able to defeat the dragon. The intention is good, but his methods are naive. It's not just humans who need determination to defeat the dragon. These creatures aren't stupid either. Finding them is very difficult, and if they are ever defeated, society could collapse. They are already deeply infiltrated. Determination is a good thing, but all these people are nothing but trash for betraying the protagonist's father. Even if the world ended tomorrow, these fools wouldn't take back what they've done. CEK is bound by the laws of society, and that holds back its plans to defeat the dragon. It will end up paying a price for it. Soon, the devastation that his father prevented will happen someday, and the false hopes will be wiped away. That's why he never pressured the boy to become an adventurer and handed him a piece of paper. It had the details of a bank account in his name, years of deposits he had made with his own earnings for the boy. He hoped he would become an adult first, so he would have the means to do whatever he wanted with his life. He even considered teaching him some skills to succeed in life, so he wouldn't need to become an adventurer, which is very dangerous. When he's ready, he should sign a contract to learn magic. Until then, he wished the boy would study, even if he considered it insignificant. Harrien believes he could have stopped him from becoming an adventurer if that was what he truly wanted. In reality, he's not wrong, but the answer to that will remain in his own mind. His thoughts are irrelevant. It was the same thing that happened 3 years ago. What really matters is the will of Harrien to decide what to do with his own life. These are the ruins of the ancient city of Johnson. A woman walks among the rubble. It's about time they got a better place to meet, since money isn't an issue. The guy doesn't think she was the one who suggested that idea because she barely attends the meetings, but he agrees that they should have a place with at least hot water. The woman didn't expect to see that man alone, since he's always accompanied by someone else. Right now, the man who normally accompanies him has other tasks, and the woman knows that too. That's why she praised him. Being without his bodyguard, she thought he would act like a child and go looking for him. Maybe he's just holding back tears now. The man started to get annoyed by the disrespect. He said that if she wants to find out if there's life after death, she just has to keep talking. The woman found it funny as the dog started barking due to its owner's absence. She thought that attitude was just adorable. Irritated, he warned that he would have no problem fighting her. She is the cause of all the current problems. The woman wasn't intimidated either, saying that he always brings up the same topic, but another person ordered them to stop immediately. His presence was enough to calm Aaron and the big guy. They could fight later, but for now, they have a lot of work to do and need to finish quickly. It would be a shame if they had more work because of the irresponsibility of the two of them. The big guy admitted that he was being stupid. He shouldn't have fallen for her provocation. The woman said that the big guy was still alive thanks to that intervention, claiming that the man was ignoring her calls. But it seems that's not what happened, because 4 days ago he assumed he didn't need to give an answer, but he was saying to dissolve the rescue team. It wasn't necessary to request it, and the plan was a success. The big guy said that only 12 people lost their lives in the event and they still had the spotlights from Badass on someone else. The news won't stop talking about those mysterious youths. It was the actions of those kids that prevented a public backlash against the Adventurers Association. The vehicle containing the creature was not properly supervised, which is why it was stolen, causing that whole incident. They hired the media and paid off the families affected by the catastrophe, directing the public's attention to the two young men. The woman said it would have been better to get rid of them, but that man's dream is to become a terrorist. That way, they will attract the attention of the Adventurers Association. Something small like what happened wouldn't achieve that result, but if they keep causing incidents like this, the association will eventually be destroyed, and the big guy realized that it's important to maintain the chaos, so now they have something immediate to do. Before he could answer, another person had arrived asking if everyone was there. They should have notified him before his arrival, as he believes he might have taken too long. The man said he wouldn't interrupt while that guy was busy with his hobbies, but for him that's not just a hobby, it's his job, although he can't hide that he truly enjoys what he does. The burly man wants to know if that person is an adventurer. He heard that despite being one, he's not very important and that he even stabs his allies in the back. The Reen is screaming for help. They know that this person tends to bring companions along to increase his own profits, disappearing into the shadows when it happens. The shadow is a secret place used by adventurers inside the dungeons, a safe hideout with medicine and a place to rest. At least that was its original purpose, but it turned into a place where they do whatever they want. The man told the Reen to repeat the story he had told. That night, there was going to be a party with his companions inside the shadow. There would also be some ordinary citizens there. The burly man grew curious about this story, since the Reen was spending time with smugglers and he was told to keep telling the story because it wasn't over. His boss has connections, always bringing in different people, the wealthy, celebrities, and ordinary citizens. They drug people with drinks or medicine. They're nothing but addicts who enter the dungeons looking for different kinds of thrills. They're really a great place to do whatever they want, so that the outside world doesn't get involved. The Reen said he had no choice. He heard that his squad wasn't the only one doing such absurd things. His captor told him not to be afraid, as he had said everything they wanted to hear. The problem is that his time was up and it was time to say goodbye. They won't let anyone leave that place alive. What the world will hear is that monsters ended those people's lives. It seems this task will be quite interesting, but it'll be strange that only the 4 of them are involved in it. The guy with the bandana wishes Dorian was with them on this mission too, thinking that if something goes wrong, they can just destroy everything. But in terms of lethality, the 4 of them are more than enough for the mission. The target is an assault squad that's trying to increase its influence, with 2 gold level and 6 members ranked high enough to have a little fun. As soon as their bodies are found, their stench will show the world just how rotten everything already is. 1 month had passed. The protagonist is almost at his destination. He's already out of his cast, but his recovery isn't complete. It will take another 2 weeks. During that time, his equipment will also be completed. And there's something else to mention. Before he could hear it, he saw that his friend was already waiting for him. He didn't expect them to be the only ones using that place for the next few days. That explains the taxi fare. Since the place is far from the city, they only have these few days to prepare for the exam. She heard the protagonist will be busy next month, so she needs to help him now. Harrien told him that he met this person when his cast was removed. He forgot to let him know because he wants to help too. Help him prepare for the exam, and it seems it will be very useful. While she was introducing them, she didn't notice that both of them were nervous out of shyness. That place has a full Olympic-sized pool, along with all the necessary equipment to train. A space where they can also rest with food and drinks freely available. That's the weight room with equipment prepared for adventurers. The 5th floor is reserved for men, but if he wants to use the spa, he has to go to the 4th floor. Harrien can't believe all of that belongs to her uncle. The girl said that there's no reason to be surprised, because among high-level adventurers, it's common for them to be even more extravagant. When he's not using the place, it's her chance to get permission so they can use the space. It was then that she asked, since she had forgotten, what that guy was doing there too. Harrien said he's a friend, and the girl asked him to be more discreet, as they could be overheard. She doesn't know why Chilkin came with the protagonist, because even though they're in the same class, they aren't close. Harrien asked if she had ever tried to talk to him, but that's not even a possibility for her. It's not just her class, everyone avoids talking to him, since he has a reputation for being extremely demanding, though noble. While she was about to continue venting, Harrien asked what his friend was doing. He said he wasn't there to have fun, so he should stop. The mountain of muscles approached him like an obedient boy. Something completely unexpected for the girl who saw that troglodyte apologize. The whole situation is really unusual. She remembered they had talked about serum in the taxi. The mountain of muscles confirmed that he doesn't know anyone at school, but that girl is scary. Still, he thinks she must be a good person. Harrien is now not sure if they're talking about the same person, because that's not the serum he knows. He doesn't quite grasp social nuances, but he knows that girl has been a target for some people since the first day, but he has never seen her waver in front of anyone at that school. She always holds her head high. He doesn't know what her academic performance is like, but he's sure she must be a very resilient person. Maybe they can use this weekend for a group study session. Serum is worried because she needs to prepare for the exam, but the protagonist doesn't seem to care about that. She needs to build habits and acquire knowledge, analyze situations, and develop a plan. That's what she needs. But since they are in that place, they could use it in a more interesting way, because in the last month he has become stronger than ever. He managed to face talented people, learning things he would have never learned on his own. So they should take this opportunity to exchange knowledge. That way, everyone gains something. His words may sound harsh, but he knows that these two are completely out of place at school, and if he were enrolled, he would share information with his friends, and they should start doing that right away. Serum even considered the possibility of doing it over the weekend. Harrien said she should think more about herself. The school must not be an easy place to perform. She understands those words, but she's still worried about the test. Even if it happens, there's no one to sponsor him inside that school. She completely understands the situation, but she doesn't think she'd be able to teach him anything. That's when Harrien asked the Mountain of Muscle if he knows magic. The guy is still in theory classes. That girl is good at it, but she made it clear that just because she knows how to use it doesn't mean she's good. Chokin said she could teach, since he's always been interested in learning. Saruman finds him very intimidating, and he thought he had managed to act naturally, not realizing that he was scaring the girl. The group went to the training room. The mountain of muscles stayed outside to answer a call from his parents. Harrien said that they have all sorts of materials there, even clothes, and asked if he could take them home. Seeing that the plan had changed, San wanted to know what the protagonist had in mind. She didn't imagine she would be part of a group with other people from that school, let alone that Cheo-kan would be one of its members. Harrien said that, although he's big, the guy isn't scary at all and he wants to make something clear. While they were talking, someone was approaching. They turned around to see who it was. The woman said that her bad feeling wasn't for nothing. If they planned to use this place, they should have informed her, saying that San really is such a clumsy person, completely startled. She didn't expect Anissa to be there. The two of them started to argue about being able to use that place when her uncle isn't around. Harrien doesn't know who that blonde is. Anisha said that her uncle wouldn't give special treatment to anyone. San explained to Harrien that this is her cousin, Anisha. Even though she seems rude, they are the same age. The girl greeted him in a friendly manner and is relieved that her cousin brought a friend like him. The extra next to her is a second-year student. He was thinking of bringing some friends to train and get to know each other better. He's happy that there are more people there too, although he imagined that his cousin would prefer a place with fewer people. It's better if he leaves anyway to avoid misunderstandings. Sam was about to respond, but the protagonist intervened, saying that this was a great opportunity. They were planning to have a study session. There's another friend with them who just stepped out to make a call. He asked if that would be a problem. The extra wants to know where the guy is from, since he's never seen him at the school. He said he used to study at a regular place. He's a first year and his name is Harrien, and right now he's preparing to take the transfer exam. Sound offered to help him that weekend. While he explains this, he's mocked by the extras, who already consider him a complete weirdo. The boldest extra suggested he leave before it was too late. Anissa holds back from humiliating her cousin, and the extra keeps trying to intimidate the protagonist, saying that they aren't normal people and someone like him wouldn't last long there. He would only embarrass himself, so he should look for something else to do with his life. Before Harrien could continue talking, the extra surprised him by throwing a punch at his face. He cried out in pain. The extra had no intention of causing serious harm, because attacking a normal citizen is a severely punished crime. He just wanted to intimidate the guy by stopping his fist before it reached him. Sure that he had planned his punch with perfect precision. The kid should have flinched at that hand. He started to think that the kid had moved on purpose to get hit, which many had seen through the provocation. In a trembling voice, Harrien said he hoped they could be friendly and maybe even work together, but unfortunately he would have to act in self-defense and hope the extra could understand. That place is also full of cameras. They are positioned to ensure there are no blind spots so that adventurers can watch their training later and see where they went wrong. Harrien knows he was hit on purpose. No matter what, Harrien must have a reason for it. And the cameras recorded that unprovoked assault. The extra is bewildered, still trying to understand that the kid is going to act in self-defense. He said that he's very shy and introverted. When bad things happen, his sleep is affected. The extra started to think the victim was exaggerating, since he wasn't even hurt. Speaking even louder, he asked if Harrien heard what the extra said, that his victim act is over the top. It would be better if he called the police or even the school principal. That was enough to terrify the extra. Seeing that he needed to solve this problem quickly, he asked if the kid wanted money or if he really wanted to train with them. But Harrien said that everything he does from now on will be in self-defense. If he doesn't return that punch, he might not be able to sleep at night. The extra ended up accepting that solution because he believes it's the easiest way to solve this big problem. He thinks the protagonist is just a mediocre human who went to a mediocre school and must have mediocre strength. But the force of that punch was so brutal it rearranged the teeth in his mouth. Harrien really is an excellent actor because he started to act as if he were impressed. That was a little different from what the extra had promised. His instincts told him not to take that hit. The bald guy didn't understand that, thinking his friend should have just let himself get hit. But the extra is breaking out in a cold sweat. His friends might think he dodged as a joke, but if he had taken it, he would have been extremely unlucky. Harrien started to taunt the extra, asking if he really intended to get hit or if he's just a liar. Anissa asked him to just tell the truth. Returning the punch with equal measure in that situation would be too much. It would be better to apologize and compensate the kid. There's no point in starting a fight now. With his underwear completely compromised, the extra realized that was the best way out, saying that he was wrong. But Harrien wouldn't let things end like that. He suggested to the extra that they settle this with their fists. As he finished his sentence, he vanished from everyone's sight. Seeing that the fight was imminent, he was already prepared to fight. Identifying the offensive approach of the kid, he tried to intimidate. Believing he had seen the movement, he attacked. But he had only hit his afterimage, leaving his body completely unprotected. That opening was enough for his jaw to be shattered, but the blow was intentionally weak because the goal wasn't to damage his body, it was to destroy his ego. Harrien had delivered a devastating counterattack because he had shown his complete superiority, leaving the extra deeply enraged. With his pride wounded, he started throwing punches, but he wasn't able to land a single blow on his target. Harrien just kept dodging without effort, until the extra finally thought he had him cornered, but he still doesn't know the extent of that boy's skills. Seeing his attack completely repelled, it happened so fast that the extra is still trying to figure it out. Harrien asked what would happen if he landed a few blows on his body. Taking the opportunity, he gave the extra a light kick to the leg, causing him to fall to the ground, his pride shattered. Once again, the onlookers took a moment to process it. They thought the older student must have lost on purpose. Harrien now wonders if that guy really goes to the same school as everyone else. He expected much more from that fight. He even considered that they could train seriously, saying that he's glad the extra took it well, since there are recordings of him starting the fight, but that poor soul refuses to shake the protagonist's hand. If that's how the fight ends, he can only feel pity. He was hoping it would be as tough as the one with that girl. If he'd known it would be this easy, he would have gone even easier on him. He asked his friend to save the recordings just in case, but she said it wasn't necessary, so he asked if she was stupid. The recording isn't for him, she's the one who should watch it, because she'll be able to see with absolute clarity that he was holding back his own speed to match the extra's mediocrity, which was far below expectations. Only then did she realize that Harrien did that so she could learn something. The boy simply seized the opportunity, realizing that the person who has been attacking her at school is that girl in the dress. On top of that, it became clear that she doesn't intend to hide the fact that she hates his friend. He doesn't know her situation at school, but from what he heard from Cheol-kan, he knows she doesn't bow to anyone there. To make it clear, she's not a proud person, but she also doesn't let idiots take advantage of him. They have a secret agreement, but he also needs to think about his reputation and they shouldn't remain isolated. While he was talking to her, he heard a strange noise. The two of them looked back to see what was happening. It was the extra, still very angry, hoping to catch the protagonist by surprise. Anissa thinks that's more than enough humiliation for one single day, summoning a magical being that was able to restrain the extra with a single hand. Her upperclassman should at least maintain his composure. Now she was forced to intervene. Sound felt quite intimidated by the amount of power her cousin possesses, but that ended up causing something unexpected. Harrien could feel something different in his own body. The boy remembered what happened 3 weeks ago. He was opening a delivery from the hospital, checking what he had received. He wasn't expecting much, but the clothes looked like trash and it seemed like he wouldn't be able to use that item again. When the user's life is in danger, their body is covered by magic to prevent the worst. In that moment of danger, he didn't realize that the item in his pocket had activated. That item was crucial in helping him escape the incident without more serious injuries. But the power he felt afterward, he's not sure if it was also a side effect. It's easier to believe that than to think he has some hidden power, since the item is quite expensive. It's plausible that it has another kind of effect. It was then that he finally understood. The guy had lost a very expensive item. Looking closer at his hand, he's sure. It's the same feeling he felt last time. He doesn't know why it's happening now, but he's sure it wasn't a result of Kill's blood. Anissa asked how much her cousin offered him and suggested he switch sides, because she would pay triple and then some. Siren told her to stop playing with people, because those offers are offensive. But the girl said it's not a joke. She simply made a valid offer to a potential client. Even if he's an underling, he was able to defeat a second-year student from the school. It's strange that a prodigy like him isn't well known. There must be a reason why he didn't enroll in the school, but most problems can be solved with money, and that's all that San has to offer. Nothing more. Good connections, reputation, and talent are not her strong suits. The girl was about to imply that her cousin was offering her body, but the protagonist said that she offers him patience and that someone is trying to sabotage his friend's career. He doesn't know how difficult that experience must be, but he's sure that the person talking behind her back and causing trouble must be a mediocre person who is nothing more than a bucket of filth. Since they are cousins, Harrien assumes she must know who that person is. After being passively provoked, she dispelled her ability. She had no choice but to cancel that week's meeting. The girl who came with them said they had already invited other classmates. Anissa said that her friend is too kind, since she just witnessed all that and still has the audacity to worry about others. The ones who are coming are upperclassmen from the school, and they're going to smash that extra into the ground. It was just a way to build connections with the student council, but it seems she just wasted her time. It would be better to forget what happened that day. Siren made sure to tell the protagonist that they are cousins. If he can't be bought with money, then he surely already has something in mind that he wants, and he'd better say it clearly, because it's going to affect his school life. Harrien was about to say something, but he was pulled by the arm. It was his friend asking him to stop. He wanted to provoke that mage a little more. Maybe he could get a fight out of her. Siren wants to keep him from getting that woman's attention because she knows she has no limits. Now that he has her attention, all hell is going to break loose and the gossip will be just the beginning. Harrien realized that the strange sensation had disappeared. It vanished along with that girl's magic. Maybe that power appears when it detects magic. Siren saw that he was quite distracted. She asked if her friend was okay. The boy is now sure that he needs to learn how to use magic immediately, and the extra is still in pain from what happened. It was then that Chioken spoke to him. He thought he was being nice, but his presence is truly threatening to anyone. Even the extra already knows this student's reputation and doesn't know what he's doing there. Harrien approached him to apologize. He confessed that he wanted to test something, but he had no intention of humiliating him. That was the extra's own fault. He acknowledged his own mistakes and even went further, saying he wasn't able to do anything. He had been quite arrogant without knowing who his opponent was, the hero who prevented a great tragedy, and he feels relieved that nothing worse happened. Harrien would have won if it had been a real fight. The extra was left thoughtful, but the boy said they aren't that different in terms of strength and speed, but he could tell that his opponent lost emotional control, executing overly simple attacks, which made it easy to read his movements. While the extra was unconscious, Harrien watched their fight several times. His opponent's weight distribution is a clear indicator of what he will do in battle. Maybe he's already aware of that, but Harrien took the time to organize the material so the extra could review it. Siren is sure that this will leave her upperclassmen very surprised. That kind of evaluation isn't something money can buy. It's only possible because Harrien is extremely detail-oriented and has incredible intuition. And sure enough, the bodyguard is stunned, barely able to find words. Harrien said he doesn't care what happened, because they've already resolved everything and he holds no grudge. They are there to train and he hopes this information will help them settle everything once and for all, letting him know that once he finishes watching the video, he can leave his number so Harrien can send him the complete material. It bothered Harrien that the extra's friends left him there unconscious. Chioken also thought it was a despicable attitude. Since a lot had happened, they needed to refocus and begin their magic training. The mana is just fuel for casting spells. Each person's magical state represents the quality of that fuel. Harrien didn't know it worked that way. His friend explained that humans and elves basically have the same amount of mana. Reusing the analogy, coal doesn't burn the same way a pile of paper does. The quality of the fuel is fundamental in determining which spells can be used. She is at sea level, the minimum for those who want to become mages, as it's necessary for offensive and enhancement spells. For these guys, what they have is enough for self-enhancement enchantments. Harrien is already very excited and asked if they would be able to learn all of that in a single weekend. Siren will never get used to that level of enthusiasm. The beginning takes 1 to 2 weeks, but someone said he could help with that, as long as they felt comfortable with the idea. That is this poor extra's specialty, performing enchantments that enhance the user himself. After a few moments of practice, Harrien managed to produce an F-level enchantment, a small flame. He was quite surprised with his own progress, but the extra told him not to get excited yet. It would be strange if someone so talented couldn't do that, since it's a simple skill. A little more encouraged, he asked if he should make the flame stronger or try to learn how to produce water. They advised him to keep focusing on that flame, especially its core. Feeling your own magic is very stupid advice. It's hard to feel something you're not used to doing, but now things are different. Since he was able to draw out mana and transform it into fire, that's the real first step, because his magic awakened for the first time. So he must explore that feeling to understand it better. While keeping the flame lit, he must feel the mana flowing through his body. Only then will he be able to notice that he has changed. Not even the extra expected so much progress. In the worst-case scenario, they would need the whole weekend. Harrien said he could feel something sharp yet delicate, like static electricity in his lower abdomen, spreading throughout his body. His instructor confirmed that that was the correct sensation, impressed that it took him a little over a minute to reach that point. The feeling is incredible, as if his whole body were made of circuits. He imagined there were about 50, until he realized there were hundreds. The human body has 2 fundamental parts that handle mana, the core located in the abdomen and the adjacent circuits responsible for distributing it. There are 127 in total. Sound asked if the mountain of muscle knew how to play any kind of instrument. He said he played the piano until he was 10 years old, but he doesn't think he has the talent to be a musician. She said, "That's perfect, because what she's going to teach him is very similar to playing the piano." She demonstrated a non-lethal lightning sphere spell, but it can paralyze the enemy. She didn't need to chant or make any complicated movements to cast the spell. Magic isn't as complicated as people think. Most enchantments happen without the user needing to move their body. It's like playing the piano, just pressing the right keys in the right order at the right time. The body's circuits are like the keys of a piano, and magic is the sheet music you read through those circuits. It's all about timing and precision. That's how you use magic. He asked what happens if he messes up the rhythm of the sheet music, worried there might be side effects. Simple spells will cast even if you make small mistakes, but the quality changes. Sound couldn't help but notice how terrifying his expression becomes when he's focused. The more difficult the spell, the greater the chance of failure if it's cast incorrectly. As she said that, the electricity began to increase significantly. In that case, there are consequences for a failed execution. Even a spell like that, which is simple, can paralyze its user. More complex spells can demand an even greater price, like your life. That's why mages need protection on the battlefield. Focusing on execution under pressure is harder than it looks. She knows the boy can already feel his own mana because he's been practicing for a while, but he still can't feel the circuits in his body. They were going to start from the beginning. Since he's a tank, he doesn't need refined knowledge, he just needs to know the circuits used for enhancement. Harrien always knew that the two of them, they would get along once they had the chance to get to know each other better. Seeing him stand up, the instructor asked if Harrien wanted to go to the bathroom, but the boy said there was no point in continuing to practice. The senior warned him that he needed to keep doing the exercises to feel the mana flowing through his body. Harrien believes that he already understands how it works. He feels exactly where the circuits are in his body, every single one of them. His senior was impressed. Then the boy showed that he has 2 in his hand, making a total of 6 in his right arm. In his left arm, he has 8 in total, and if you count the ones on his shoulder, it's 10 in total. That precision left the senior completely stunned. He's sure he taught the boy very well, but the speed of that kind of progress is absurd. Sire realized that Harrien had pulled one of his Harrienisms again, so he asked his new bro to continue teaching the next steps. The young man needs some time to understand that the boy is truly talented. There are small differences. All humanoid species have a similar number of circuits, each of them already known. In the next stage of training, he showed his closed hand when there was nothing in it. Taking a deep breath, he asked him to pay attention. He had fortified his body, which increases the user's own reflex speed and endurance. The boy was supposed to notice the difference in his instructor's body. He faked a punch to the boy's face with the intention of showing what had changed. In effect, his strength and speed were enhanced. If he had hit him, a broken nose would be the least of his problems. The veteran was impressed that the boy noticed that, even without looking into his eyes, and mentioned that last year he was at the back of the line. He had great confidence in his basic attributes, but he lacked finesse in using his full potential. Harrien realized that's why he developed fortification. That was it. The veteran was looking to improve what he already had going for him. His luck lies in having an aptitude for magic. After practicing a lot, he sought to learn spells he could use. Eventually, he discovered that fortification would be interesting for him. Depending on how they are combined, it's possible to make the most of one's own abilities. With multiple fortifications, he can seek synergy between them, aiming for a greater strength than could be achieved naturally. That is one of the possibilities. Talented magic users perfect 2 or 3 enchantments, unlike him, who knows more than a dozen. As a result, today he is capable of leading a team, but the people at the top look down on him for using enhancement spells. That's why he got so excited when someone popular invited him to that place, even if it was merely social, a formality. He was still very happy. He wanted to be approved by his juniors. That's why he ended up being a jerk to the protagonist. He was seeking approval. In the end, he knows what it's like to be in both positions, the jerk and the victim. Even though it's a little late for that, he apologized for the stupid things he did. Harrien asked him to drop the subject already, because it's good that for the next 58 hours he's ready to teach everything he knows. They ended up training for 4 full days early in the morning. Went out to get some fresh air. Harrien enjoys that feeling. Saon, who looks like an old man despite being young, thought that it was a joke, but he was impressed they hadn't slept all weekend. The protagonist said that they were still too young to feel tired. The truth is, his stamina level is extremely high. She is sure that the last few days were very productive. Training with talented people was extremely beneficial. Harrien said that if they were near the city, they could have eaten soup with rice, something his friend had never tried. The veteran asked if any of them were going to Gangnam, since he would be training in that city. Harrien said he was heading in the same direction, saying he wouldn't need a ride from Seiron, who was going in another direction. That might sound a little weird, but he's very grateful for his friends. It was the best weekend he's had since he was 5 years old. He doesn't know if he'll be able to see them before the exam, since he'll be busy preparing, and he hopes his friends do well on their tests too. Especially the girl. If she fails, she'll become a joke to him, and he'll make sure to remind her of it, asking Chioken to take care of the girl and be nice to her. Finally, the small group says their goodbyes. Saon also thanked the veteran for his help. He learned a lot from him. The young man said the feeling was mutual and hopes they meet again. Finally, a taxi continues on its way, but those two still feel awkward when they're alone, as they both find each other intimidating, even if they don't realize it. They were lucky to avoid the traffic. Even though he had already said it, he said again that the weekend was incredible. He's happy to have learned a special move. The veteran said it's not a big deal. It's just an idea and it might not even work in practice. Harrien disagrees with him. He believes he can master it and even use it in his rematch. The veteran doesn't even know what that is, but Harrien would let him know the results. He doesn't know when he'll see the young man again, but he said they should go out to eat together when they can. That will only happen if the protagonist gets into a better school, because he wouldn't want to hang out with people who end up in ordinary places. Harrien understood what those words really meant and thanked the veteran for the encouragement. Finally, he felt the exhaustion. He was going to stay home to get some sleep, but someone said he doesn't have time to go to school, much less to sleep. The manager was already waiting for him. He had already contacted the school and said that Harrien would be absent for a whole month. He shouldn't even be surprised by this, since he's preparing for the transfer exam. He told the boy to pack his bags, to bring some underwear and t-shirts. Immediately, he noticed that the boy had learned to use magic. It's at a basic level, but he can feel his circuits are activated. He said he needed to keep preparing for the exam, and the manager is proud of that, but that basic level won't be very useful. He asked him not to misunderstand. The boy hadn't wasted his time or anything like that. He even praised him for it, but he needs to make things clear. This isn't a private lesson, it's a test. He must be prepared and determined to live like a true adventurer. To test his endurance, the manager pushed him to the limit. One thing he's sure of, he'll make the kid realize he's not as talented as he thinks. Now he should hurry up and pack his bags. He should pack light, and if he needs more, they'll come back for it. He wants to know where they're going and if it's a place the manager used when he was active, but he already sold the facilities he used and is trying to start something new. The kid can't even imagine what it could be, but that's the weapon, and he's going to use it. He doesn't know how they found his address, but the package was sent to his house. He finally managed to open it. He asked the kid to take a look. If it's wrong, he's going to sue them. The staff he used to wield looks very different. The manager thought it looked the same, only the color had changed. Harrien is sure it wasn't just the color that changed, it feels much lighter, and the grip has improved quite a bit. But the manager is in a hurry to leave. Whether the equipment has improved or not, the kid will find out soon enough, because he'll make sure there are plenty of opportunities for him to test his weapon. Harrien is really excited about it, but once in the forest, he quickly changed his mind. This training won't be easy at all. The creature before his eyes has a 4-star danger level. He was taught to run if he ever encountered a creature of that level. That lesson applied to his life as a smuggler, since he had to survive, but as an adventurer, things are different. He must warn the manager if he thinks he's going to give up or die, because he'll come change his diapers. It's been 6 months since the last time the manager saw the kid's skills. A carnivorous tree like that is even more dangerous for close-range fighters. If the kid hasn't improved during this time, he might die in this fight, which would mean the end of all this nonsense. Harrien needs to focus on the creature because its attacks are fast and destructive. Even though he's completely focused, if he had been a second later, he would no longer be alive. This is the second 4-star monster he's faced, and the premise of the battle is the same. Mistakes won't be tolerated in this fight, because the cost is your life, and this time he has no allies to count on to help him, which makes things really difficult. He must end this immediately using everything he has. The difference between 3 and 4 stars is the creature's intelligence, which also varies depending on the species. Most creatures have decision-making abilities, similar to humans, and in some cases are smart enough to deceive people. The creature lured the hunter in on purpose. The manager knew something like this would end up happening. His surprise was realizing that the kid's attack had been devastating. Not even he understood what had happened, because his staff had transformed into an energy scythe. The manager was so impressed that he forgot for a moment that he's a chain smoker, but that blade that had appeared is made entirely of energy and soon began to disappear. The kid didn't understand how his weapon really works. The manager wants to know how he was able to activate it, but Harrien doesn't know either. He hadn't even read the manual to find out. A few things. He asked if the kid felt lethargic or tired from moving. He said he was a little out of breath, but that could have been from the shock and not from exhaustion. The manager didn't sense any magic. It could have been a function of the weapon. The mechanism of that thing isn't exceptional, but rather a common ancient technology among the old guard. This type of weapon has a cost. The appearance of that blade consumes stamina. That's why this technology became obsolete. But judging by the impact of the blade, it's strange that the kid is barely tired. Either way, it's excellent news. He said that if it weren't for the equipment, the kid would have learned an important lesson. He's already aware of the opening he left, and the manager said he didn't expect him to win at all. Don't think it's because he underestimates the kid. It's quite the opposite. He knows the kid is talented and probably already at the level of gold-class adventurers. Being praised by the manager scares him, but that wasn't praise. Besides the kid's father, the manager knows at least a dozen people stronger than him. And of those people, more than half perished at the hands of a weak creature. Harrien felt his life was in danger. That creature was still alive. He even thought it might be a different one. He realized he had managed to split it in half, but the creature had regenerated. He must make sure to finish it off this time. His attacks hit their mark. He cut off one of the creature's arms. He saw that the tip of his staff had now transformed into a hammer. The manager finally confirmed how that equipment works. The user's foundation determines the weapon that will manifest. Incredible efficiency. It might seem random, but it's a perfect weapon for this kid. After taking a few hits, the creature became very enraged and its arm had completely regenerated. It doesn't matter if his equipment is good, if the strategy is bad, he has no chance of victory, even more so when there's a time limit. The cigarette had already been completely consumed. Just like the kid's stamina, he's at his physical limit, and the creature in front of him is still completely alive, launching an attack that would undoubtedly be fatal, but the manager wasn't going to let that happen. He did all that while lighting another cigarette. He said the kid wouldn't be able to dodge the attack in his current state. It was game over for him, asking if he had any objections. Harrien tried to destroy anything that looked like a weakness, but nothing worked. He asked what he should have done. The manager said that he doesn't know either. It would have been better if the kid had run away. He thought it was a joke, but the manager was completely serious. To run away and lead it to a place where it can't regenerate, that's the best strategy against this enemy. There are 3 ways to defeat that carnivorous tree. The first is to lure the monster to a place where it can't absorb nutrients. If it's in a place where it can absorb nutrients from the surface, it will regenerate endlessly. Rocky terrain. The inside of a mine would prevent that, and the kid would have defeated it easily. But that thought never crossed his mind. He has to look for his enemy's weaknesses. It's the only way to face them. Harrien wanted to interrupt, but something dangerous was happening. The creature was destroying the barrier, and the manager didn't seem to care. Apparently, he's not very good with protective spells. As his flames grew, he said that was the second way to defeat the creature, by burning it completely, with a high-ranking CO spell. If Harrien were a mage specializing in fire, he would have defeated the creature easily. That's why the creature's danger level is 4-star. It's weak to fire, but until one realizes that the creature is extremely dangerous in close combat and common fire isn't enough to defeat it, it would take a military-grade grenade to cause real damage. Many people were defeated. Before this was discovered, this knowledge cost several lives. Creatures that today are defeated with simple strategies once took many lives. Several prodigies perished prematurely. The manager wants to know how the boy feels after being defeated for the first time. Before he could answer, the manager said the feeling must be horrible. It's not like losing to a person in a duel. The feeling is much worse. That's the price of being an adventurer. The price to pay can be a small wound or forced retirement, but it can be worse, like losing someone you love. Knowing you're alive at the cost of another is a feeling that's too painful. He doesn't want the boy to go through that. Losing one's own dignity is sometimes a very valuable option. In any case, the training is over for today. He wants to know if the boy can run for a few hours. The inside of the dungeon is different from its exterior space. Sometimes it can be several times larger than expected. And in that particular place, the area is as large as the entire country. The run left him exhausted, and the manager asked him to enjoy the view. And indeed, despite being very dangerous, the dungeon is very beautiful. The 3-star creatures there are at the bottom of the food chain. The boy alone wouldn't last even half an hour. For the next 2 weeks, he will train during the day and be protected at night. He will receive instruction for the last 2 weeks, but he will have to protect himself. If he can use everything he has, learn to survive for 1 month in the forest, he will pass the test. He can give up if he wants. Smiling, Harrien already regrets spending only 1 month in that place. Time passed and the day of the exam finally arrived. Sound was worried because he ignored all her calls during that time and the boy hadn't arrived yet. She surprised that she waited for him on the street. Sound was about to scold her friend, but was surprised to see his condition. Very much wanting to know where he had been. He apologized for ignoring her. He was in a place with no phone signal. He asked if anything had happened, acknowledging that he might seem a bit strange. He had to cut his hair himself, so it must look a bit weird now. He didn't want to make her worry so much. He said he would get ready soon, but she had many questions to ask him. There was something in the car. Sound was about to touch her friend, and that's when she felt a strange sensation. This person felt completely different. Harrien turned around to talk to her. The girl instantly backed away. He apologized, as he had gotten into the habit. React when something approaches him from behind. Sweating profusely, Sound said he didn't need to apologize for that. He had completely forgotten about the clothes he was supposed to wear because he spent the entire month training and adapting to his new weapon. He's very excited about the exam. That was the first time Sound had felt such intense malice coming from a person. But that wasn't what impressed her. She had seen it before in her friend. What really surprised her was that he now felt no different from the presence of a monster. The clothes fit the boy very well. She highly praised their quality. They must have been expensive. If they had had more time, they could have made some fine adjustments because small details and quality gear make a huge difference. But now they can't do anything. Still, he remains very motivated. Since it's a test, Siren thinks he should be a bit more cautious, But the boy wasn't talking about the exam. He was talking about studying at this new school, because the test will be held there and he had never set foot in that place. It's located on a small mountain that used to be a park before the cataclysm that changed everyone's lives on the planet. The danger level of this region is high. It's the highest place in all of Korea. It used to be a dangerous dungeon. 30 years ago, a joint effort between the country and the Adventurers Association completely cleared the place. The best hunters were gathered. Participation was entirely voluntary, but not a single one backed down. It took a full year of planning, requiring both physical and financial investments. And as a result of all that planning, the mission was a total success celebrated by all citizens, not just in Korea, but around the world. The next problem was how to make use of that space until one of the hunters made an interesting suggestion that they build a school in that location. There was already a need for a center to train new adventurers, and they needed a space where these future students could be trained and guided, but finding a suitable area wasn't easy. The ownership of that land was granted to the adventurers who risked their lives to take control. Although the story isn't well known, if it weren't for the donation from that one person, essential for clearing the dungeon, that school would have never existed. Harrien had never been there and is sure he's not the only one anxious to see the place. Seeing that they were on the highway, she didn't expect the school to be so far away. A lot happened in the last month. She asked if he knew of a strike squad called High. Several of the protagonist's companions are fans of that team. He was shocked to learn that they had all died. Their shelter was invaded. Dangerous monsters broke in and attacked them. At first, it seemed like a tragedy, but several narcotics were found at the scene along with the bodies of celebrities, which sparked a huge public debate. On the news, they keep broadcasting public apologies. Many people are involved in the scandal. Public opinion is sharply divided. To clean up its image, the Hunters Association started publicizing its plans, which is why it changed the location of the test. It will be held in Pu's Labyrinth, a place the protagonist already knows. The second A-ranked dungeon that was cleared, the former home of the infamous dragon Bazooka. Meanwhile, inside the forge located at the Jinseon Company headquarters, Seek had gone there to talk to the blacksmith, who had drunk all of his beverages. He hadn't had a drink in a long time, so he ran out very quickly. The human ability to make alcohol is horrible, and he wants to know why they are visiting him and if there is any news about the boy. Seek, who came to ask about the labyrinth, since he knows the blacksmith helped the humans 20 years ago. He remembers it. They wanted to develop a suitable place to train hunters, and he said it was a waste of time. But Seek wants to know the details. Dragons are possessive about certain things. Once they find a target, they develop a great ambition for it. Bazooka is famous for liking labyrinths. Despite being powerful, his nest was confusing and complex. He used every technique possible to make it as complicated as he could, using knowledge from various races. There's no way to take advantage of what the dragon built. Seek believed the place was safe. The dragon kidnapped several dwarves to complete the labyrinth. He doesn't know how the humans managed to defeat it, but he's sure it wasn't inside the labyrinth, because that would have been impossible. Even 20 years later, he's sure that humans have only reached the surface of the place, like an iceberg. Despite saying there's nothing wrong, the place must be completely unpredictable. Seek is convinced that holding the test there is a mistake, and if he came all this way to talk to the Titan, it's because some stupid decision has been made. Maybe they'll get lucky, and even a tragedy could serve to make them start valuing life from now on. Who knows? Maybe some lucky person will manage to conquer that dungeon. And Harrien is impressed by what he sees. The candidates are already gathering to start the test. That is a labyrinth that constantly changes its shape. Since it's the first time it's being used for a test, no one has much information about it. Apparently, Anissa is really trying to make things difficult. The boy feels like he's being watched. About 20 people there have their eyes on him. He doesn't know what Anissa told them, but it definitely wasn't anything good. Saan is completely unable to notice what's happening. His perception is limited. The boy learned in the last month what it feels like to be a target. It's like opening a window on a hot day, but that wasn't the only thing he learned in the last month. He also learned how not to be seen as a target, making potential predators absolutely sure that they are actually the prey. It seems he'll have to wish his competitors good luck. With a little less than 1 hour before the exam begins, a meeting is underway. The president of the Adventurers Association is satisfied with the changes that have been made, thanking the school's director for his help. But he made it clear that he's not completely in favor of this, saying it's a big joke that this was done just to divert public attention from the recent incident, and he believes he's not the only one in that meeting who thinks that way. And if the president wants to thank someone, he should thank the person who benefited from this situation. She is Seo Yura, the chairwoman of the school's board of directors, warriors. The woman hopes they can understand the situation, which had already been thoroughly discussed with the council, but the man disagrees with her. Still, there's not much that can be done now, recognizing that he probably maintains his position in the rankings because of politics, and another woman noted that the meeting was getting very tense. The bald man warned that the old man was going too far. That test is stupid, made for stupid people. There's no reason to react like that, but the old man didn't like those words and started staring intently at Jongjil with great seriousness. He said he must have forgotten what happened in the last 30 years. If that's the case, it's best if he keeps his mouth shut. The chairwoman says the old man isn't wrong to feel concerned about the current situation, but if he wants to settle things with violence instead of dialogue, she would love that. The tension is high, and those two have never gotten along. Everyone there is prepared for the worst. What calmed them down was an unexpected factor, a student who had nothing to do with it and was introducing himself to everyone. The association's president hopes these people can remain calm. He knows that some people there would like to complain about the circumstances, recognizing that the only person they should complain to is himself. The meeting ends, and they leave the room. The old man can't believe the petulance of the association's president, who is a lapdog in that woman's hands. He asked if the professor considered his words aggressive. He said they were quite aggressive and thanked him for his honesty. Since the woman has authority, he was already expecting such a scenario, but this time she crossed the line. When it comes to graduates, she treats them very well because they are the future of the nation, but that ends up harming these kids who receive a lot for having done very little. Soon, real talents stop appearing because the new adventurers are too spoiled. They are fish in an aquarium, being fed and kept complacent by those who control them. Few know the true circumstances of that place, and he is sure that inside information was given to important people whose children will be taking the test. Now, he wants to know if the professor thinks he was too extreme. That woman is trying to take over your school. In fact, it's a direct affront to your school. The professor will not allow that to happen, as this test is not subject to cheating. His only concern is the safety of the students, but that woman doesn't care about that. If the worst happens, they will have to act quickly. Not to mention he didn't speak of that feeling, but he is sure that everyone is aware of it, a powerful bloodlust. But it's not their place to discuss that. There are more urgent matters now. They still don't know who that student is, but he definitely has potential, and he did it on purpose. The old man knows the professor is known by the students for being too strict. Normally, they don't get excited about exams, but he sincerely hopes that kid passes. He has wanted to teach someone personally for a long time. In this test, they must find a treasure and take it to a designated location. They must do it with complete safety. The danger in the labyrinth was calibrated to incapacitate the students. The rules are even simpler than the guy expected. Even so, there's still a risk of death, so the candidates must be cautious. The condition to pass is 1 treasure per candidate, and inside the labyrinth there are more chests than participants. It's possible for everyone to pass. The candidates started to get confused, wondering what would happen if everyone passed. Apparently, this is a new rule exclusive to this year. With the briefing finished, the participants can enter the labyrinth according to the number they received. They can pick up their equipment from the warehouse. Since he doesn't have a phone, Harrien will have to figure things out on his own. He saw someone being harassed. Some bullies were bothering a guy, all because they had accidentally bumped into each other. And that guy has an injured leg. He wasn't even the one who bumped into the others. Still, they kept bothering him, but one of the lackeys noticed something. Harrien doesn't care about them, but he asked them not to block the path. The lackeys tried to intimidate him, but one of them had already lost his underwear. Since there are rules there, Harrien knows that he can't do much, but he can make them feel fear and warn them that he might accidentally bump into them in the labyrinth, which could be problematic. Those words made the blonde guy destroy his own underwear immediately. As they were leaving, one of the extras was informed by his friend about who that person was. Finally, Harrien returned the book to the boy who was being bullied. The boy thanked him for the help. He knew that it wasn't necessary to do that. As he said goodbye to the boy, he worried about his leg, because the test will be dangerous, but he grew curious about the book the boy was carrying, as it didn't make much sense in that context. The boy watched the protagonist walk away and wish him good luck. It may not seem like it, but that boy is a second-year student, and he placed second in last year's test. The candidates are now on the floor that gives access to the labyrinth. Harrien is very excited. That place looks like something out of a science fiction movie. Each one of those capsules will send the participants to random positions inside the labyrinth. They must enter the one with their assigned number. When the countdown ends, they will be sent. Then, the door to the labyrinth will open and the test will begin. There are only a few seconds left before the start. That watch displays the time, and also sends a distress signal in case of disqualification. Finally, only 1 second is left before they enter the labyrinth. Harrien felt the capsule start to move. The candidates don't know what awaits them inside, and it seems the labyrinth has a will of its own and will try to use the humans who turned this place into an instrument. An emergency was unfolding. They had no signal from the students inside. The labyrinth will try to devour all those people. But not everyone there is a potential victim. as some are the natural enemies of monsters, something the labyrinth did not expect.